There was a man named Hao Xian whose dream was to be a useless person and who wanted to die lying down all his life. But unexpectedly, he crossed over and arrived in a fantasy world that everyone envies, and it has been more than 3 years. He was shocked when he found out that there was a system. He also found out that there were secrets, as the home of the original host of the body actually had a secret compartment, and he found a book there. There were also cheats, but he looked so disappointed that he had demon wings, and he inquired what it was because it was a Western thing. But despite it all, there was one thing he lacked: motivation, and he looked so tired as he lamented that cultivating immortality was so tiring, so he really didn't want to do it. Hao Xian let out a sigh as he admitted that it was not a solution to keep dragging on like that, and he would probably be condemned by the heavens for wasting such a great opportunity. He imagined the heavenly god looking so enraged while chasing him with a chair and questioned him if he had any idea how hard it was for him to create that opportunity, and if he knew how many people were taken advantage of and didn't get it. Hao Xian asserted that that wouldn't happen, so he would do 10 push-ups first to regain his motivation. But as he was about to start with his push-ups, his expression suddenly turned grim. He turned pale and began sweating profusely. Hao Xian fell face first on the floor, conceded that he would just forget it and let him just accept his fate as he had tried his best. He dramatically bid farewell to the magnificent life of cultivating immortality, and he speculated that there may be no laziness in heaven. Hao Xian leisurely laid on the grass, mused that it was actually not bad to spend a lifetime looking at the clouds after crossing over, and he remarked that the life of a useless person like him would definitely be like that. But unexpectedly, besides being lazy, he has another fatal flaw. Suddenly, a notification sound caught his attention. The system notified him that his initial task only has 100 days left, and failure to complete the task will result in him being directly eliminated. Hao Xian's eyes bulged out due to shock when he found out about the time and elimination, and that was his other flaw: he was afraid of death. He ran down with all his might, using plus 100 million points, and as he voiced his surprise that it never hinted that there was a time limit, he kept on repeating that he was going to die. Hao Xian rode on a horse, and he still kept exclaiming that he was going to die. He traveled across the map while he continued to declare that he was going to die. Hao Xian arrived at an ordinary cave in Yuntai Mountain. He was so exhausted, complaining about his old waist while bending into the ground, but he was relieved that he finally made it. Hao Xian saw the huge bead in front of him, and he recalled that the task objective should be to activate that bead. He reached out to it, and he cursed in his mind as he grumbled that he had been traveling for over 3 months just for a stupid ball, but at least he made it in time. As Hao Xian touched the ball, it started to emit some sort of aura. He was startled when a bright light from above shined down on him. Hao Xian was blinded by the light. The system congratulated Hao Xian for successfully activating the initial bead, and it explained that it would introduce him to the situation in the Heavenly Palace next, which surprised Hao Xian. The system started explaining to Hao Xian that the contemporary Heavenly Palace is the era of the Jade Emperor, and that era was known as the Golden Age in the history of the Heavenly Palace. It elaborated that he could pick any one of the 12 martial arts peaks, and they could easily defeat any leader from any other period in the Heavenly Palace. However, despite that, the entire Heavenly Palace was still destroyed in the year 1473 of the Jade Calendar, and all 12 martial arts peaks were killed in battle. And the mastermind behind the scenes was a group of 9 mysterious figures that suddenly appeared from the west and called themselves the Black Flare Organization. The system revealed that he, at that moment, was in the Heavenly Palace 700 years before its destruction, in the year 773 of the Jade Calendar. It instructed that his task was to enhance the potential of the 12 martial arts peaks, enable them to surpass themselves, and grow to the top of the top to save the people 700 years later. The system announced that the introduction was complete, and as it congratulated him on completing the initial task, it shined a ray of light towards him and gave him a reward item. Hao Xian was so amazed as the Great Sage card appeared in his hand. It was a consumable card that temporarily granted the user the peak strength of a fighting Buddha. The system notified Hao Xian that the second main task was activated. The task objective was for Hao Xian to go to Flower Fruit Mountain and find the rookie stage Monkey King to increase its potential value to 30%. Hao Xian looked so astounded as the system showed him a video of the fierce Monkey King. He slammed the system screen on the ground and questioned why the hell was it called the rookie stage. Hao Xian looked so enraged, and he kept stomping on the system screen as he interrogated it if it was necessary to run half the map just to watch a video when it could just do it directly in the system. And he accused that he was seriously suspecting that it was messing with him, questioning it if it knew how he survived 3 months. The system screen started to restore itself while Haoxian was out of breath, but he was still mad, and he remarked that it was killing him. Haoxian noted that thankfully the first task took over 3 months, so that task probably won't be much different. As a severe procrastinator in the late stage, Haoxian told himself not to be afraid because worries that didn't need to be solved immediately weren't really worries. But he was surprised when the system notified him that his new task deadline was 3 days. Haoxian's expression immediately turned grim. He got so enraged again that he cursed at the system while giving it the middle finger and questioned it if it was intentionally targeting him. Haoxian immediately departed for Flower Fruit Mountain, and he kept repeating that he was going to die. He continued murmuring that he was going to die while he continued to run across the mountain ranges. 3 days later, a group of people were gathered on the outskirts of Flower Fruit Mountain. They were immortals and they were surrounding Haoxian, and Haoxian was on the verge of crying as he pleaded that they talk nicely and not resort to violence. The immortals looked so ominous as they looked down on the helpless Haoxian. One of those immortals was Liu Yuan, the sect master of Taimen, one of the 3 major sects of the righteous path, whose cultivation was at the late stage of Yuan Ying, and he inquired Haoxian what a mortal like him was doing in the Monster Beast mountain range. Haoxian explained that he just accidentally wandered while picking herbs, so he hoped the immortals could forgive him, and in the back of his mind, he was wondering how unlucky he could get because he hasn't even encountered the Monkey King yet, and he has been discovered by a group of cultivators, and judging by Liu Yuan's face, he doesn't seem like a good person. One of the ladies scolded Haoxian for daring to enter the territory of monster beasts when he was a mere mortal, and as she pointed out his arrogance, Haoxian quickly agreed with her and assured that he would lead immediately. But with a menacing smile on his face, Liu Yuan intervened to hold on, and he proposed that he had a better idea. Calling Haoxian a little guy, Liu Yuan suggested that they drain his blood essence and refine it into a blood key pill because that way they might attract a few more monster beasts. Haoxian looked so frightened when he heard that they were going to drain his blood essence. He challenged the immortals about how they could do such a thing when their clothes were from the righteous path. The immortals burst out laughing hysterically. With a menacing look on his face, Liu Yuan mocked that he was really naive and cute, and as he questioned him what nonsense rule he was talking about, he asserted that the only rule in their cultivation world was that the strong prey on the weak. Haoxian fell to the ground, and he looked extremely horrified. He stood up, and he warned the immortals not to come over because he had a secret weapon. As he activated the Great Sage card behind him, Haoxian cursed, as he admitted that there was no other way, so he had to use it early and figure out another way when he encountered the Monkey King. Haoxian felt something, and it was coming so fast. He released a tremendous amount of aura that materialized into a ferocious beast behind him while he expressed that he felt the endless power rushing into his body, and it felt like he was about to explode. The immortals were astonished, and Liu Yuan demanded what was going on and what was with the aura on Haoxian. As he continued to release the tremendous amount of aura, Haoxian marveled that it was amazing, and as he pondered if it was what it felt like to be strong, he exclaimed that it felt great. The materialized beast seemed to have fused with Haoxian, and as he taunted the immortals to come at him, calling them little brats, he declared that they wanted to prey on the weak so that day he would teach them a lesson. But suddenly, the aura around Haoxian dispersed, which startled him while Liu Yuan was speechless. Haoxian looked so panicked, and as he questioned what was going on, he lamented that the brief experience shouldn't end so quickly. The system screen appeared above him, congratulating him for activating the Great Sage card and informing him that his Great Sage would arrive on the battlefield in 10 minutes. The color drained from Haoxian's face when he read that it would take 10 minutes. He complained as he wondered why the system hadn't mentioned the cooldown earlier, and he conceded that it was so awkward. Tears continued to flow out of Haoxian's eyes as he feared that he was really going to die at that time, while Liu Yuan grabbed him by the collar and demanded that he tell him what that aura was earlier. But Liu Yuan was shocked when someone called for his attention and addressed him as the one without the fur. A huge dragon roared loudly while a person, who was exuding a strong aura, was standing on top of a rock that was surrounded by fierce monkeys, and he challenged Liu Yuan what he was looking at when he was talking to him. The person was the target that Haoxian was looking for, the Monkey King, rookie stage Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong inquired of the immortals if they were the guys who had been hiding in the shadows and hunting his monkey descendants. Liu Yuan exclaimed as he felt that Sun Wukong was at a Demon King level, and he pondered how Sun Wukong appeared in such an outlying place because killing a few of his subordinates shouldn't be enough to warrant that. Liu Yuan released a dark energy in his hand, and he remarked that he had come out to have some fun but ended up in trouble, and he swore as it was already too late to call the ancestors at that moment. He released an array and began charging it. Liu Yuan questioned the other immortals what they were waiting for and urged them to buy him some time, and the time for 2 high-level spells was enough. The immortals panicked, and as one of them challenged Liu Yuan for really daring to assert that when it was a Demon King, which is why they couldn't even secure half the time for a low-level spell, the Lady Immortal declared that it was over and she was going to die there when she hadn't even found a man yet. Liu Yuan was enraged and immediately ordered to stop with the nonsense because, as long as his treasure could gather enough energy, even a Demon King would die. Hearing what Liu Yuan proclaimed, Sun Wukong responded nonchalantly if that really was the case. He was just leisurely lying there, and as he addressed Liu Yuan, a young man, he asserted that he was quite confident, so he would wait for him. Sun Wukong advised not to worry and put more effort into preparing his spells. If it was not enough, he could give him more time. The other immortals were horrified by what Sun Wukong just uttered. Meanwhile, Hoaxian looked pleased when the system notified him that his great sage would arrive on the battlefield in 8 minutes, and he was thinking that it was just a bit more. On the other hand, Liu Yuan looked so evil as he announced that it was good, and he reiterated that he confirmed it himself, so if he didn't want to lose face in front of his monkey descendants, he shouldn't play tricks. 5 minutes later, Liu Yuan had already managed to produce a strong whirlwind of aura. Sun Wukong stood up, and he queried Liu Yuan if it was finally done because he couldn't barely contain himself from waiting. He smirked confidently. Liu Yuan was standing on top of the whirlwind of aura with the array he created earlier, right above him. He was laughing triumphantly as he taunted Sun Wukong a foolish monkey. And as he interrogated him how he could be so stupid, just like the villains in novels, he revealed to Sun Wukong that it was the real immortal weapon bestowed upon him by the ancestors. And the only drawback was that the casting time was too long. When the other immortals heard Liu Yuan mention the immortal weapon, he wondered if it could be the divine weapon of the immortals in the heavenly palace, and the Lady Immortal confessed that in her entire life, she had never seen such a thing, so in that case, even if the Demon King wasn't afraid, he would die. Liu Yuan directed the aura towards Sun Wukong, and as he labeled him a filthy monkey, he predicted that he would see him in the next life. Multiple smaller arrays emerged from the huge array, and they were all firing a beam of aura. Liu Yuan laughed menacingly as he saw that the beams of aura were coming at Sun Wukong, who hadn't moved from where he was standing. The other immortals crouched on the ground, and they exclaimed that the pressure was too strong. Meanwhile, the monkeys were also affected by the attack, and they were doing their best to fend for themselves. On the other hand, Liu Yuan was enthusiastically urging Sun Wukong to die. The beams of aura were about to hit Sun Wukong, and he still hadn't moved from where he was standing. Sun Wukong was unfazed, and he was grinning confidently. The beams of aura hit Sun Wukong, creating a loud, booming sound, and Liu Yuan looked pleased. Liu Yuan laughed maniacally as he commanded to turn into ashes, and as he labeled him a damn stinky monkey, he emphasized that he stated that as long as the immortal weapon was triggered, he would die for sure. But Liu Yuan was surprised when someone pointed out that they thought he might be celebrating a bit too early. Liu Yuan turned to look in the direction where the voice was coming from. He saw Sun Wukong, who had grown bigger while releasing his aura, and Liu Yuan couldn't help but swear and demand how there was no damage to Sun Wukong at all. And he even got bigger. Sun Wukong swung his arm, and he instructed to watch closely as he would show him what real power it is. He threw his punch but intentionally missed Liu Yuan, and Liu Yuan looked so terrified as the mountains behind him got destroyed by what Sun Wukong did. The other immortals were also so dumbfounded that their eyes bulged out of their sockets as they pointed out that the fist wind punched a hole in the mountain. While calling Liu Yuan a little guy, Sun Wukong queried him if he wanted to continue. Liu Yuan knelt on the ground, and he was extremely disappointed. He began crying his eyes out and called Sun Wukong the Great Monkey, proclaimed that he is unparalleled in the world while requesting that he spare him and leave him a way out. Sun Wukong began to shrink, and the other immortals were on guard as he began to approach them. Suddenly, Sun Wukong noticed something. His eyes were gleaming menacingly as he focused his gaze towards Hoaxian. Hoaxian was horrified when he noticed that Sun Wukong was looking at him. With still 40 seconds before the great sage arrived on the battlefield, Hoxian began sweating profusely as he pleaded to Sun Wukong that he was not with the Immortals while calling him Mr. Big Shot, and in the back of his mind, he was cursing and begging for Sun Wukong not to look at him because he was just a little nobody, so there was no reason why he would pay attention to him. There were still 35 seconds left when Sun Wukong swung his arms towards Hoxian, and you remarked that since earlier, Hoxian has been giving him a very uncomfortable feeling. With 33 seconds left on the clock, Hoxian implored Sun Wukong to wait a minute because he actually came to apprentice himself to the Great King. Sun Wukong stopped as he got intrigued when Hoxian mentioned being an apprentice, and with 30 seconds left on the clock, Hoxian tried to convince Sun Wukong to accept the bow from his disciple, and he shared that he had been hearing about the great deeds of the Monkey King of Flower Fruit Mountain since he was 3 years old, so in the village every child's biggest dream was to go to Flower Fruit Mountain to apprentice under him. With 25 seconds left on the clock, Hoxian continued to tell Sun Wukong that it was the day where he finally had the opportunity to fulfill his wish, and he beseeched him to accept him as his disciple. Otherwise, he wouldn't live anymore, and in the back of his mind, he was thinking that he was almost there, just a little longer. Sun Wukong was amused, so he inquired Hoxian if he was really that famous outside, and Hoxian asserted that it was absolutely true, even swearing by the heavens and thunder. With 5 seconds left on the clock, Sun Wukong's expression suddenly turned menacing, and he declared that in that case he deserved to die even more. There were still 3 seconds before the great sage arrived, and Hoxian was so startled by what Sun Wukong just stated. Hoxian looked so alarmed because there were still 2 seconds left on the clock and Sun Wukong was already releasing a tremendous amount of aura, proclaiming that humans were simply not worthy of being his disciples. With 1 second left, Sun Wukong delivered his attack and a huge explosion occurred. The explosion caused the ground to break. Sun Wukong looked around, and as he questioned what was going on, he wondered where Hoxian was while confirming if he was just a mortal. Suddenly, he was stupefied when he noticed something behind him. Someone with golden armor and shoes was emitting a golden aura. The person, who seemed to be Hoxian, released a tremendous amount of aura as he voiced that the 12 peak bosses truly deserved to be called as such. He glanced at Sun Wukong behind him and observed that their strength was truly terrifying. Meanwhile, Sun Wukong looked agitated, and he was pondering what the hell was going on because he was feeling a strong sense of familiarity and closeness. Hoxian stood on top of a rock while exuding a tremendous amount of aura, and both Liu Yuan and Sun Wukong were being affected by its strong pressure. Hoxian's eyes looked imposing and menacing as he looked down on them. Sun Wukong was still confused about what was going on, as he found the aura familiar. Suddenly, Hoxian disappeared, and everyone was on guard. Liu Yuan was astonished when he felt that a presence was appearing behind him. Hoxian was holding a super grudge against Liu Yuan and had smacked him from behind with his staff, while calling him an old coot and reminding him that he was just trying to refine him into a blood key pill. He began slamming Liu Yuan on the ground, and urged him that they hurt each other, asserted that it was survival of the fittest. While Hoxian was smacking him on the butt and asking him where his arrogance from earlier was, Liu Yuan was completely defenseless, and he referred to Hoxian as his senior as he kept admitting that he was wrong. Sun Wukong was completely taken aback by what he was witnessing. He grinned so evilly and remarked that it was getting interesting. Sun Wukong released his dragon as he declared that it was enough, and he shouldn't waste time with the useless person, urging him to come and play with him. Sun Wukong looked so excited, while Hoxian simply glanced at him. The dragon also looked excited and was ready to pounce. Suddenly, they were surprised when someone exclaimed and addressed them as bold, evil monsters. It was a man that was floating up in the air while being surrounded by an orb of electrifying aura. Someone shouted with all their might that it was an actual immortal. It was Liu Yuan, and he looked so desperate while he pleaded with the immortal to save him. Liu Yuan began laughing, and he proclaimed to Sun Wukong that a true immortal from the heavenly palace had descended to earth, so they, the monsters, were doomed. The immortal smiled, and he complimented Liu Yuan for his well-chosen words. Still addressing them as monsters, the immortal questioned Hoxian and Sun Wukong why they weren't kneeling in the presence of a celestial from the heavenly palace. Sun Wukong countered that the heavenly palace was a joke, so when he had time in the future, he would go up there and smash it to pieces. He used his move, the Golden Light Binding spell, and directed it at the immortal. Sun Wukong managed to bind the immortal, but the immortal looked like he didn't care about it. He taunted Sun Wukong as an ignorant fool and inquired if it was his best. The Immortal flexed his muscles to break free from Sun Wukong's restraints, and he was about to state that he could easily escape with that level of power, but he was not able to finish his sentence. He looked so confused, as Sun Wukong's restraints were still intact. The Immortal tried again with all his might, insisting that it was easy. He kept trying again and again while he maintained that it was easy, but the restraints were still intact. The Immortal looked so appalled as he pondered what was going on, and he figured that he had been in seclusion for a few years, but the monsters in the lower realm had become so powerful. Sun Wukong's dragon suddenly appeared, and it was approaching the Immortal while baring its fangs. The Immortal looked so terrified while he admitted that he was just passing by and was trying to act cool. Addressing the other Immortals as friends, he advised them to be cautious when trying to act cool, and the dragon chomped on him. Liu Yuan was sweating profusely, and he was stuttering while he confessed that the celestial was gone just like that, and he questioned the author if that wasn't too hasty. Suddenly, the dragon's eyes glistened. The skies seemed to have opened as a huge pillar of light shined upon the dragon, and everyone was shocked. Sun Wukong was amused, remarking that the dragon actually broke through. Liu Yuan lay on the ground as he lost it, and as he questioned the Immortal if he came all the way down just to give them experience points, he lamented, admitting that he was totally doomed at that moment. The dragon emerged from the clouds and its color changed. It roared ferociously, and the Immortals revealed their astonishment, noting that the dragon was as huge as the Flower Fruit Mountain. The dragon was laughing in his mind as he revealed that he actually mutated and evolved into the 12-winged Dragon King, and it was so damn awesome. While calling Sun Wukong a stinky monkey, the dragon boasted that since he had evolved, he was afraid that he would already be the master. But the dragon was surprised when a huge golden pillar emerged from the skies, appearing behind him. Tears welled at the corners of his eyes, and he was sweating profusely while he cursed. A huge explosion occurred as the pillar smacked the dragon on the ground, and the impact was so strong that it created multiple ripples of shockwaves on the ground. A huge hole was left on the ground with a pool of blood in the middle, and the first 12-winged flying dragon in history was dead. It died at the age of 765. Sun Wukong was completely petrified and speechless by what he just witnessed. The other monkeys were also petrified, and as they observed that Flower Fruit Mountain had disappeared too, they inquired where they were going to sleep that night. Suddenly, Hoxian chuckled, and he sheepishly asked them to forgive him because it was his first time using the golden cudgel, so it was not easy to control the size. Sun Wukong was still looking at the huge hole in front of him, while Hoxian was behind him. He looked so scared, and he revealed that if that stick came down, even he wouldn't be able to handle it. He criticized Hoxian, asking him what kind of hero relies on weapons, and he challenged and asserted that if he had the guts, they should fight bare-handed, and when Hoxian heard it, he responded that it was no problem. Hoxian asked Sun Wukong what he wanted to compete in, strength, speed, or endurance, and proposed that it was up to him to choose what he was best at as he would accept any challenge. Sun Wukong argued that he relies on his weapon's power, so he should stop pretending, and declared that he would use his weakest attribute, speed, to defeat him. Hoxian questioned Sun Wukong when he heard that his weakest attribute was speed. At the back of his mind, Hoxian was holding back a laugh while calling Sun Wukong a stinky monkey, and he claimed that he was Sun Wukong's future self, so he knew what he was good at. Sun Wukong began releasing a tremendous amount of aura as he stated that at the edge of the continent, on Penglai Island, there is a supreme infinite lotus, and he inquired if he knew it, to which Hoxian acknowledged that he did. Sun Wukong proclaimed that whoever retrieves a lotus leaf wins. He started running immediately. He called for Somersault Cloud. A golden cloud suddenly appeared, and Sun Wukong grabbed it. He quickly rose to the sky and announced that he would take the lead. Liu Yuan looked so horrified when he heard them talking about Penglai Island, and he exclaimed that it was 1,000,000 miles away. As he turned to look at Hoxian, he was surprised when he saw that he had disappeared, and Liu Yuan pointed out that the other monkey was gone too. Meanwhile, at Penglai Fairy Island Group, something crashed into one of the islands. It was Sun Wukong, and he crashed face first on the ground. Sun Wukong cursed at Somersault Cloud and reprimanded him for always taking off without thinking about landing, but Somersault Cloud simply gave him the middle finger and flew away. Sun Wukong's face was filled with bruises, and he muttered that Somersault Cloud was a jerk who was definitely doing it on purpose. Suddenly, Sun Wukong noticed a colorful lotus floating in the sky. He laughed and boasted that 28 lotus leaves were there, so it looked like he had won. Half an incense stick later, Sun Wukong arrived outside the Flower Fruit Mountain, where Hoxian was already waiting for him. Hoxian remarked that he was back so late and that he had been there for a while. Sun Wukong explained that he just happened to be dealing with something else, and he refused to admit that his face was still slightly painful from the fall, and he was afraid of falling again, so he chose to fly back on his own. He taunted to stop showing off, because there was no use coming back early because if he didn't get the lotus leaf, he still lost. Hoxian was amused, and he questioned Sun Wukong how he knew he didn't get it. Showing off the colorful lotus, Sun Wukong laughed, and he bragged that it was because he got the entire lotus flower before him. Liu Yuan and the other immortals were astonished when they confirmed that it was really the supreme infinite lotus from Pinglai Fairy Island, and they marveled that it meant that he ran back and forth across the continent in just half an incense stick's time, which was unbelievable. The eyes of the female monkeys turned into hearts as they idolized that Sun Wukong was truly the great sage and was simply a god. Sun Wukong laughed, and he proudly claimed that it was just a little show of skill. Hoxian conceded nothing, but he was looking at Sun Wukong with an unamused expression on his face. He went and admitted that he didn't get the lotus leaf, which made Sun Wukong laugh even more, demanding that he admit defeat. But Hoxian revealed that there was a reason why he didn't get the lotus. Sun Wukong looked so skeptical as Hoxian confessed that he didn't expect his body to be so fast that as soon as he ran, it immediately attracted the attention of the gods, so just to be safe, he hurriedly stopped and didn't go for the lotus. The other immortals were also astonished by what Hoxian disclosed. Sun Wukong laughed so much that he began crying as he teased that he was such a braggart for talking about attracting the attention of the gods, and he even jokingly suggested that he should have suggested that he scared the Jade Emperor. The other monkeys also laughed as Sun Wukong joked that if he could really do that with his abilities, he would perform a handstand and eat dung on the spot. Sun Wukong advised that it was dangerous enough earlier that he wanted to perform it again. Hoxian smiled confidently as he urged to watch closely and not blink. He put his weight on his toes to prepare himself to run. There was a sudden burst of golden energy, and a beam of golden light shot straight from the starting point. The beam of light was Hoxian, who was running at an extreme speed. He started running around in circles, and the light he was making was lighting up the ground. Suddenly, the light Hoxian was creating began rising and forming into a tornado. It continued to rise until it reached the sky. The immortals were so astonished that their jaws dropped. The monkeys were extremely surprised as well. Suddenly, the sky turned red, and everyone was alarmed. An eye in the sky started to appear. Suddenly, the sky was filled with multiple eyes, and their gazes were fixed on the ground where Sun Wukong was standing. Sun Wukong was so astonished and horrified by the scene. He was startled when Hoxian suddenly stopped running in front of him. Hoxian himself was also scared, and as he pondered if it was really necessary to go all out like that, he relievedly noted that thankfully there was a deceptive concealment, but he shouldn't do such a thing too casually next time as it was too dangerous. At that moment, the young great sage, Sun Wukong, felt an emotion he had never experienced before, like when a stone jumped out and hit him. Afterward, as he envisioned himself being helpless at the palm of Hoxian's hand, he realized that what he was feeling was called frustration. The system congratulated Hoxian because the young Sun Wukong's potential has increased by 5% and his current potential is 15%.
Sun Wukong was devastated, and he admitted that he lost, but he declared that he refused to accept it because Hao Xian definitely relied on the luxurious equipment he had on him, so it was an unfair victory. Hao Xian suggested to Su Wukong that he lend him all his equipment to wear, which surprised Sun Wukong. He explained that in that way, Su Wukong wouldn't have any excuses. Sun Wukong quickly cheered up, and as he agreed with Hao Xian, he challenged him, stating that he should bring it on and that he should watch as he beat him until he was rolling on the ground. But Sun Wukong suddenly remembered something after what he uttered, and he was flustered as he protested that it was not right. He quickly ran away as he scoffed at Hao Xian, and as he announced that he would let him off the hook for that day and they would battle another day, he called everyone and ordered that they should go. Hao Xian was puzzled by what Sun Wukong did, and he looked at him suspiciously. Meanwhile, the other monkeys were horrified as they called Sun Wukong and reminded him that it was a golden opportunity, and with the equipment change, Hao Xian wouldn't stand a chance against him. They warned that Flower Fruit Mountain had been taken down, so Sun Wukong must seek revenge. Otherwise, there was no way they could explain it to their ancestors and predecessors. Sun Wukong grinned as he agreed and remarked that he got it as it was so annoying and Hao Xian should bring him the equipment as he would go change on the side. On the other hand, Hao Xian was having a feeling that something was suspicious. A few moments later, Sun Wukong hid behind the rocks as he removed his equipment while the other monkeys stayed far away and observed. While removing his equipment, Sun Wukong muttered that he should hurry up and change because it would be disastrous if he was caught. But he was startled when he noticed that Hao Xian was standing on top of the rocks and was snickering while looking at him. Sun Wukong was so alarmed that his eyes turned bloodshot. Hao Xian quickly ran away while laughing at Sun Wukong. And Sun Wukong was pissed, so he chased after Hao Xian as he shouted that he should come back and stop right there. But in the midst of him chasing Hao Xian, Sun Wukong froze when he noticed something. Sun Wukong realized that he came out from behind the rocks towards the other monkeys, and he was speechless when he saw that they were staring at him. The other monkeys had a horrified look on their faces. They were looking at the cute and colorful tattoo on Sun Wukong's arm. Liu Yuan and the other immortals were also horrified when they saw it, and as Liu Yuan asked if it was a Demon King level tattoo, the Lady Immortal cursed. Sun Wukong was enraged, and as he demanded why they were laughing, what was so funny and why a Demon King couldn't have cute tattoos, he cursed and vowed that he was going to kill all of them. But one of the monkeys stopped him and advised that he should calm down because no one was laughing at him and he was being too sensitive. He had a breakdown, and while he cried on the ground, he was asking why a macho man couldn't like cute things, how he could face others with that old face of his, and how he could gain their respect. After half an incense stick's time, Sun Wukong finally pulled himself together and wore Hao Xian's equipment. Sun Wukong was still embarrassed, and he kept reminding himself not to think about it, and that he should keep his focus entirely on the battle. He began releasing his powerful aura while Hao Xian just watched from below, without any equipment on his body. Looking at how powerful he was, Sun Wukong laughed maniacally and declared that it was really an equipment issue. His eyes lit up, and an aura began to ooze out of him. Sun Wukong charged towards Hao Xian with his weapon at an extreme speed, and he roared that Hao Xian should prepare to die. But even though Sun Wukong was so fierce and was about to hit him, Hao Xian was still calm, and as he looked at his fist, he asked himself what he should name that punch. Hao Xian began gathering his aura at his fist, and as he confidently swung it, he announced that he should call it the ordinary fist. When Sun Wukong saw that, he criticized that it was a flawed technique and asked Hao Xian how he could possibly defeat him. There was a huge explosion of aura, and it was so powerful that it destroyed the ground in the area. The explosion even created a shockwave that traveled through the entire continent. In the instant of the exchange of punches, the universe was perceived. Flowers, desolation, pain, consciousness, belief, words, unknown, communication, release, freedom, hope, restraint, reason, recurrence, time, regret, burning, redemption, love, bond, silence, destiny, darkness, blood, rebirth, and chaos. Sun Wukong seemed to have seen through all truths in his fledgling state, and he looked like he was in so much pain. Tears were flowing out of his eyes because, at the same time, it was as if he lost everything. Sun Wukong lay at the center of the huge hole on the ground while Hao Xian stood above him. He looked completely out of it and couldn't move from where he was lying. Sun Wukong's expression was filled with horror and despair. Hao Xian asked Sun Wukong if he couldn't comprehend it and explained that it was called Dao Intention, which is a kind of power of the realm. Sun Wukong looked so desperate as he questioned Hao Xian on how he could achieve it. Hao Xian explained that Sun Wukong's martial path was too fixated on perfection, whether it was pursuing the strongest weapon or the eternal path to immortality. It was all the same, and he knew himself the best, but he had overlooked the fundamental truth that the way is not complete. He stated that only by abandoning perfection and embracing both reason and chaos could he cultivate the true essence, the realm of the great Tao, and at that moment, martial arts ceased to be mere techniques and become art, a realm. Sun Wukong was horrified as he asked if the great Tao was not completed. His eyes were filled with horror and despair as he cried that the great Tao was not completed. Sun Wukong's every image of himself shattered as he yelled and lamented that the great Tao was not completed, and in an instant, he felt that certain things within his heart collapsed completely. But what emerged from it was a brand new door, and he stood in front of it. Sun Wukong opened the door, and as he entered, he saw that what was inside was a path he had never imagined, a brand new journey. The system notified Hao Xian that the potential value had successfully increased to 30%, and congratulated him on completing the mission. He was given the reward of the peak character card, Neja. Wiping his tears, Hao Xian expressed that he was so happy as he didn't think that the reward for every mission was a peak character card, so finally, his safety was assured. Sun Wukong suddenly kneeled in front of Hao Xian, called him master, and as he declared that Hao Xian was his benefactor, he requested that he accept him as his disciple. He bowed down and pleaded with Hao Xian, and Hao Xian responded that taking on a disciple is not impossible, but he must promise him one condition. Sun Wukong gladly requested that Hao Xian go ahead, and he replied that whatever condition it was, he could agree to it. Hao Xian stated that it was simple and that Sun Wukong must never again engage with any overly cute and girly things. Sun Wukong was so shocked with what he heard that he was petrified. He was horrified and taken aback, and he inquired what kind of request that was. Hao Xian grinned evilly as he teased that as long as Sun Wukong could swear to it, he would accept him as his disciple. Sun Wukong trembled as he tried to choose between two imaginary buttons, and Hao Xian commented that it was his choice to either be a true macho man or a bizarre effeminate. He was so horrified that he trembled while he tried to make his choice. Sun Wukong sweated profusely, and he turned purple as he tried to solidify his decision. But Sun Wukong clenched his chest as he apologized to Hao Xian and confessed that he couldn't do it. He aggressively covered his eyes and lamented that he also knew that a strong person shouldn't have such strange preferences, but he just couldn't resist it, and Hao Xian didn't understand. Hao Xian covered his mouth, and he tried his best to stop himself from laughing. Sun Wukong was puzzled when Hao Xian wrapped his arms around him and mocked that he was a fool because he was just teasing him. Despite being one of those guys who just mocked others a moment ago, Hao Xian explained that as long as it doesn't harm anyone or go against reason, they have the right to like whatever they want and curse those guys who mocked Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong was stunned when Hao Xian promised that whoever dares to say that he was strange in the future, he, as his master, will beat them to a pulp with him. Hao Xian started walking, and as he asked Sun Wukong why he was still standing there dumbfounded, he urged that he should keep up, to which Sun Wukong agreed and immediately complied. The other monkeys chased after Hao Xian and demanded that they also wanted to become his disciples, while the Immortals did the same and insisted that they should count them in. But Hao Xian looked annoyed, and he retorted that there was no need because too many people would only increase his risk factor. Hao Xian suddenly remembered something, and he wondered what the deal was with that fantasy world. He noted that Sun Wukong's followers were clearly Western creatures. Hao Xian recalled that the magic formations seemed to be the same too, but he realized that the locals didn't seem to find it strange at all, and it was like they were accustomed to it. And he wondered what was going on at that time when it was stated that the Western mysterious organization would only invade suddenly after 700 years. Suddenly, the system screen popped up in front of Hao Xian, and he was so startled that he requested for the system not to appear so suddenly like that because his heart couldn't handle it. The system notified Hao Xian that Mission 3 had been activated, and it was to find the young Valkyrie in her fledgling stage and to increase her potential value to 30%. When Hao Xian observed that it was the first ever female Valkyrie, and those people's titles were truly intimidating, one after another. Evening came, and at Daughter's Country Palace, the place was riddled with lights. Meanwhile, in a space filled with magic circles, someone was being restrained by chains while a sitting figure watched them from afar. A demon was being restrained by those chains. He clicked his tongue as he talked to the person sitting behind him and commented that they were truly befitting to be the ruler of a nation because those small sects and factions were simply not on the same level. The demon was talking to the Queen of Daughter's Country, Queen Ziliang, and she boasted that it took 3 days of fierce battle to defeat him, the Demon King, so he shouldn't struggle any longer in feudal resistance. The Demon King's face suddenly turned into a sinister skull, and its eyes lit up as it faced Ziliang. But Ziliang was unfazed, and she remarked that even if the Demon King turned into a pile of crushed bones, there was no escaping because once the 1,000 machine formation is completed, no one in the cultivation could break it, and she has confidence in that. Suddenly, everything turned black and white as the Demon King acknowledged that indeed, the first master of continental formations is not just an empty reputation. But he questioned Ziliang what would happen if he revealed that he had already mastered the true power of realms. Ziliang was astonished when she heard what the Demon King claimed. When the colors came back, she was surprised when she saw that the space beneath her feet began to warp. Ziliang was quickly sucked in by the warp in space, and she tried to reach out her hand to hold on to something. But Ziliang disappeared into the warp, and everything turned black and white again. She found herself standing on the other side of the warp in space, and the place was also devoid of colors. Suddenly, someone inquired what they did and if it wasn't amazing, and Ziliang quickly looked behind her, where the voice was coming from. The darkness disappeared, but Ziliang was astonished when she saw that huge skulls towered over her, and one of them was the Demon King, who proclaimed that it was his power of realms, the power of domain. The Demon King declared that in there, he was truly a divine being, the one who rules over everything. He quickly restrained Ziliang with chains, and he boasted that she could only be manipulated by him. The Demon King laughed and announced that Ziliang lost, so from that day onwards, the entire Daughter's Country belongs to him as his personal possession. Ziliang looked so helpless as she was tied up, and the Demon King reminded her that, of course, it includes her, his dearest queen. 7 days later, on the outskirts of Daughter's Country, the scenery looked so peaceful, and someone walked towards the border gates. It was Hao Xian, and he looked so exhausted as he complained that they could already see Daughter's Country, but he really didn't want to do that damn mission. It was originally just a short trip for his disciple, but it was dragged out until the last day. Meanwhile, Sun Wukong was hiding behind a rock, and as he called Hao Xian, he asked if it was really going to end up like that. Hao Xian excitedly challenged Sun Wukong if he had improved and demanded that he should quickly let him see. Sun Wukong had turned into a cute child, and he was flustered as he confessed that he does like cute things, but it was a bit too exaggerated. He covered his face that turned really red, and he inquired if it wasn't too embarrassing. Hao Xian questioned why he was embarrassed and if he didn't tell him that it was part of his training, which he would understand naturally in the future. He hugged the embarrassed Sun Wukong and teased how he could harm him when he was so adorable. But in his evil mind, Hao Xian thought that the true intention was actually because the chances of encountering enemies when having such a harmless mascot are directly reduced by 50%. While Hao Xian and Sun Wukong talked, they were both unaware that a man was hiding behind a rock and was observing them from a distance. The man had a sinister smile on his face as he watched the two of them. The man who hid behind the rock showed himself and approached Hao Xian and Sun Wukong. He was a small man with a huge companion, and he stated that it seemed the two of them were unfamiliar faces there, likely travelers who had just arrived. The small man mentioned that after a long journey, Hao Xian must be in need of accommodation, so they had exciting programs to recharge his energy. Hao Xian looked confused as his mind took time to load and process the information he just got. He looked confused and horrified as he began to imagine different sorts of establishments. Hao Xian smiled awkwardly, while in his mind, his own self asked him what on earth he was thinking, scolded himself, and reprimanded himself that he shouldn't bring his filthy thoughts from Earth to that pure cultivation world because it was a different world, so it was impossible, and it must be his mistake. But the small man leaned in to whisper to Hao Xian and revealed that they were all young and beautiful ladies. Hao Xian was both surprised and confused when he realized that his first interpretation of the offer was right. He quickly ran away and repeatedly proclaimed that there was no need because he was still underage, but the huge man grabbed his sleeve and stopped him from running away. The small man smiled sinisterly as he confessed that, to be honest with his dear guests, their boss had already taken control of Daughter's country, so all the beauties in the entire city were theirs for the taking. Hao Xian was surprised when he heard what the small man remarked. The small man inquired if Hao Xian didn't believe him, and he pulled out a golden orb as he remarked that he should take a look at that. The orb started to emit a bright light. The light the orb emitted displayed different kinds of women, and the small man proudly boasted that they were all famous figures from Daughter's country, and he asked Hao Xian what he thought about that and if it was exciting enough. Hao Xian was astonished when he saw the images that were shown to him. The small man added that if Hao Xian felt like it was not thrilling enough, they had even more exciting programs, and an image of a woman on the verge of tears and filled with bruises was displayed. He smiled sinisterly and declared that, as for the intensity, there was nothing they couldn't do if Hao Xian could imagine it. And an image of a woman who was in pain and filled with whip burns was displayed. Sun Wukong was enraged by what he saw, and he cursed at the small man. He punched the small man across the face and shouted that he was a bastard. The small man was taken aback, and he asked Sun Wukong what he was planning to do. Sun Wukong was in a fiery rage, and as he repeated the small man's question, he grabbed his throat while he rapped his fist with aura. His aura oozed out of his eyes and was filled with rage, and he declared that, of course, it was to uphold justice. But Hao Xian suddenly yelled and pleaded that he should stop, which confused Sun Wukong and made him freeze. Hao Xian quickly grabbed Sun Wukong while he awkwardly laughed at the small man, and as he apologized for the trouble, he claimed that his disciple was ignorant, so they would leave immediately. He quickly ran away as he bid farewell, and the two men were left speechless. The huge man queried the small man if they were just letting them go like that. The small man suggested that they should let them go because such a cowardly person couldn't possibly be the one they were looking for. A few moments later, Hao Xian walked with Sun Wukong behind him. Sun Wukong was sulking, and he looked so pissed. Noticing Sun Wukong's reaction, Hao Xian inquired if he was angry, but Sun Wukong quickly looked away and replied no. Hao Xian commented that if what those men revealed was true, that their boss had taken control of the entire Daughter's country. He questioned if they really needed to resort to sneaky tactics like soliciting customers on the street when they possessed such formidable strength. Sun Wukong was astonished when Hao Xian observed that he felt like those men were spreading information in a small area, waiting for someone to take the bait because he didn't think about it that much. Hao Xian concluded that Daughter's country might just be a lure for those people, and they had bigger plans, but no matter what, he must completely eliminate those scum so they couldn't tip them off. He was surprised when Sun Wukong suddenly bowed to him and confessed that he was wrong. Sun Wukong looked flustered as he admitted that he, Hao Xian's disciple, mistakenly thought of him as a timid and trouble-averse coward. Hao Xian was stunned and was hit in the bullseye when Sun Wukong admitted that he even speculated that his previous strength was just a fleeting illusion, so he deserved punishment. He awkwardly laughed and denied it, saying it was impossible and there was no way he could be that kind of person. But in reality, he instinctively ran away in fear earlier, but he realized that something was wrong. Unaware that someone had just landed on the tree behind him, Hao Xian suggested that they should not waste any more time and they would sneak into the city to catch those men off guard, to which Sun Wukong responded and agreed to follow his master's lead. The two of them were stunned when the person on the trees called for their attention and labeled them as scoundrels. It was a lady who was carrying dolls, and as she looked down on Hao Xian and Sun Wukong, she announced that their companions had already fallen and demanded where they thought they could run. Hao Xian was surprised when he noticed something. He noticed the dolls that the lady was carrying, and as he realized that they were the same guys from earlier, he inquired what kind of sorcery that was. Suddenly, the system screen appeared, and it congratulated Hao Xian for finding the target person. Hao Xian immediately got nervous when he realized who that person actually was. She was the young Valkyrie, and she looked enraged as she accused them of treating women as playthings. The young Valkyrie lunged towards Hao Xian while wielding her sword, and she yelled that they were scum who had completely crossed the line of her tolerance. Hao Xian was alarmed, and he immediately begged that the young Valkyrie listen to his explanation before she attacked. But Sun Wukong, who had a severe case of a belligerent disorder, smiled sinisterly as he called Hao Xian and remarked that there wasn't really any explanation needed. Sun Wukong charged towards the young Valkyrie with his fist, and he suggested that they should just take action already. Both Sun Wukong and the young Valkyrie charged towards each other. Sun Wukong swung his fist and prepared to deliver his punch. But before he could hit the young Valkyrie, she performed multiple slashing movements with her sword and cut him. Sun Wukong looked helpless as he was cut in half. But someone suddenly shouted no, and the young Valkyrie quickly turned to the direction where the voice was coming from. Sun Wukong disappeared, and the young Valkyrie remarked that it was a clone. He charged at the young Valkyrie again, and he complimented her, saying that she had an impressive reaction. Sun Wukong gathered his aura to his fist and declared that it was too late. A huge pillar of light soared towards the sky as Sun Wukong released his aura and destroyed the ground in the area. The young Valkyrie's body lay at the center of the huge hole on the ground, and Sun Wukong looked over her. She began standing up. Sun Wukong looked excited as he exclaimed that it was rare for the young Valkyrie to take his punch head-on and still move, and currently it was his turn. But before Sun Wukong could finish his sentence, he was surprised when something powerful hit him across the face. Blood spurted all over the place as the young Valkyrie landed multiple slashing attacks on Sun Wukong in an instant. Sun Wukong cursed in his mind as he thought that the young Valkyrie had also landed a hit on him in that instant, so she had such incredible speed. He crashed on the ground, and Hao Xian was taken aback. There was a moment of silence while Sun Wukong lay on the ground, and Hao Xian moved away from him. Sun Wukong quickly got back on his feet and looked agitated. Meanwhile, the young Valkyrie casually wiped off the dirt on her face. Hao Xian was horrified as he commented that she was a strong woman because he didn't think that within 2 rounds, she could wound Sun Wukong like that. While sweating profusely, Hao Xian repeatedly muttered that he should calm down because it was not the right time to use cards. Hao Xian ran towards Sun Wukong as he called for his attention, and he asked him how he was doing and if he could handle it. Sun Wukong's eyes lit up, and he responded that the young Valkyrie was so incredibly strong that if it were before, it would have been hard to say. But currently, with Hao Xian's profound realm, he would definitely win. Hao Xian was surprised when he heard what Sun Wukong declared. He looked so worried as he inquired what Sun Wukong meant and if he had already mastered the power of the realm, to which Sun Wukong proudly confirmed with a yes. Hao Xian was so surprised that he was petrified, and as he asked how it was possible, he muttered that it couldn't be true because he refused to believe it. But Sun Wukong gave Hao Xian a thumbs up and assured him that it was true and that although he couldn't achieve the same level as Hao Xian, he should be able to exhibit it without a problem. He explained that if Hao Xian didn't believe him, he should just watch and see, and he began releasing a powerful aura with all his might. Sun Wukong's eyes turned white as he proclaimed that the Great Tao was never completed. Hao Xian and the young Valkyrie watched as the powerful aura continued to surge out of Sun Wukong while he declared that he would understand and embrace chaos. The young Valkyrie was so surprised by what she saw that she couldn't help but inquire what that peculiar aura was. Sun Wukong put his palms filled with golden aura together, and he stated that he was merging with chaos. The ground was destroyed when Sun Wukong's aura suddenly intensified and surged all over the place, which took Hao Xian by surprise. Sun Wukong managed to form a bright orb of aura at the palm of his hand, and as he raised it up in the air, Hao Xian was so surprised when he saw that, and he exclaimed that it truly was the power of the Great Tao. He observed that the kid merely glanced at it, and he continued to be astonished as Sun Wukong confidently carried the power of the Great Tao in his hand in front of him. Sun Wukong looked so intimidating, and Hao Xian remarked that his comprehension was truly heaven-defying. On the other hand, the young Valkyrie was frozen in place as she looked at Sun Wukong's aura with her eyes wide open. She looked so nervous as she admitted that something felt definitely off because it was a small ball of light, yet it made her feel an unprecedented sensation. In the young Valkyrie's eyes, the ball of light was so huge, and so were Sun Wukong's hands, and she could feel the pressure. She quickly activated her ring as she insisted that she must go all out immediately, otherwise she would truly die. The young Valkyrie quickly summoned multiple swords that surrounded her. She widened her stance, and as she pointed the sword she was wielding towards Sun Wukong, the swords surrounding her immediately followed her and did the same. Hao Xian stood in the middle as the young Valkyrie charged forward and clashed with Sun Wukong's aura. He commented that it was ordinary power, but the imposing pressure was on par with the power of the realm. But Sun Wukong disagreed, and he explained that it wasn't the young Valkyrie's own pressure. He noticed the auras that the swords were releasing, and he pointed out that it was those swords because each of them was a true legendary artifact. As someone who had been searching for a divine artifact for years without success, Sun Wukong cursed as he concluded that he already had a rough idea of the young Valkyrie's background. Sun Wukong got more fierce, and he commanded that in front of Hao Xian's power, they were not worth mentioning at all, so the young Valkyrie should come at him. But Sun Wukong was not able to finish what he was expressing because he felt something, and he was alarmed. He froze in place and looked so surprised as he acknowledged that the power of the Great Tao was in chaos. Sun Wukong's eyes turned white as he expressed his concern and admitted that he couldn't control it anymore. A huge explosion of golden aura occurred, and it filled the entire area. Sun Wukong lost his balance, and while he was falling face first to the ground, he cursed and regretted that it was so close. Hao Xian saw that Sun Wukong crashed on the ground in front of him. He got so worried that he quickly ran towards Sun Wukong and inquired what was wrong and if he was okay. Although he looked so worn out, Sun Wukong reassured him that he was fine. But temporarily, he couldn't move his body because the power of the realm was too overwhelming, and he couldn't control it, so it backlashed. Hao Xian comforted him, saying that it was alright because Sun Wukong could practice more, and he would definitely master it, so as long as he was okay, that was what mattered. He was startled when he heard someone talking. It was the young Valkyrie, and Hao Xian was so horrified when he saw that she was standing on the tree branch above him, and she revealed that she really didn't expect that the subordinates of the Demon King could possess such strength. Her eyes looked so menacing as she admitted that she had underestimated them. Hao Xian stated that the young Valkyrie, Xuan-Nu, should wait a minute. He explained that she had misunderstood and they were not the subordinates of the so-called Demon King. Sun Wukong inquired why Hao Xian was wasting words with Xuan-Nu. Hao Xian kicked Sun Wukong in the face and exclaimed that all he knows is fighting and killing every day, and he should have some wisdom and use his brains. He clarified that the cooldown for the peak card is 10 minutes, and currently, Sun Wukong, their main combat force, was temporarily disabled, so they must first please the mysterious maiden, be like a follower, and act when the opportunity arises. Hao Xian mentioned that they were in fact righteous individuals just like Xuan-Nu, and they planned to rescue people in the Daughter Kingdom. As he asked Xuan-Nu if he was right for assuming she had the same intention, Xuan-Nu confirmed, of course. Xuan-Nu queried if Hao Xian claimed that they were not associates and asked where the evidence was. Hao Xian admitted that they don't really have any, but he believed that a noble and gallant heroine like Xuan-Nu, with such beauty and grace, would never engage in baseless accusations. He remarked that he strongly felt the heroic aura that shone upon Xuan-Nu like stars in the night sky the moment he laid eyes on her, and a person like her, who surely cares for the well-being of the world, wouldn't indiscriminately kill innocent people. Xuan-Nu responded, "Of course, I have always been willing to spare 1,000 lives rather than wrongly take one." But Xuan-Nu continued that since Hao Xian had no evidence, it wouldn't be appropriate for her to let him go, and he shouldn't get too close to her. Hao Xian reassured her that she shouldn't panic because they had a solution. Hao Xian proposed that they accompany Xuan-Nu to the city and suggested that if there were any suspicions, she could just eliminate them directly. Xuan-Nu was unaware that she was completely being led by the nose, and she admitted that what Hao Xian suggested actually seemed like a good idea. She urged that there was no time to waste, so Hao Xian should follow her lead, and while Hao Xian agreed, he confessed that he had successfully deceived her in the meantime. Xuan-Nu mentioned that she is used to being alone and doesn't like others getting too close, so she requested that Hao Xian keep a distance from her. But Hao Xian approached Xuan-Nu and insisted that she shouldn't be so cold-hearted. Xuan-Nu looked enraged as Hao Xian put his hand on her shoulder and asked if they could consider themselves comrades. She quickly swung her sword at Hao Xian and demanded that he move his hand away from her. Hao Xian got terrified by what just happened. He saw the huge damage Xuan-Nu created on the ground. Hao Xian quickly agreed and moved away from Xuan-Nu. A few moments later, they traveled towards the Daughter Kingdom, and Hao Xian maintained his distance from Xuan-Nu. Sun Wukong commented that Xuan-Nu had such an aloof demeanor and she had so many artifacts, so she must be the daughter of the Sword Demon, and Hao Xian asked about the Sword Demon. Sun Wukong inquired if Hao Xian hadn't heard of the Sword Demon Lin Huang. Hao Xian questioned who it was and if it was someone worth Sun Wukong's serious consideration. Sun Wukong explained that Sword Demon Lin Huang is one of the peak figures in the contemporary Heavenly Palace martial ranking. He noted that simultaneously, Sword Demon Lin Huang is also the only known member of the most mysterious organization, Shijia. Hao Xian inquired what the Heavenly Palace martial ranking and Shijia were, and Sun Wukong admitted that he was not entirely sure either, but they probably referred to the most powerful individuals in the Heavenly Palace. Hao Xian argued that it doesn't make sense because someone at that level should have encountered the power of the realm before. Yet when he observed Xuan-Nu, it was evident that it was her first time seeing it, but Sun Wukong stated that he didn't understand. Hao Xian suggested that they exchange some information and listen to each other, so he called Xuan-Nu and proposed that it was not a solution to keep staying so far away. He reasoned that after all, they will be fighting side by side later, so they needed to discuss strategies and plans, and it would be hard to discuss when they were far apart. But Xuan-Nu challenged Hao Xian, asking who declared that they were going to fight side by side, which made Hao Xian wonder if it wasn't safer to fight together and mentioned that Sun Wukong said that he would join in later. Xuan-Nu responded that there was no need because she will handle her own battles on her own and she doesn't need others interfering. Both Hao Xian and Sun Wukong were surprised by what Xuan-Nu asserted. Sun Wukong asked Xuan-Nu why she was acting so high and mighty at such a young age and what made her think that she could definitely win on her own. He began cursing and proclaimed that he was the great king, so Hao Xian covered his mouth and urged him to stop talking. Xuan-Nu explained that she didn't say she would definitely win because if she loses and dies, it will be their turn to intervene naturally, but until then, she doesn't need any help. Hao Xian looked worried when he heard what Xuan-Nu stated. He watched Xuan-Nu's back as she walked ahead of them. Hao Xian remarked that looking at the cold figure in front of him, he didn't know why he felt an indescribable sense of loneliness. A few moments later, Hao Xian announced that they had finally arrived. They stood in front of the gates of the Daughter Kingdom, and a dark aura was oozing out of the place. Hao Xian wondered what situation awaited them behind the door. Xuan-Nu reiterated once again that her affairs don't require anyone's interference. Hao Xian acknowledged that it was understood, and they promised not to interfere because he personally enjoyed spectating and staying safe. Xuan-Nu opened the door, and Hao Xian followed behind her. Her expressions turned dark when she saw the situation inside. They were greeted by a huge monster that looked like a centipede. The monster acted surprised and mocked them, saying another group of idiots had come to them. Hao Xian exclaimed that it was a Demon King level, and he couldn't guarantee his safety, so they needed to come up with a plan. On the other hand, Sun Wukong demanded if they couldn't kick those bugs of the Demon Clan, and he cursed as he described them as disgusting. Sun Wukong and Hao Xian were surprised when Xuan-Nu suddenly charged forward. Hao Xian warned that Xuan-Nu shouldn't charge in so quickly because he hadn't thought of a plan yet, and questioned what would happen if the Demon King attacked from the rear. But Xuan-Nu ignored Hao Xian, and she continued to lunge at the Demon Bug who was preparing to attack as well. The Demon Bug rained down attacks on Xuan-Nu. Xuan-Nu was unfazed, and she continued to move forward, charging toward the Demon Bug's attacks. A huge explosion occurred. The Demon Bug's attack left huge holes in the wall. He taunted that they were ugly humans and that another one bites the dust. But Xuan-Nu was unharmed. Xuan-Nu charged towards the Demon Bug from behind and created a hole in its head. She moved quickly and attacked the Demon Bug multiple times, creating huge holes in its body. The Demon Bug collapsed, and its chopped body parts scattered on the floor. Hao Xian observed that it was just a single strike and a Demon Bug was vanquished. Suddenly, the Demon King arrived, and he clapped as he lamented that it was a pity. Hao Xian and Sun Wukong both turned to look where the Demon King was. Xuan-Nu's attention was also caught by the Demon King. The Demon King remarked that his most beloved pet, so cute and simple, was killed in one blow. He praised that Xuan-Nu was truly worthy of being the bloodline of the Sword Demon. Xuan-Nu inquired if the Demon King knew her father. The Demon King revealed that it was more than just knowing Lin Huang, as it was a deep-seated blood feud, so if he couldn't defeat the old ones, he should target the young ones instead, and he mocked Xuan-Nu by asking if he was shameless enough with that. He laughed and declared that he would activate the power of the realm to its fullest. Xuan-Nu was alarmed when she saw what the Demon King did. On the other hand, Sun Wukong and Hao Xian recognized the power of the realm. The Demon King declared that he would tell Xuan-Nu that in that realm, he is an absolute invincible existence. He proclaimed that a mere movement of his finger was enough to take Xuan-Nu's life. Xuan-Nu was immediately restrained by the Demon King's aura. The Demon King remarked that a mere mortal and the severely wounded Sun Wukong were such a combination that they could not save Xuan-Nu. Xuan-Nu retorted that she never needed anyone to save her. She summoned her swords. The swords quickly surrounded the area and created a sword formation. Xuan-Nu broke the Demon King's restraints. The Demon King questioned how that could be when they were in his domain at the moment. Xuan-Nu responded that there is no such thing as absolute invincibility in that world, and it was merely a matter of having enough strength. But the sword formation, composed entirely of divine artifacts, was enough to contend with the Demon King. She stated that compared to Sun Wukong, the Demon King's power was still weak. Sun Wukong scoffed, and as he chuckled, he asked if the Demon King could be compared to Hao Xian. Hao Xian snapped that Sun Wukong should shut up and inquired what would happen if the Demon King heard them. Back into the fight, the Demon King unleashed his demon art, Skeleton Sea. Multiple skulls floated in the air, and they all faced Xuan-Nu. Xuan-Nu questioned the Demon King what the use of having so many in quantity was. She utilized her sword technique, Cherry Blossoms Fluttering. Xuan-Nu directed the cherry blossom petals towards the Demon King. On the other hand, the Demon King commanded his skulls towards Xuan-Nu. A huge explosion occurred as the two powerful forces clashed with each other. Hao Xian commented that both sides were strong, and as he asked Sun Wukong if he hadn't recovered, Sun Wukong replied not yet, which made him curse, and he muttered that he would prepare to cheat just to be safe because mission characters could not die. The system notified Hao Xian that the Nezha card was activated and that his Nezha would arrive at the battlefield in 5 minutes. Hao Xian was surprised that it was 5 minutes already, and he wondered if that meant that the system evolved every time they completed a mission. Meanwhile, multiple skulls still charged towards Xuan-Nu, and she remarked that so many were missed. Xuan-Nu swung her sword and destroyed the remaining skulls. The Demon King summoned another skull and taunted that Xuan-Nu should take that opportunity to receive another big gift from him. The skull he summoned grew huge. Xuan-Nu shattered the smaller skulls charging at her from earlier, and she quickly ran past them. She commented that quantity doesn't matter compared to size. But she won't lose either. Xuan-Nu used her divine artifact, the Thousand-Wood Phoenix. The Demon King was alarmed when he saw what Xuan-Nu did. On the other hand, Hao Xian remarked that it was almost on par with the Golden Cudgel, and Sun Wukong noted that they were all divine artifacts. Sun Wukong was surprised when he saw Xuan-Nu, and he asked if the Phoenix had descended. Xuan-Nu swung her huge sword. A huge explosion occurred. The attack was so powerful that the Demon King was not able to defend himself against it. The Demon King's eyes turned bloodshot due to pain. A few moments later, Hao Xian and Sun Wukong watched as Xuan-Nu stood beside the Demon King, who was squashed into the ground. The Demon King tried to get back up, and he cursed as he swore that it was not over yet. Xuan-Nu commanded the Demon King to look up and gaze into her eyes. An array suddenly appeared at Xuan-Nu's pupil. The Demon King was entranced by the array Xuan-Nu showed him. He found himself chained to huge swords, and Xuan-Nu was watching him. The Demon King was defeated as he kneeled on the ground. On the other hand, Xuan-Nu triumphantly sat on top of a mountain of skulls. Xuan-Nu asserted that if they were talking about the so-called absolute domain, perhaps her illusion arts were more fitting. She explained that in there, every breath is equivalent to a day outside, and the Demon King would endure hundreds of times the mental pressure. Back in reality, in just 10 breaths, the Demon King was already lying on the ground. His face was sunken, and he was empty. The fog in the area slowly dissipated. Hao Xian was surprised when he saw the state Xuan-Nu and the Demon King were in. He asked what just happened and why it felt like the enemy suddenly lost their fighting spirit, and Sun Wukong remarked that it seemed like the rumored bloodline's secret technique. Sun Wukong explained that it was an abnormal ability possessed only by a very few top-tier clans. He confirmed that it was right because those eyes of Xuan-Nu were definitely it. Back into the fight, Xuan-Nu told the Demon King that he should admit defeat because his current state was no longer capable of being her opponent. The Demon King retorted that indeed, as the Sword Demon's daughter, he knew Xuan-Nu wouldn't be his match. But he questioned Xuan-Nu if she had ever wondered why he chose to attack her specifically in Daughter Kingdom. Xuan-Nu was horrified when she heard what the Demon King revealed. The Demon King sneered that, of course, it was because of the formation, so Xuan-Nu was an idiot. He summoned multiple arrays that piled on top of each other and created a huge formation. A dark, sinister aura quickly swirled around Xuan-Nu as a huge formation appeared beneath her feet. The entire Daughter Kingdom was sandwiched between two formations, and a powerful aura surged through them. Xuan-Nu was pushed towards the ground. She exclaimed that it was such a terrifying pressure. The Demon King asked Xuan-Nu if she was surprised and revealed that the Daughter Kingdom was merely bait from the beginning, and every action was taken to trap her within their ultimate formation. He explained that with the power of an entire nation's formation suppressing just one person, even as a descendant of the Sword Demon, Xuan-Nu had no way to counter it. Xuan Nu released her aura to push back the overwhelming pressure that was pressing her down. She declared that the Demon King was underestimating her. Xuan Nu used her exterior manifestation, Thousand-Handed Sword Emperor. Hao Xian was surprised when he saw what Xuan Nu did. Sun Wukong was also surprised and commented that it was a technique he had never seen before. But the Demon King looked calm, and he simply smiled. Xuan Nu noticed that the Demon King seemed quite calm, so she asked him what it was and if he was confident in facing her ultimate manifestation. The Demon King scoffed and asked Xuan Nu if she was joking and how someone like him, a mere individual, could stand against the trump card given by the Sword Demon, which made Xuan Nu ask the Demon King how he could remain composed. When he heard Xuan Nu's question about him remaining composed, the Demon King explained that it naturally came from careful preparation, and in fact, he had been waiting for her final trump card all along. Xuan Nu was puzzled when she heard what the Demon King revealed. The Demon King summoned multiple arrays again. Xuan Nu was horrified, as she seemed to have realized what the Demon King was doing. Suddenly, her storage ring lit up. The storage ring shined brightly. Bones suddenly burst out of Xuan Nu's chest. Hao Xian and Sun Wukong were astonished. On the other hand, the Demon King giggled and declared that it worked indeed. The Demon King questioned Xuan Nu if she didn't expect that and explained that he had long discovered the weakness of her trump card, which was the original body. He explained that once the manifestation takes form, any damage inflicted on the original body will cause it to collapse and backfire. He stated that with such a powerful manifestation protecting Xuan Nu, the weakness was nothing to fear, but his attack came from within. Xuan Nu's exterior manifestation began dissipating. Hao Xian noted that it was those two dolls from before. He explained that Xuan Nu had stored them in a storage ring, and it was a trap. The Demon King proclaimed that the reverse devouring combined with the National Protection Array was suppressing. He lunged forward to attack Xuan Nu. The Demon King bombarded Xuan Nu with attacks and remarked that at the moment, she was even worse than an ordinary person. He taunted that Xuan Nu liked using special artifacts to turn bad people into dolls and punish them, and as he asked her how his intelligence work was, he sneered that Xuan Nu shouldn't even dare to kill and still consider herself a descendant of the Blood Demon, a worthless being. Xuan Nu crashed into the ground. The Demon King continued to attack her and declared that just like that, she was already unable to continue. He was releasing his powerful aura as he continued to attack Xuan Nu. The Demon King pummeled Xuan Nu with his attacks. Xuan Nu was helpless and extremely injured. The Demon King questioned Xuan Nu if she was in pain and if she regretted it, and he reminded her that his people faced the same emotions when they confronted her father back then. He remarked that if Xuan Nu didn't call her friends for help, she might really die. Xuan Nu was still lying on the ground and couldn't move. She retorted that the Demon King's skills are inferior, and it was his turn to make a move. The Demon King asked Xuan Nu if she wanted him to take action. He replied that it was not that easy of a task. The Demon King declared that he wanted to torture Xuan Nu slowly just like her father did, but he refused and wanted to do it even more cruelly. He stated that Xuan Nu was a bastard who should stop pretending to be indifferent and that she should feel fear. The Demon King suggested that he cripple Xuan Nu's two big white legs as an appetizer before the meal. He fired his powerful aura at Xuan Nu, and it destroyed the ground in front of him. But Xuan Nu disappeared, and the Demon King asked if his swing missed. The Demon King asked who it was. Hao Xian transformed into Neja, and he carried Xuan Nu in his arms while exuding a powerful, fiery aura that swirled around the area. His hair was neatly tied into a double bun. He was also barefoot. Hao Xian remarked that Xuan Nu wouldn't even ask for help until the end. On the other hand, Xuan Nu was astonished. But Xuan Nu panicked as she felt Hao Xian's aura, and as she asked if he was the kid from earlier transformed, Hao Xian requested that Xuan Nu not move randomly because he was still not very skilled at riding that bicycle. The Demon King acknowledged that Hao Xian was indeed not an ordinary person, and he wondered why he couldn't sense any aura from Hao Xian earlier. He cursed in his mind and thought that he couldn't figure out Hao Xian's details, and his body was too weak at the moment, so he must use all the remaining power of his realm to swiftly end the battle, one strike to end Hao Xian's life. The Demon King proclaimed that Hao Xian should prepare to die together with him. Xuan Nu was astonished when she saw that the Demon King's attack was coming at Hao Xian from behind. She shouted that it was the power of the realm, so Hao Xian shouldn't mind her and run. Hao Xian glanced behind him, and his eyes lit up. He replied that it was a contest of realms, so he would show the Demon King. Han Zhao summoned a powerful pillar of light, and it created a shockwave that traveled across the entire kingdom and into the forest around it. Xuan Nu was surprised when she saw what Hao Xian just did. On the other hand, Sun Wukong was smiling proudly. Meanwhile, the animals in the forest hid behind the rocks and trembled in fear. Hao Xian used his skill, the manifestation of the Great Tao, and he announced that it was the true realm. His body glowed, and he glared at the Demon King beneath him. The Demon King was terrified that he lost his balance and fell on the ground. He He trembled in fear and was lost for words. The Demon King's face shriveled, and he was on the verge of tears as he continued to try to speak. Hao Xian landed on the ground. He asked the Demon King what it was about him and demanded that the Demon King say something. Hao Xian remarked that the Demon King's mouth had been open for a while, but he still couldn't utter a word. The Demon King was a powerful carnivorous giant eel in the previous life. He was in an unknown pond. Whenever the other little fish in the pond saw him, some of them fled, and some of them became his food. There was once an invading overlord from outside. The Demon King still charged towards the overlord, and it couldn't escape the same fate either. Gradually, the Demon King became an existence that other little fish dared not to even discuss. Living at the top of the food chain for a long time made the Demon King firmly believe that he was the true strongest ruler in that world. Until one day, a powerful hurricane swept through. The entire pond was lifted up into the clouds, and for the first time in his life, the Demon King saw the truth. His eyes glistened in excitement. The Demon King was up in the clouds, and he saw how huge the world was. He fell into the ocean and realized that there were the true rulers of the ocean. At that moment, the Demon King also opened its mouth wide, remaining silent for a long time. Back into the present, Hao Xian exuded a bright, powerful aura in front of the Demon King. It made the Demon King recall the sense of insignificance and despair from the previous life, as well as the shameful arrogance. The Demon King bowed reverently in front of Hao Xian. He addressed Hao Xian as his boss, and as he declared that he surrendered, he requested that Hao Xian spare him because he was willing to serve him as a loyal servant for the rest of his life. When Hao Xian heard what the Demon King expressed, he replied that he had already wasted his energy for nothing because the Demon King wanted to surrender without even fighting. Hao Xian cursed and shouted that the Demon King should stop with the nonsense and stand up to fight him. But the Demon King repeatedly insisted that he would not dare because he was nothing more than a tiny ant in front of Hao Xian. Hao Xian repeatedly asked the Demon King if he would fight or not, and the Demon King replied that he won't fight even if it means death. Meanwhile, Xuan Nu was still surprised, and she looked at Hao Xian intently. Hao Xian was unaware that on the other side, the incredible power of peak Neja captured Xuan Nu's attention for a long time. Such power, Xuan Nu only felt it from one person, and that person was her father. Since Xuan Nu could remember, she had followed her father to various harsh and frigid places for cultivation. But the majestic figure always left her with nothing but a distant silhouette. Even during meals and sleep, Lin Huang never allowed anyone to come close, and he proclaimed that solitude is the most important quality of a strong person. Xuan Nu sat alone by the fire and only looked at Lin Huang. Despite the unbreakable pain and not being able to comprehend, Xuan Nu always believed in her father. One day, the two of them walked through a forest. Xuan Nu walked behind Lin Huang like she always did. She passed through the bushes and got curious when she saw a fox behind it. The fox was leisurely lying on the snowy ground, and it got surprised when it saw Xuan Nu peeking from the bushes. Xuan Nu looked at the fox with her eyes filled with curiosity. The fox also noticed that her reaction wasn't hostile and smiled. It quickly got up and ran towards Xuan Nu with a bright smile on its face. The fox booped its nose against Xuan Nu's nose, and that was the first time she had intimate contact with another living being. An unfamiliar emotion quickly surged within Xuan Nu's heart. However, in the next moment, Lin Huang arrived. Without hesitation, Lin Huang stomped on the fox, and its blood spurted out of its body. The body of the fox was crushed, and it was left lifeless and disfigured on the ground. Xuan Nu was so surprised with what she saw that she froze and was not able to do anything. Lin Huang asked Xuan Nu what she was doing and if she was planning to adopt the fox like some lowly person. Xuan Nu was still in shock and didn't respond, so Lin Huang demanded that she should answer him. She quickly apologized to Lin Huang. Lin Huang reminded Xuan Nu that solitude and indifference are the best paths to greatness, but he took back his words and added that it should be the only path. Xuan Nu silently mourned the fox, and since that day, she has never dared to entangle with any living being. Day after day, year after year, on the vast icy plain, Xuan Nu's small figure was always alone. And indeed, Lin Huang's words were never wrong because she did indeed start to grow stronger rapidly. But her innocent eyes began to lose their light and grow cold. Xuan Nu's eyes were filled with rage, and it seemed like she silently lost something as well. She continued to walk through the vast icy plain alone. Back into the present, Xuan Nu looked at the not-so-serious man in front of her. Hao Xian carried the Demon King and demanded that he should stand up and fight him, but the Demon King refused and said he won't fight. Xuan Nu remarked that despite having the supposedly inferior personality that Lin Huang spoke of, Hao Xian possessed power that was not inferior to him. For the first time in her life, Xuan Nu began to question Lin Huang, who seemed godlike and magnificent, so she made a crucial decision right away. Xuan Nu walked towards Hao Xian, who was still wrestling with the Demon King. Hao Xian repeatedly complained that the Demon King made him waste his energy while Xuan Nu reluctantly tried to get his attention. He noticed Xuan Nu when she spoke. Xuan Nu asked Hao Xian if he could take her as his disciple. Hao Xian was extremely surprised when he heard what Xuan Nu requested. Suddenly, he heard the system notification. The system notified Hao Xian that the worldview of Xuan Nu underwent a significant change, so her potential value increased to 35%, and the system congratulated him for completing the mission. The system announced that Hao Xian obtained a peak card, and he was excited as he received it. Hao Xian inspected the card that he just received. He asked himself what he had done. It was dark and frigid in the city of the Underworld King. Inside the palace, an attendant observed the young master. The young master channeled his aura towards the dragon pearl in his hand. The attendant watched intently and he looked nervous. The young master's eyes gleamed as he looked ahead. He released a powerful, lightning-like aura. The young master's aura intensified, and it produced a bright light that blinded the attendant. He created cracks on the dragon pearl. The attendant exclaimed his surprise, and he remarked that the young master actually shattered the dragon pearl with just his pressure. And it was amazing because it was the toughest natural material in the underworld. And with his power, even in the heavenly palace, he could rank in the top 100 of the martial arts list. The young master inquired of the attendant how it was possible and how someone like him, a small piece of trash, could be compared to the great figures. But he noted that at least he wouldn't be punished, and he laughed. Suddenly, the king demanded what he laughed at and if he felt proud. The young master replied no and that it was not like that. The king commanded the young master to bring the dragon pearl to him. He queried if it was the capital he dared to be so proud of. The king crushed the dragon pearl in the palm of his hand effortlessly, and the young master was surprised. He questioned if that was it and if he still believed he was amazing. The young master shrank, and he looked dejected as he averted his gaze from the king. The king swung his arms in a fit of rage. He yelled and declared that he had posed a question. The king punched the young master right in the face. The punch was powerful that it sent the young master flying and crashed on the wall. The young master slumped on the floor, and the king stood in front of him. The king grabbed the young master by the throat, and the young master was terrified. He reminded the young master and stated that with his talent as garbage, he could barely reach 3rd rate with effort, and without effort, he wouldn't even make it to 9th rate. The king declared that the young master was a worthless scum who would have 10 days of solitary confinement to reflect on himself. The young master lay on the floor, crestfallen. He curled up and murmured yes to the king. Meanwhile, deep in the mountains, a temporary camp was set up. There were 2 soldiers outside the camp, and one of them questioned what kind of stupid rules required them to have to go 30 feet away from the camp to pee. The bald soldier advised that the other soldier should just keep quiet because the reason their dragon cavalry is invincible is because they have strict discipline. Suddenly, the other soldier noticed a container on the ground. He queried what that sound was. The 2 of them saw that the container had creepy bulging faces from its cover. The other soldier cursed as he got horrified and yelled what the hell it was. But the bald soldier just scoffed and commented that there was nothing to be so shocked about. He suggested that it was probably some dirty trick pulled off by some bored and annoying cult. As the bald soldier mentioned that it was boring, dark auras emerged from the container and slashed him into pieces. The other soldier got terrified with what he just witnessed. The dark aura suddenly materialized into huge feet. It materialized into demons, and it smiled with its eerie, gleaming eyes. The demons quickly surrounded the soldiers. The other soldier was terrified that he struggled to speak. He blurted what kind of freaking things they were. The soldiers screamed in pain, and the place was filled with blood. Over 10 days later, Hao Xian traveled across the mountains with his party because, after rescuing the king and the people of the Daughter's Kingdom, Hao Xian and his party fled overnight as the entire city wanted to repay him, but he couldn't bear it alone. Currently, Hao Xian is in a state of despair. He cursed in his mind as he wondered why they hadn't arrived yet. Along the way, for some unknown reason, not only Sun Wukong didn't recover but fell into a deep sleep, so during those days of travel, only Hao Xian and Xuan Nu remained, and as he wondered if she had any other hobbies or talents besides martial arts, she replied that there were none because she only knew how to practice martial arts. Hao Xian pressed if she had any interesting things in the past that she could tell him about, but she apologized and explained that she only focuses on practicing martial arts every day. He suggested that Xuan Nu must have some interest or things she finds intriguing so they could talk about them together, but Xuan Nu answered that it was practicing martial arts. Hao Xian ran out of things to say, and Xuan Nu did not say anything either. The 2 of them continued on their journey without saying a single word to each other. Back in the present, Hao Xian requested for Sun Wukong to wake up soon because things were too embarrassing. Hao Xian pondered that he hoped nothing was wrong with Sun Wukong, and he wondered why won't Sun Wukong wake up when his aura seemed completely normal. He considered that even more strangely, ever since using the 2 cards, there has been a vague sense of power surging in his body, and the power feels as close as a family member, and he took back his words and realized that it was even more familiar, as if it originally belonged to him. Suddenly, the system notified Hao Zion that he had arrived within the target area. Hao Zion concluded that they had finally arrived, but he wondered why the king of the underworld was in the mortals' military tent. The temporary military camp was eerily quiet. Xuan Nu and Hao Zion walked into the camp, and they saw the dried-up bodies of the soldiers on the ground. Xuan Nu was mortified by what he saw. Corpses were strewn across the field. The corpses were messily sprawled on the ground. All the corpses' bodies were completely shriveled. Hao Zion inquired if there had been a war there. Meanwhile, Xuan Nu inspected one of the corpses. She remarked that it has such a strong gloominess, and she queried what happened because even if a normal person dies, it shouldn't be like that. Suddenly, the system notified Hao Zion of the location of the king of the underworld, and Hao Zion wondered if he was not inside the camp. A few moments later, Hao Zion and his group walked through the forest. They stopped and stood in front of an entrance. The entrance was eerie. Hao Zion believed no one requested that they don't tell him that the king was inside that grave, and they shouldn't mess with him. He was the guy who got scared by tomb raiding novels in his previous life. Hao Zion repeatedly pondered no and that he didn't want to go in. But if the mission wasn't completed, he might lose his life. He called his mom and informed that he wanted to go back to Earth. On the other hand, Xuan Nu noticed Hao Zion's reaction. Xuan Nu questioned if he was afraid. Hao Zion was petrified when he heard Xuan Nu's question. He laughed and wondered how that was possible. He explained that he was too bored with being strong, so he likes to play the role of a weakling, so Xuan Nu shouldn't mind him and just carry on. Xuan Nu, an honest person who doesn't suspect others, agreed with Hao Zion and commented that he truly lives up to their reputation because their way of doing things was hard to understand. She suggested that Hao Zion should let her lead the way, and Hao Zion responded that she should slow down and not get too far away from him. A few moments later, they were inside the cave. Hao Zion walked closely behind Xuan Nu as they explored the place. He probed if that place was really that big and noted that it was just like what was written in the Grave Robbers Chronicles, while Xuan Nu believed that Hao Zion's act was convincing. Xuan Nu realized that, speaking of which, the gloominess there got stronger and stronger. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the cave, and Hao Zion screamed. Hao Zion demanded what that sound was. Suddenly, a frog came out from behind a rock. Hao Zion's eyes widened in anticipation. He let out a sigh of relief as he exclaimed that it was just a frog, and it scared him to death. Hao Zion expressed that it was great because the danger was over. Suddenly, one of the demon's shadows loomed over Hao Zion, and Hao Zion looked behind him when he noticed it. Hao Zion was stunned and couldn't process what he saw. Meanwhile, Xuan Nu surmised that all of them were king-level demonic beasts, and she wondered what happened because creatures from the underworld shouldn't be able to appear in the human realm. Xuan Nu suspected that something must have gone terribly wrong somewhere. On the other hand, Hao Zion repeatedly shouted that he was going to die as he ran away. The demonic beast's limbs extended and chased after Hao Zion. They caught Hao Zion and quickly restrained him, which caused Hao Zion to drop Sun Wukong. The demonic beast was about to devour Hao Zion, and he cried that they should help him because he was going to die. Xuan Nu glanced over at Hao Zion. She remembered what Hao Zion mentioned about not minding him, and she observed that it was okay because Hao Zion was powerful, that he must be playing pretend again. Hao Zion repeatedly tried to get Xuan Nu's attention, and he implored what was with that calm expression on her face when he was about to die there. He protested that he was really going to die. Hao Zion lamented that they were done for and they were really going to be BB-ked that time, and that he told Xuan Nu that they shouldn't have pursued immortality. Meanwhile, Sun Wukong was still asleep on the ground. Suddenly, his eyes opened and it lit up. While Hao Zion was about to get devoured, Sun Wukong woke up. Sun Wukong declared that the way is not complete, and it gives birth to all things. He released a powerful aura. Sun Wukong's aura destroyed the demonic beast's body. Hao Zion was astonished with what he saw. Sun Wukong prepared to launch another attack while he continued to recite his mantra. Multiple demonic beasts jumped in the air and were about to lunge at Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong remained unfazed, and he continued reciting. Suddenly, another demonic beast appeared behind Sun Wukong, and it was about to step on him. Hao Zion remarked that Sun Wukong should be careful behind him. Sun Wukong stopped the demonic beast's feet with his bare hands. He released his aura as he did his best not to get squashed. Sun Wukong commented that it will inevitably collapse and disintegrate. He released his aura at full power, and it destroyed the demonic beast's body. Sun Wukong quickly created little orbs of aura and gathered them around him. He uttered that it was why it was stated that the less one cares about martial arts, the deeper they could delve into martial arts. One of the demonic beasts lunged towards Sun Wukong. Another shrieked loudly and released its dark aura. Multiple demonic beasts fiercely charged towards Sun Wukong, and Sun Wukong just stood there unfazed. Suddenly, Sun Wukong glared at the demonic beasts. He gathered his aura at the palm of his hand. Sun Wukong quickly released his aura in an explosive manner, and it was much more powerful than what he did earlier. The demonic beasts were pushed back by Sun Wukong's attack. They began disintegrating as the light consumed them. Sun Wukong's aura was powerful that he lit up the entire cave, and he looked like the sun. The dark liquids of the disintegrated demonic beasts scattered on the ground. Hao Xian was in awe as he looked at Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong's powerful aura began to fade. He inquired how it was. Hao Xian noted it was completely like Sun Wukong had transformed into a different person. On the other hand, Xuan Nu observed that Sun Wukong was strong, and she was definitely no match for him at the moment. Xuan Nu considered that not long ago, she and Sun Wukong were evenly matched, so it must be because of the guidance of Hao Xian. She presented the worshipful Hao Xian enhanced by her admiration filter, and she imagined that Hao Xian mentioned that Sun Wukong still has a long way to go to reach that level. Xuan Nu was flustered. She wondered what was happening because her face felt so hot. Meanwhile, Sun Wukong landed back on the ground and approached Hao Xian. Hao Xian expressed that Sun Wukong should tell him what was going on. Sun Wukong laughed, and as he queried if he was awesome, he announced that he was in a dormant state previously as he adjusted his body's meridians after the failed attempt with the realm. He stated that currently he could accumulate the realm 8 times. Hao Xian was horrified when he heard what Sun Wukong mentioned, and he asserted that Sun Wukong's talent was truly remarkable, and he genuinely meant it while thinking that even the peak card could only be used a dozen times, so at that rate, he would become the disciple, which is why he needed to find a way to quickly become stronger. Sun Wukong was taken aback when he saw Hao Xian's expression. Hao Xian's expression was interpreted differently in Sun Wukong's perspective when he remarked that Sun Wukong's talent was truly amazing. Sun Wukong supposed that Hao Xian's expression and tone of voice had mocked him, and he wondered if Hao Xian had expressed that he was too aimless and he couldn't become something great. He quickly declared that he realized his mistake. Sun Wukong pleaded that Hao Xian not be disappointed and drive him away, and he voiced that there was still so much more time for him to learn. Hao Xian questioned what on earth he was talking about. Suddenly, the system congratulated Hao Xian as his potential value increased by 5% once again, reaching 35%. The system notified Hao Xian that he had received a DLC gift pack reward, the King's Mask accessory. Hao Xian wondered what he did that time, and he was unaware that he was just incredibly lucky as always. Hao Xian led the way as the three of them continued to walk deeper into the cave. He inquired what was the use of the King's Mask accessory anyway and remarked that the dog system didn't even give a hint. On the other hand, Xuan Nu queried if Hao Xian isn't fond of playing the role of a noob, why he interrupted, and if he wasn't afraid of being reprimanded. And Sun Wukong laughed and replied that Xuan Nu just doesn't understand because, based on his observations of Hao Xian, he is happiest when he could play the role of rescuing a noob. Suddenly, an ominous spirit charged towards them from behind. Sun Wukong quickly noticed it. Xuan Nu noticed it as well. Sun Wukong demanded who dared to intrude with such audacity. But he was surprised when the spirit just continued forward and went through his body. Sun Wukong and Xuan Nu both looked at where the spirit went. Suddenly, more spirits emerged from the same direction. The spirits all just moved past the group and went in the same direction. Hao Xian watched as one of the spirits moved past him. He questioned what those were, and Xuan Nu explained that they should all be ordinary mortal souls. Xuan Nu noted that under normal circumstances, one cannot see those souls without the assistance of special artifacts, and she has heard that they only become visible when there is extreme resentment. Hao Xian speculated who could have harmed those beings and if it could be the king. A few moments later, the three of them stood in front of a huge portal. Xuan Nu stated that the aura was unmistakable and someone actually dared to open a passage between the two realms without authorization. She added that whoever they are, they must have tremendous audacity. Hao Xian declared that regardless of who they are, anyone who disrespects life will receive a thorough beating before anything else. Xuan Nu and Sun Wukong both looked at Hao Xian. There was a moment of awkward silence and the two of them were puzzled. Xuan Nu wondered why he didn't move. At that moment, Sun Wukong immediately realized something. Sun Wukong immediately announced that Hao Xian shouldn't compete with him because he will take the vanguard, as he loves taking the vanguard. And Hao Xian agreed that Sun Wukong was very sensible, so his understanding of the word enlightenment was not in vain. Sun Wukong walked through the portal without hesitation. He disappeared into the darkness. Xuan Nu and Hao Xian followed, and Hao Xian called out that they shouldn't walk too fast and wait for him. Hao Xian glanced to his side. The three of them saw the gigantic demon that seemed to be rooted on the ground and towered over them. Hao Xian cursed and exclaimed that it was exciting while he quickly scurried away. He trembled in the corner while Sun Wukong examined the demon. Sun Wukong assured that Hao Xian shouldn't be afraid because it seemed like the demon was in a deep sleep. Hao Xian inquired if he was sure. Sun Wukong and Xuan Nu both walked towards the demon. Xuan Nu grabbed one of the demon's roots. She was shocked with what she saw. Xuan Nu saw one of the soldiers' corpses that tried to reach out to her. She saw another one that faced to the side and tried to ease the pain. Another corpse just screamed due to extreme pain. Sun Wukong called Hao Xian and informed that all those vengeful spirits were inside. Xuan Nu observed that the demon must be afraid of attracting attention from the upper realm, so he sent the underworld creatures to secretly infiltrate the human realm to help him kill and collect souls. Sun Wukong probed if the underworld creatures aren't prone to going into a frenzy in the human world, and Xuan Nu responded that they could set up special artifacts in advance to create some barriers in the human world, preventing the underworld creatures from going berserk easily. Sun Wukong commented that to make a proud king-level creature serve it as a slave, the monster's strength shouldn't be underestimated. But Xuan Nu disagreed, as the big demon was probably also doing someone's bidding. Sun Wukong was surprised when he heard that the demon was doing someone's bidding. Xuan Nu interrogated if he could see the suspended coffin inside the demon's belly. She indicated that it should be their true boss. Sun Wukong pressed how she figured it out and mentioned that it doesn't seem particularly evident. Xuan Nu revealed that it was because she recognized the demon's master, who happens to be an old acquaintance of her late father, and that person was a prominent figure who once ranked 10th on the Celestial Martial ranking. Hao Xian was surprised when he heard what Xuan Nu stated. Sun Wukong was also surprised that the person was 10th on the Celestial Martial ranking. Sun Wukong inquired if he had heard correctly and if Xuan Nu indicated that the person was a prominent figure ranked 10th on the Celestial Martial ranking. Xuan Nu affirmed and remarked that she recognized the unique totem on the coffin. Hao Xian questioned why they still stood there and urged that they should run. He grew terrified upon hearing a voice that inquired if he imagined running and warned that he should try running again and see for himself. Hao Xian demanded to know who it was and exclaimed that he believed the demon had lost consciousness. Sun Wukong clarified that it was not the big guy and the voice came from behind, so he urged Hao Xian not to panic and take a look first. He turned behind the demon. Sun Wukong noticed that there really were people. He pointed out that it seemed like they were not part of the same group. Xiao Bai and Xiao Hai were tied up by another demon. The demon questioned if the right-hand man of the king was only at that level, and he remarked that it was not nearly enough to look down on, so they should stop fantasizing about escaping because with their strength, they won't be able to run away. Xiao Bai demanded if he realized that the man was a true monster because 30 years ago, nearly 1/5 of the population in the human realm perished because of that person. He explained that the person did it just to amuse himself. Xiao Bai inquired if he genuinely believed he would receive gratitude by helping the person resurrect, and he declared that the demon shouldn't dream because he would be the first one to kill him. So while the vengeful spirits haven't gathered enough, the demon still has a chance to turn back. But the demon merely clicked his tongue and mocked that they were insignificant people. He wondered if they truly assumed he resurrected the person to receive gratitude and added that it was all for chaos. Xiao Bai was startled when he heard what the demon announced. The demon proclaimed that to return the world to the splendor of 30 years ago, his little life didn't matter, so he truly died as one should. He chuckled and laughed that just the thought of it was marvelous. Xiao Bai murmured that the demon was a lunatic, so he would buy Xiao Hai some time to inform the king, and it would be best to reach the heavenly court. But Xiao Hai questioned how they could possibly escape with their current condition. Xiao Bai assured him that he shouldn't worry because he still had some hidden tricks up his sleeve, so Xiao Hai should just focus on running. He employed his skill, secret technique of the 100 ghosts. Xiao Bai followed it with his skill, the world of utmost bliss made of crystal. A huge ice crystal encapsulated the demon. The demon was trapped inside, but he appeared unfazed. Xiao Bai and Xiao Hai escaped from their restraints. Xiao Hai pleaded that Xiao Bai should stop because his technique consumed his life force. Xiao Bai responded that if Xiao Hai didn't want him to die in vain, he should stop wasting time. Xiao Hai was startled. He acknowledged that he understood. Xiao Hai utilized his skill, Crimson Flowing Ghost Shadows. He unleashed a powerful aura, and it enabled him to run away at an incredible speed. Xiao Hai ran as fast as he could. In his mind, he prayed for Xiao Bai not to die, and he promised himself that he would bring help back right away. But suddenly, the demon appeared beside Xiao Hai, preparing to attack. Xiao Bai demanded when the demon had appeared, and he exclaimed that it was impossible. A huge explosion followed as the demon slammed Xiao Hai to the ground. Xiao Bai screamed Xiao Hai's name. Xiao Hai already lay helplessly on the ground. Blood flowed from Xiao Hai's mouth, and blood was smeared all over his body. The demon hummed as he leisurely walked towards Xiao Hai. Xiao Hai cried that it would truly be a disaster, and he begged the demon to stop. But the demon merely laughed and taunted that Xiao Hai was such a noisy fellow. The demon released his aura and prepared to punch Xiao Hai with it. but to his astonishment, his body froze. The demon's fist trembled, and it stopped moving just before it struck Xiao Hai. He wondered what had happened. The demon muttered that he couldn't move his body. Xiao Bai quickly recognized the aura. The young master entered the area. Xiao Bai immediately called the young master when he saw him. Meanwhile, the system congratulated Hao Xian for finding the target, and Hao Xian announced that it was the young king. The demon inquired if he couldn't move and remarked that there was no one who could do such a thing. He released a powerful aura and forced himself to move his fist and hit Hao Xian. Hao Xian was nervous as he watched the demon struggle, but his fist wouldn't budge. The demon's fist was immovable. He cursed and demanded to know what he had done to him. The young master explained that the demon misunderstood because there was no way he could do something like that. He added that it was Lord Lin who did it because fighting is one thing but killing is another matter. The demon believed that the young master looked like a coward, but he felt that the pressure emanating from the young master was terrifying. The demon realized that with the mention of Lord Lin, he doubted he could handle the young master on his own. He mentioned that the second divinity may assist him. The gigantic demon's eyes suddenly lit up. The coffin on its belly slipped away. The gigantic demon suddenly released her powerful aura. She directed those auras towards the other demon. The demon opened his mouth and began devouring the gigantic demon's aura. He declared that as a couple, they unite and become one, and they are unrivaled in the world. The demon queried if they were ready to meet their demise. But the demon was surprised, and he wondered why he couldn't move again. The demon exclaimed that it was going too far and questioned who the hell the young master was. He requested for the young master to not mess with him and inquired what he had done. The young master replied that he was just a lowly servant of the underworld, and it was all Lord Kai's doing. He offered that if the demon doesn't believe him, he will reveal himself to show him. But what the demon saw was a humongous tiger who restrained him with its paws. The demon recognized that it was the legendary divine beast, Kilin, and he had only heard about it in storybooks all his life. He realized that with the fluctuation of its spiritual power, even if he and the second divinity merge, they wouldn't stand a chance. So they needed to find a way to escape first and wait for his senior to resurrect. The demon admitted that he knew he was wrong and requested that the young master spare him. But the young master apologized and responded that he couldn't do that because it was the order his father gave him. The demon pleaded that the young master should give him a chance because his father was not there. But the young master countered that his father is omnipresent, and there is nowhere he isn't. Meanwhile, Hao Xian observed that the power of being ranked 10th on the celestial martial ranking was truly terrifying, and fortunately, they had that young king with them, and he was really strong. But Xuan Nu replied no. She explained that the power of the great figure hasn't been summoned at all. Otherwise, except for Hao Xian, everyone would have been left behind, and she could be certain of that. But as for Hao Xian, she was not sure. Hao Xian cursed, and he wondered if it was that horrifying with only ranked 10th. On the other hand, Sun Wukong remarked that the young master was strong, that he was itching for a fight. Hao Xian just agreed and suggested that Sun Wukong should test the young master out, but he should be careful. Sun Wukong acknowledged that he understood and charged towards the young master. The young master sensed Sun Wukong's presence. As soon as he perceived that there was danger, dark figures quickly came out of him and went to intercept Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong was quickly restrained by the dark figure. He conceded that indeed, the young master was really strong. But Sun Wukong boasted that he was not as useless as the previous guy. He used the power of the Great Tao and broke it. The young master inquired what kind of power it was and exclaimed that it was terrifying. Sun Wukong charged forward with his powerful aura. The young master apologized to Lord Xuan and informed that the divine beasts had been summoned. A huge tortoise appeared, and it protected the young master from Sun Wukong with its shell. Sun Wukong repeatedly complained that his head hurts. Meanwhile, Xuan Nu noted that the young master has so many rare divine beasts, and they were as common as cabbages, so heaven really is unfair. Hao Xian retorted that the guy with a bunch of divine artifacts had the nerve to say that, and speaking of which, one has extraordinary comprehension, another has exceptional talent, and one has extraordinary treasures, so only he as the master has nothing. He was struck by the wrath from above, and he shouted that it was a sneak attack and demanded who was there. Back into the fight, Sun Wukong bombarded the tortoise's shell with his punches, but it was completely unharmed. Sun Wukong demanded that the young master should come out and fight him fair and square, but the young master apologized to Sun Wukong and responded that he would surrender because there was no way a lowly person like him could be his match. Sun Wukong inquired what kind of man he was when he had all those skills but no backbone, and the young master admitted that all of those were bestowed upon him by his father, and without them, he was nothing. Sun Wukong argued that it was nonsense because summoned beasts are innate talents and they can't be bestowed by others, but the young master maintained that even so, it was because of his father's genes, and he doesn't have much to do with it. Sun Wukong noted that the young master kept talking about his father, and he queried how old he was. The young master explained that it was the reality, and without his father's permission, He couldn't make a move. Sun Wukong grumbled that he was annoyed with the young master, so he should get out of there. On the other hand, Xu Nu commented that whoever summons a bunch of divine beasts and calls them worthless was beyond being a genius. Hao Xian wondered why he felt like the young master was constantly influenced by his old man's manipulation, and Xu Nu inquired what manipulation was. Hao Xian inquired of himself how he could describe manipulation to Xu Nu, and he remarked that Xu Nu could think of it as a form of manipulation spell. He mentioned that he needs to double check. Hao Xian called Sun Wukong and informed him that he should stop and take him up there. Sun Wukong was puzzled by what Hao Xian had conveyed. A few moments later, Sun Wukong brought Hao Xian towards the young master. Hao Xian declared that he was curious, and he queried the young master why he was always so modest when his strength is clearly impressive. The young master explained that it was not modesty because, compared to his father, he was just a worthless piece of trash. Hao Xian questioned the young master if his father really uttered that and if it wasn't too harsh, and the young master replied that it was all for his own good. Hao Xian politely inquired of the young master if he had ever been outside of the underworld, and the young master responded no because his father instructed that he should avoid contact with outsiders. The young master expressed that he never had much talent to begin with, and if he got involved with all sorts of random people, there would be no hope for him. Hao Xian was exasperated as he pondered that it was like a template for manipulation, and there was no hope. Sun Wukong probed Hao Xian why he would say those things to the young master, and he suggested that Hao Xian should give him an incense stick and he will guarantee that he will break through the young master's shell. But Hao Xian insisted that he should be quiet. Hao Xian apologized sincerely to the young master and confessed that it turned out that he mistook him for someone else, and he would deeply apologize for any offense caused, and he kindly requested the young master's forgiveness, and that he wouldn't hold it against them. The young master observed that Hao Xian was being too harsh and that it was all right. He announced that if there was nothing else, he would take his leave, to which Hao Xian agreed and remarked that he should take care. A few moments later, Hao Xian and his disciples followed the young master into the underworld. Hao Xian inquired of Xu Nu if she was sure that that concealment artifact wouldn't be discovered. Xu Nu assured that Hao Xian should be rest assured because that concealment artifact was given to her by her father, and he informed that outside of the top 10 on the martial arts ranking, there was no possibility of it being detected, to which Hao Xian responded and noted that her dad really spoils her. Sun Wukong demanded of Hao Xian why he tracked the young master in the first place and if he wasn't planning to take him as his disciple, and Hao Xian explained that as a master, he naturally has his own plans. Hao Xian considered that the guy was full of self-doubt that even if they used the peak card to give him a beating, his potential might not increase because the key to unlocking his potential should lie with his father. Sun Wukong interrogated Hao Xian if there was something wrong with his health. Hao Xian pressed Sun Wukong why he inquired. Sun Wukong remarked that with Hao Xian's unfathomable strength, he couldn't sense any hint of spiritual energy emanating from him earlier, but currently he could actually sense some emanation, probably at the level of Kai cultivation 7 or 8 layers. Xu Nu agreed that she sensed it too, and she assumed that it was just her imagination. Hao Xian was surprised when he heard about his level being Kai cultivation 7 or 8 layers, and he realized that it was definitely not just his imagination. He perceived that his body was actually getting stronger with the use of the peak card. Hao Xian surmised that in that case, that intense feeling of familiarity was likely not just an illusion. He wondered if it could be that he was really a peerless powerhouse in the past and his memories were tampered with, turning him into a loser. Suddenly, Sun Wukong notified that the young master got far ahead. Hao Xian urged that they should catch up quickly. On the other hand, at the underworld martial arena, a match was held. One of the participants prepared to attack and taunted that his opponent should taste it. He fired a powerful beam of aura towards his opponent. The opponent managed to block the participant's attack with his own aura. The participant prepared for the next attack and jeered that his opponent should taste that as well. But his opponent moved swiftly behind him and retorted that it was already his turn. The participant quickly turned to face his opponent behind him. Their fists clashed as they attacked each other at the same time. The opponent was able to quickly move after the punch and landed a kick into the participant's body. The participant quickly retaliated and punched his opponent. One of the audience exclaimed that their strength was truly formidable. Another audience lamented that they will never reach their level. Suddenly, the king commanded that it was enough and all of them should cease it at once. The king scorned that they were a bunch of lowly creatures who couldn't even stand on stage, and even if they continued to fight, they would just end up looking like a bunch of bears. The participant glared at the king. Meanwhile, the opponent clicked his tongue in his mind, and he suspected that just as expected, the old geezer was about to start showing off again. The king declared that with their pathetic skills, he hadn't given them a second glance for 100 years. The opponent addressed the king as his majesty and requested that the king forgive them and mentioned that they were lacking in their skills. but the king stated that he shouldn't call him his majesty because none of them were worthy to be his subordinates. He began to point at the participants and commanded that all of them should attack him together and give it their all. The king remarked that they should let him remind them how vast the heavens are and how deep the earth is. He queried the participants why they all just stood there and added that they should take action. The participants quickly replied that they dare not. The king supposed that they wouldn't dare indeed. He asserted that they were a bunch of spineless scum, and even if he couldn't defeat them, he would still respect them if they had the guts to fight, unlike now when it seemed like they looked down on themselves. One of the participants believed that it was bullshit, and he doesn't believe the king's nonsense. He remembered that last time, the Western Demon King believed the king's bullshit. The participant recalled that he was beaten up by the king as an excuse and he couldn't get out of bed for half a year. He suspected that all the king wanted was the satisfaction of having everyone grovel at his feet. The participant felt that the king was such a hypocrite, as he was too afraid to go to the heavenly palace but acted almighty within his own domain, and he was the real coward. Suddenly, the young master arrived. He called the king and announced that he was back. The king inquired if everything was taken care of. The young master reported that it was done and that the demon king indeed caused trouble and has been sent to the dungeon. The king questioned the young master for sending the demon king into the dungeon and demanded if he wasn't supposed to have their heads presented to him. And the young master explained that the king didn't mention that as he instructed to throw them into the dungeon. The young master inquired of the king if he didn't specifically give him a dungeon pass then. The king was enraged with what the young master uttered. He interrogated the young master if he said that he remembered it wrong. The young master replied no and that it was not what he meant. The king insisted the young master should let him ask if he, the king, could be mistaken. He threw a punch and hit the young master's face. The young master crashed onto the arena and it created a huge explosion. He lay in the arena with a swollen face. Everyone saw what the king just did and what happened to the young master. They were all intimidated. The king walked towards the young master. He stood over the young master, who still lay on the ground. The king went and grabbed the young master. He glared at the other demons in the arena. The king proclaimed that in the future, anyone who dares to defy him will meet the same fate as the young master. He challenged them if they all heard that. Everyone quickly responded that it was the king and they would obey their majesty. One of the participants considered that the old geezer used that opportunity to warn everyone that even if he was wrong, he must be right because a tiger doesn't eat its own cubs. Yet he used his own son as a scapegoat, which makes him a damn beast. And with so many people there, he wondered if the son had no dignity. The king ordered that he would ask the young master again and pressed if the demon king was supposed to be thrown into the dungeon or have his head presented. The young master reiterated that the king really commanded to throw the demon king into the dungeon. The king was in a fiery rage when he heard the young master's answer. One of the demons commented that the young master shouldn't show off his strength because the king was going to kill him. The king demanded of the young master what he just said and if he could speak louder. The other demons muttered that they couldn't hear it clearly. Suddenly, a powerful pillar of golden light came down from the sky. The king was puzzled when he saw that light. Hao Zion called the king and addressed him as an old man. He expressed that he was concerned about giving the king some face in front of so many people initially, but he really has no shame. Sun Wukong immediately anticipated that they would fight. Xuan Nu also watched in anticipation as to what was going to happen next. Hao Zion walked towards the king with his disciples behind him. The king questioned where those little brats came from and declared that those who enter his underworld seek only their own destruction. Sun Wukong took a step forward to face the king. He stated that Hao Zion should let him handle the king. Hao Zion declared that there was no need because at that time, he will personally take care of it, and he considered that the cooldown time for the peak card had been prepared in advance. Sun Wukong inquired of Hao Zion if he was going to personally intervene and remarked that he looked forward to it as it was another opportunity to learn. Hao Zion pondered that the cooldown had been shortened to just 1 minute, so next time he should be able to cast it immediately. He mentioned that the card should come out. Hao Zion noted that it was the strongest king in history. He mused that it was such an interesting ability, so that time he will play with the king using something a little different. The king reflected that the transformation itself was not worth mentioning, but he wondered what was with that aura. Hao Zion commented that at that time, they will try something different, as he will sit still and fight the king, but if he takes one step back, he will admit defeat and ask the king his opinion about it. The king announced that Hao Zion was a little brat and he should wait until he could withstand 3 moves from him before boasting. Hao Zion replied very well. He used his skill, summoning Thunder Spirit. The Thunder Spirit swung its fist at the king. The king was unfazed and he just scoffed. With the flick of his arm, he easily deflected the Thunder Spirit. The Thunder Spirit was beat up and fell to the ground. The king questioned Hao Zion if it was the source of his arrogance, but Hao Zion responded that they were not done yet. In an instant, the Thunder Spirit stood back up. The king noticed the Thunder Spirit that menacingly looked at him from behind. He quickly turned to face the Thunder Spirit. The Thunder Spirit ran and charged towards the king. The king ducked and evaded the thunder spirit's punch. He quickly countered and struck the thunder spirit's chin. The king struck again and elbowed the thunder spirit. He punched the thunder spirit across the face. The king struck again and kicked the thunder spirit on its chin. The king continued to strike and bombarded the thunder spirit with his attacks. He uttered that they should make it even more thrilling in the end. The king grabbed the thunder spirit by the shoulders. He ripped the thunder spirit in half. The king asserted that the thunder spirit was useless and he had told it everything, but it still couldn't defend against him. Xuan frowned and glared at the king. Sun Wukong also glared at the king, but he remained quiet. The king observed that if that was all the power Hao Xian had, it was completely inadequate. But Hao Xian just queried the king if that was the case. Because arrogant people detest their own kind the most, the king cursed in his mind, and he believed that Hao Xian was clearly just a wet behind-the-ears brat, yet he always acted so superior. The king vowed that he will teach Hao Xian about respecting elders and rules at the cost of his life that day. Hao Xian apologized to the king and admitted that he still hasn't passed that level of his. The king was taken aback when he heard what Hao Xian conveyed. Suddenly, the thunder spirit began regenerating its body. It used its skill, rapid recovery. The king wondered how that super speed regeneration was possible. He surmised that it was a superpower only possessed by top-tier beings. The king supposed that, moreover, the thunder spirit was clearly just a summoned beast. Meanwhile, the other half of the thunder spirit was also recovering. Because the king ripped the thunder spirit in half earlier, they have multiplied into two. The king contemplated that they were not only reborn but were also capable of splitting, and he had never heard of a summoning superpower, so he wondered who on earth Hao Xian was. Hao Xian called the king's attention and proclaimed that he must say that making that kind of expression was no fun because their game had just begun. The king declared that it was very good because he wouldn't hold back anymore. He released his powerful aura and everything turned red. The king released an aura so powerful that it ripped his clothes to shreds. Sun Wukong considered that the texture of the pressure was completely different. The king's hand was wrapped by his aura and his claws grew long and sharp. His entire body was also shrouded by the same aura. The king screamed and the third eye on his forehead opened. He released multiple rays of aura to attack the thunder spirit. Meanwhile, the thunder spirit started gathering his aura into his fist. The thunder spirit released its aura to block the king's attack. It concentrated its aura and released it at full power to continue blocking the king's attack. But suddenly, the king appeared behind the thunder spirit. The king clenched his fist and began preparing for his attack. He bombarded the thunder spirit with his punches. The thunder spirit took the king's barrage of punches and was not able to dodge them. It was unable to react as the king continued his attack. Suddenly, the other thunder spirit appeared behind the king, and it was ready to attack him in the head. The king was not able to dodge, and he was hit by the thunder spirit's attack. But the thunder spirit trembled as his attack was not able to deal any damage to the king. One of the audience queried if the king was really that strong. Another audience remarked that so much power was hidden. The king slapped the thunder spirit, and it was powerful that it got decapitated. The thunder spirit fell on the floor. Sun Wukong believed that the king and Hao Xian were on a completely different level. Xuan felt that with her current power and teaming up with the monkey, they were no match. The thunder spirit started to regenerate its head, but it was a bit slower. The king stated that, as expected, the recovery speed has slowed down, and he laughed and added that he knew that there was no such thing as true immortality. He noted that the other one is in the same situation. The king concluded that it was enough to slay the summoned beasts before killing the main body. He mentioned that he would seize the opportunity to take the life of the thunder spirit while it was weakened. The king sat over the thunder spirit and raised both his arms, ready to slam them. Suddenly, Hao Xian expressed that the king should wait a moment. The king inquired if Hao Xian was trying to back down and commented that it was too late. Hao Xian replied no and that the old man misunderstood. He explained that he just wanted to ask if the king was ready. Hao Xian announced that he was about to show off. The king was apprehensive when he heard what Hao Xian uttered. On the other hand, Sun Wukong smiled and was excited. Xuan also has the same expression. Hao Xian questioned the king what he thought of the strength of his summoned beast. The king observed that it was nothing special, and with just 50% of his power, it was sufficient to slay it. Hao Xian probed if it was only 50%. He exclaimed very well. A powerful aura swirled in the sky as Hao Xian summoned something. The king asserted that Hao Xian was playing mysterious and trying to buy time or launch a surprise attack, but he wouldn't let him succeed. But the king stopped in his tracks and he was surprised. There are a lot of magic arrays laid in the arena. Hao Xian informed that the king shouldn't be so tense because it was just a row of pits. The king wondered what the kid was really up to. Hao Xian remarked that he told the king not to be so nervous. He stated that it was just an ordinary pit. Hao Xian mentioned that he just added a little seasoning for the king. He raised his index finger and gathered his aura at the tip of it. Suddenly, one of the magic arrays lit up. The summon has huge claws. It also has huge fangs. The summon roared so fiercely and loudly that it created sound waves. It was huge that Hao Xian was small compared to it. The summon was vicious and it continued to roar. The king was terrified when he saw the summons. Hao Zion inquired the king about his opinion on the summons. He queried the king how much effort he needed for that. Meanwhile, the only notion in the king's mind at the moment was for him to run. Years of combat instinct told him that the monster before him was completely out of his league, so if a battle breaks out, he will die within 3 rounds. But at that moment, the king's legs trembled uncontrollably and he was unable to take a single step. The king cursed in his mind as he repeatedly wondered what he should do. Hao Zion noted that the king shouldn't panic first. He questioned what else was there. The king was surprised when he heard Hao Zion's question. Hao Zion declared that of course. He called the unmarked. One of the arrays lit up. It released a powerful golden aura that created a pillar of light. The audience was horrified by what they saw. The pillar of light reached the sky and created an opening in it. Hao Zion smirked proudly. On the other hand, the audience was in a state of panic. They were extremely terrified with what they saw. A huge golden dragon appeared in the sky. It has huge, sharp claws. Its eyes were fierce. The dragon was huge that the summon from earlier was small in comparison. Its eyes glimmered as it stared at the opponent. Sun Wukong was amazed, and he commented that even though he was mentally prepared, it still startled him. Xuan Nu observed that it was exaggerated, and she wondered who was stronger compared to her father. One of the audience responded that it was the 5-clawed golden dragon, and another queried if it wasn't the ancient mythical beast that has been extinct for thousands of years. They announced that the king was already in trouble. Meanwhile, the king was terrified that he was on the verge of tears, and snot came out of his nose. Hao Zion replied that the king shouldn't worry because there was more, but the next one requires an item, and as he wondered where it was, he uttered that the king should let him find it. He added that the king should just wait a moment because it will be ready soon. Hao Zion suddenly pulled out red papers. He stated that he found it, and there it was. Hao Zion suddenly turned serious, and he clenched those red papers in his fists. He yelled as he activated his next array. One of the arrays immediately lit up. Red lightning came pouring down from the skies. A powerful whirlwind of aura suddenly began to form around those lightning. The whirlwind of aura and the red lightning began to combine. Its power resulted in the destruction of the arena. Huge chunks of rocks were flung in the air like they were nothing. The whirlwind of aura grew larger and continued to wreak havoc. Hao Zion was amazed, and he remarked that he couldn't believe that it was the pinnacle of that insecure kid. The audience was completely stunned by what they saw. The participants also have the same reaction. On the other hand, Sun Wukong inquired what kind of creature it was. The participants were speechless as they gazed at the creature Hao Zion summoned. A huge eye appeared in the sky. Hao Zion prepared to fight. He, along with his summons, were lined up in front of the king. The eye in the sky was glimmered, and it was terrifying. The eyes of the golden dragon glimmered. The bear's eyes were also the same. All of them directed their intense glare at the king. The king was completely stunned. He cursed and uttered that he should run, and he also cursed his legs and exclaimed that they should move. But his body trembled uncontrollably. The king's aura disappeared, and he cowered in front of Hao Zion's summons. He laughed and declared that he was wondering which celestial being came down to earth and encountered a fool like him, so it was better to put an end to those divine powers. Hao Zion queried the king what was wrong and if there was no more fighting. The king responded that he wouldn't dare because if the Lord, Hao Zion, raises a hand, he will be wiped out in an instant. Hao Zion expressed very well and that the king should let him ask him. He questioned the king how his strength compared to his and how much chance he would give him. The king admitted that he, as a small person, previously had dog eyes and failed to recognize Mount Tai, so he would kindly request that Hao Zion, the great deity, overlook his existence like a fart because he was not even worth a single pinky finger of his nor a nail fragment. He mentioned that as long as Hao Zion needed it, he was but a dog in his underworld, ready to be commanded at will. Hao Zion observed that the king was very skilled at flattery and was very good. He probed the king how he would feel about it if he told him that he possesses a special ability to summon the future bodies of others, and the body he was currently using happens to be his future self. The king was completely stunned when he heard what Hao Zion asserted. He laughed and replied that Hao Zion was joking because the kid was just garbage and nowhere near a fraction of his magnificence. Hao Zion pressed the king if he shouldn't know better than anyone in his heart whether it was a joke or not in terms of aura and appearance. The king was horrified when Hao Zion demanded him if that was the case and addressed him as father. He gritted his teeth and lowered his head. Hao Zion interrogated the king if he already felt the difference between his humiliated son and himself, and he noted that at the same age, the king doesn't even deserve the qualification to polish his son's shoes. The king questioned Hao Zion if he came all the way to the underworld just to humiliate him and if they had any grudges between them. When Hao Zion heard the king's question about humiliating him, he replied that the king was not even worthy. He explained that the purpose of his visit was to take away his son because, unlike the king, he is a true genius and following a useless person like him will only waste his life. Hao Zion intended to tell the king what he should do. He declared that if the king was too cowardly to fight, he should slink away because he was different from him and he had no interest in bullying the weak. Hao Xian remarked that the king's life, as someone like him, was truly pitiful. The king started walking away from Hao Xian. He was dejected and defeated. One of the participants commented that the king deserved it as he always bullied others. One of the audience inquired of the king why he wasn't domineering anymore and suggested that he should keep acting crazy, but another audience member added that it was enough. The king walked towards the young master. The young master looked at the king with worry in his eyes. The king was crestfallen. The young master queried the king if he was alright. The king snapped that the young master should get lost because he doesn't need his pity. He tried to punch the young master, but the young master was able to dodge it. The king insisted that he didn't need it. He cursed the young master and challenged him if he hadn't humiliated his life enough. The young master was hurt by what the king uttered. Meanwhile, Hao Xian was puzzled with the situation. The king announced that from that point onward, he and the young master were strangers, so he shouldn't ever call him his father again. He walked away. The young master was left in the arena and he looked dejected. Hao Xian pressed the young master on why the king treated him like that and if there was some hidden reason behind it. The young master recounted that the king wasn't like that before. He continued that the king was still domineering and aloof, but he noted that the king also had a tender side. Hao Xian wondered if that was the case and observed that he couldn't see it at all. The young master shared that the king would practice swordsmanship with him. He mentioned they would play chess. He also revealed that they even go on outings. The young master recalled how the two of them lay peacefully on the grass. He reflected that looking back, it all felt like a lie. Hao Xian beseeched the young master why the king turned into what he currently was. The young master disclosed that it was because of an unexpected incident. He told that his parents took him to the outskirts to celebrate his birthday, but unexpectedly, they encountered a true divine-level monster. Sun Wukong was surprised that there were actually divine-level creatures. Xuan Nu was also surprised when she heard that. The young master related that although it was just a low-level divine-level creature, it was still incredibly powerful, and the king sacrificed his precious treasures to barely rescue his mother while he narrowly escaped because he was sleeping at the campsite. He lamented that when he woke up, he discovered that his mother had left their world forever. They buried his mother while the rain still poured down. The young master concluded that after that, everything changed completely. The young master declared that his father started becoming unprecedentedly violent and gloomy. He stated that he also became cruel and bloodthirsty. The young master mentioned that his father even turned his violence towards him for the first time. He remarked that it escalated over time, eventually turned into abuse. The young master conveyed that deep down, he thinks that his father always believed that he was the one who caused the death of his beloved. Hao Xian was surprised when he heard what the young master reported. He inquired the young master if he endured that injustice out of guilt. The young master noted that not exactly. He commented that he just felt that if he were to lose his father, too, that world would truly leave him all alone. The young master recalled how he ate alone. Hao Xian was speechless. Sun Wukong sighed in pity. Xuan Nu also pitied the young master. The young master expressed that it doesn't matter anymore. He acknowledged that given the current situation and his father's personality, his father will never have any relationship with him again. The young master uttered that there was no need for him to dwell on anything, and it was time to leave to explore the bigger world outside. The system congratulated Hao Xian for completing the mission, as Qin Guang has successfully freed himself from the influence of the king, expanding his horizons, and his potential has increased to 33%. It gave Hao Xian a peak card. It was the peak card, Fox Saint Daji. Hao Xian observed that he has complicated feelings. On the other hand, the king was up in the mountains. He quietly sat beside his wife's grave. The king was out of it, and he was deep in reflection. He indicated that in the end, he couldn't fulfill his promise to his wife. The king remembered the day when his wife was about to pass away. His wife called him Da Maio. She affirmed that Da Maio should promise her and requested that he don't let Qin Guang know the truth of what happened. The wife pronounced that Da Maio should just tell Qin Guang that she was killed by a divine-level monster that suddenly appeared. She began coughing up blood. Da Maio revealed that she should stop talking and rest well. But his wife continued and articulated that lastly, she wanted to say to him that meeting him has been the greatest honor of her life. She specified that Da Maio should promise her that he would live on happily. His wife requested that Da Maio not hold any hatred towards Qin Guang. She recounted that they will meet again in the next life. Da Maio grieved when his wife passed away. The skies seemed to be grieving with him as rain and lightning poured down while the leaves fell out of their branches. Back in the present, Da Maio asserted that perhaps Hao Xian could deal with the monster inside. Da Maio related that it no longer concerns him, and he has never told Qin Guang the truth, as his wife implored, but he couldn't help but resent him. He voiced that he will forever hate Qin Guang and curse him because he took away the life of his wife. Da Maio looked empty. He slumped and laid on the ground. Da Maio contemplated about his current lifetime. He claimed how wonderful it would be if it could always be just the two of them. In the mortal realm, a coffin was placed at the edge of a cliff. The coffin had the same unique totem Hao Xian and his disciples found, and it began releasing a dark aura. The dark aura it released intensified. Suddenly, the dark aura burst out of the coffin. One of the demons watching uttered that it has arrived. Another demon considered that finally, the former big shot of the heavenly palace, ranked 10th, came. The powerful, dark aura got stronger, and it destroyed the ground as it surged towards the sky. The rank 10 of the celestial martial ranking emerged from the coffin. One of the demons laughed and repeatedly stated that it was done. One of the demons declared that it actually succeeded, and another proclaimed that they have revived the rank 10 of the celestial martial ranking. Suddenly, the celestial being glared at them. In one swift motion, the celestial being created multiple slashes and slashed all the demons in his way. One of the demons who survived was surprised that the demon beside him got decapitated in an instant. At that same moment, the demon got his face sliced. Another demon got his head cut horizontally along his eyes. The celestial being inquired how long it has been since he smelled the sweet scent of fresh blood. He remarked that they should come on and let him once again slaughter that world and let the blood flow like a river. But the celestial being announced that, speaking of which, the best resurrection spot for him in the underworld has been destroyed by someone. He cursed the bastards and noted that he remembered their aura, so he would go and tear their bodies into 1,000 pieces. Suddenly, Medusa called the celestial being an old man and queried him if he felt awkward talking to himself like that. The celestial being was puzzled, and he turned to look at where the voice came from. He saw the scout Medusa, and she gleefully greeted him. There was a moment of silence as the two of them gauged each other. The celestial being questioned Medusa if she was the one that got away earlier. Medusa quickly moved and dodged the celestial being's attack. The celestial being observed that Medusa was fast. Medusa questioned the celestial being about her being fast, and she commented that he had arrived there already. The celestial being was alarmed, and he quickly moved away from Medusa. He gritted his teeth, and he glared at Medusa as he ran away. The celestial being started gathering his powerful aura. He created a huge orb of aura and was ready to attack Medusa with it. But Medusa was unfazed, and she simply pointed her fingers at the celestial being. The celestial being was astonished when he saw that Medusa's gesture created a huge hole in his body. At that same moment, his orb of aura got unstable and burst out from the side. The celestial being wondered what went on and what Medusa did. He reflected that although his powers haven't fully recovered, Medusa is ridiculously strong, and he hasn't heard of someone like her before. Medusa pronounced that she didn't expect the friends of that realm to be so weak. Her gesture cut the celestial being's arm off. Medusa mentioned that they were weaklings. She added that they don't deserve to live in that world. Huge holes appeared on the celestial being's body, and it also got sliced multiple times. Medusa calmly watched as the celestial being got eliminated. She stated that the person managed to escape again, and that person in that world was not good at fighting but was skilled at running away. Medusa remarked that she still had a big move left unused, and it was a shame. Suddenly, Medusa got a notification. She declared that surprisingly, she could sense the aura of another arrival in that dimension. Medusa uttered that she would see who her colleague was. She was amused when she saw Hao Xian, who was with his disciples. Medusa pronounced that it turned out to be a senior, and it was great, so she will come to join him right away. She quickly jumped off the ground and flew towards Hao Xian's location. On the other hand, Hao Xian observed that they were right there. He stood in front of the huge rocky mountain. Sun Wukong watched in anticipation while he stopped Xuan Nu. Qin Guang also watched in anticipation. Suddenly, Hao Xian channeled his powerful aura through his fingers. He took a step forward and threw the aura from his fingertips. A huge explosion occurred as the aura hit the mountain. Hao Xian's attack created a huge hole in the mountain. The hole was deep and huge. Sun Wukong was puzzled, and he noted that the power seemed a bit ordinary. On the other hand, Xuan Nu sensed something, and she was speechless. Qin Guang seemed to have noticed something too. A huge, translucent claw emerged from the hole. It was an eerie creature, and it emitted a powerful, sinister aura. Xuan Nu was puzzled and terrified. The eerie creature slowly began fading away. It completely disappeared in an instant. Sun Wukong mentioned that the spiritual energy fluctuation was only at the late foundation establishment stage and the strength was also average, but he inquired what the terrifying ancient aura was inside the stone cave earlier. Qin Guang also had a terrified expression on his face, just like everyone else. Sun Wukong queried Qin Guang if he felt that too, the ancient aura earlier, and Qin Guang asserted that he felt it. Sun Wukong considered that it wasn't just his imagination, and he questioned what it was, if it was some kind of summoning technique. Qin Guang conveyed that it was definitely not because its aura was completely different from that of a summoned creature. Sun Wukong probed what it could be if it was not a summoned creature, and Qin Guang related that he didn't know. On the other hand, Hao Xian was still standing in front of the hole he created. Hao Xian pondered that ever since he used the peak card for the third time, his body naturally became capable of releasing power. He reflected that the sense of familiarity had grown stronger, and every inch of his skin seemed to be telling him that it originally belonged to him. But he mused that something didn't add up because he was sure that he came there through time travel. Hao Xian recalled his first day of time travel when he demanded where he was. He contemplated that when he was on Earth, he was just an ordinary college student who suddenly died. Hao Xian wondered if it could be the host's doing, but he surmised that doesn't make sense either because he clearly didn't inherit the memories of the original host, so there was no way he could inherit the power. He reported that it was completely inexplicable, and he also requested what was that chilling aura that emanates every time his body releases power. Sun Wukong inquired Hao Xian what that ancient aura was earlier. Hao Xian pondered that even they don't know when that originally, he intentionally displayed it in front of his disciple for the second time to obtain information from their mouths. So he stated that he couldn't say it as Sun Wukong needed to comprehend it himself in the future. Sun Wukong considered that he realized that it was a lesson in the curriculum, so he should quickly absorb it. He thanked Hao Xian for his teaching, and Hao Xian was speechless. Hao Xian reflected that since everyone was clueless, there was no need to dwell on it at the moment, so he should wait until they use the card a few more times and the truth will become clearer. He contemplated that therefore the most urgent task was to complete more missions and unlock the peak card. But before that, he had an interesting idea. Hao Xian called Xuan Nu and declared that she should come to him. Xuan Nu was puzzled, and she questioned Hao Xian what the matter was. Hao Xian uttered that Xuan Nu should listen to him, and he began yapping. He queried Xuan Nu about it and if she had it, and Xuan Nu remarked that she does, but she was reluctant. Hao Xian mentioned that it was alright and Xuan Nu should just listen to him, and as she agreed, the two of them continued to whisper and murmur together. Sun Wukong probed what Hao Xian and Xuan Nu talked about, and Qin Guang observed that he didn't know. Suddenly, Hao Xian interrogated Sun Wukong and Qin Guang which one of them they reckoned was stronger. Both Sun Wukong and Qin Guang were baffled by Hao Xian's question. Hao Xian articulated that he and Xuan Nu discussed it. Sun Wukong pressed if there was even a need to say it and pronounced that it was definitely him. On the other hand, Qin Guang acknowledged that he definitely can't be the senior disciple. Hao Xian noted that mere words won't do as the senior disciple must be the strongest in terms of martial prowess, so he needs both of them to have a little test. He affirmed that the two of them didn't finish their fight last time so they should continue it, and he demanded Qin Guang if he didn't say before that he wanted to be his disciple. Qin Guang conveyed yes because Hao Xian was the most formidable master he had ever seen, so he could definitely learn a lot by following him. Hao Xian expressed that Qin Guang should stop the nonsense and give it his all because if he loses, he won't accept him. Sun Wukong quickly hopped away from Qin Guang. He indicated that the fair competition came. Sun Wukong lunged towards Qin Guang to attack him. Qin Guang was taken aback by Sun Wukong's quick action. Sun Wukong kicked Qin Guang on the stomach. Qin Guang summoned the Four Beast Kings, Part 2. But Sun Wukong reported that he won't give Qin Guang any more time to prepare. He immediately bombarded Qin Guang with his punches. Qin Guang flinched as he got hit in the face multiple times. Suddenly, Sun Wukong noticed a powerful aura coming at him from behind. He quickly moved away, and he barely dodged it. Sun Wukong stepped away from Qin Guang and looked behind him. Qin Guang was able to summon a huge ink dragon. Sun Wukong requested if Qin Guang had reached the point where he could summon without casting spells. Qin Guang summoned the Four Beast King, Part 4. He summoned the huge turtle and protected himself with it. Sun Wukong announced that it was the turtle shell monster again, but he asserted that he wouldn't hold back that time. The ink dragon suddenly charged towards Sun Wukong from behind. Sun Wukong quickly released his bright orbs of aura. He combined all of them to create a powerful orb and attacked the ink dragon with it. The bright aura swirled violently, and it shredded the ink dragon in the process. The ink dragon was destroyed, and it scattered all over the place. Qin Guang surmised that with just one punch, Sun Wukong took down the ink dragon. Hao Xian commented that indeed, a monkey empowered by the power of realms was no longer something that Xuan Nu and Qin Guang could handle individually, but he wondered what would happen if they joined forces. He voiced that it seemed like Sun Wukong had fought all along the way, and as he called Xuan Nu his excellent disciple, he imparted that it was her turn to take the stage. Xuan Nu responded yes and that she was ready. Xuan Nu released a vibrating aura from her storage ring. An artifact came out. Xuan Nu called Hao Xian and remarked she was ready. Hao Xian stated that Xuan Nu should keep her voice down and not let them notice them, and Xuan Nu declared that she understood. Xuan Nu inquired the artifact if it heard what Hao Xian uttered, and she expressed that it should be careful. She articulated that it should go, and it flew towards Qin Guang. The artifact was the possession of the divine bird. It penetrated the shell of Qin Guang's turtle without problem. Both Qin Guang and Sun Wukong were unaware of what happened. Sun Wukong announced that he admits that the turtle shell used to be troublesome, but currently, the situation is different. He pronounced that with 3 realms combined, it was his utmost respect for Qin Guang. Sun Wukong commented that Qin Guang had no chance of winning. He gave that attack his best. On the other hand, Qin Guang also did his best to defend himself from the attack. Sun Wukong laughed and noted that Qin Guang lost because there is absolutely no way he could have withstood that. But Qin Guang's turtle shell remained still intact and undamaged. Sun Wukong queried what was going on and how there was not even a scratch. He considered that it didn't make sense because he clearly attacked before and he knew it well that 3 strikes were more than enough to break through, so the only possibility was that Qin Guang has been hiding his true strength. Sun Wukong cursed in his mind as he pondered that he only had 4 left, so even if he could break through Qin Guang's shield, he still has 2 divine beasts left unused. He cursed in his mind again as he contemplated that he underestimated Qin Guang. Sun Wukong was speechless, and his expression turned dark when he realized his situation. Xuan Nu and Hao Xian watched while Sun Wukong became troubled. Hao Xian reflected that at that point, with the wisdom of a monkey, the situation should have been determined and there should be no more foolish attempts to show strength. Sun Wukong clenched his fist and conveyed that he was unwilling. But he proclaimed that he admits that he has lost. Sun Wukong trembled in disappointment and rage. Xuan Nu questioned if Sun Wukong was alright. Hao Xian added that Xuan Nu shouldn't worry because Sun Wukong will only become more determined in the face of setbacks. As Sun Wukong mentioned that it got more and more interesting, Hao Xian voiced that Xuan Nu should see it, and Xuan Nu asserted that Hao Xian has a keen eye for people. Sun Wukong affirmed that Qin Guang should listen up and that, in the meantime, they should temporarily place the position of the eldest senior brother in his hands. He indicated that he will one day personally reclaim it. Sun Wukong averred that in order to wipe away that day's shame, in the future, he will defeat Qin Guang in his strongest field. He summoned a fiery golden dragon. But the dragon was still so small. Xuan Nu exclaimed that there was no way. Meanwhile, Hao Xian was petrified. Hao Xian cursed, and he probed if the little brat learned summoning beasts too. He inquired if it wasn't supposed to be a bloodline talent and if he had Sharingan like Kakashi. He observed that perhaps Sun Wukong naturally had the talent for summoning, but it wasn't awakened, and Sun Wukong could take the role of the protagonist in that manga as he wouldn't compete with him for it. Suddenly, the system congratulated Hao Xian for experiencing setbacks because, with each setback, his potential increased by 5%. The system also notified Hao Xian that Qin Guang's potential increased by 5% by encouragement. On the other hand, Qin Guang wondered if he was really that strong all along. Hao Xian laughed in his mind as he concluded that it was just as he expected. Not long ago, Hao Xian called Xuan Nu, his good disciple, to come to him for a moment, and Xuan Nu interrogated him what it was. Hao Xian quizzed Xuan Nu if his incredibly powerful father had any items that could assist others, and as Xuan Nu responded yes, that her father does, she pressed Hao Xian why he requested. Hao Xian informed that Sun Wukong was inherently restless, but ever since he learned about the power of realms, he hasn't been diligently practicing. And as for Qin Guang, his self-doubt is partly to please his father, but there is also a genuine sense of inferiority, so he related that if they could let Qin Guang defeat Sun Wukong, it might benefit both of them. He acknowledged that they should tailor their teachings based on their individual aptitudes. Xuan Nu acknowledged that it was good and it seemed like the right approach, so they will follow Hao Xian's guidance. Back in the present, Hao Xian consulted Xuan Nu about her opinion, if he wasn't right, and Xuan Nu agreed. The two of them gave each other a high five. Hao Xian concluded that since the outcome was decided, they should put away their divine powers as they need to hurry to the next destination. Suddenly, Medusa addressed Hao Xian as her senior, and she inquired him if he played house with those trash to pass the time. Medusa charged towards Qin Guang. She claimed that if that was the case, Hao Xian should count her in as she will join the fun. Sun Wukong became alarmed when he saw what Medusa did. Qin Guang had the same reaction as Sun Wukong. Xuan Nu also did the same. On the other hand, Hao Xian's expression looked horrified. Qin Guang's turtle shell exploded. Its form slowly dissipated in the air. Hao Xian inquired Xuan Nu if she just deactivated her support spell, and Xuan Nu stated no. He declared that it seemed like they were in big trouble that time. With just one glance, Hao Xian's sixth sense told him that the person before him was unlike any opponent he had faced before. Hao Xian even feels that even if he uses his peak card, victory is highly uncertain, and there is a high probability of a disastrous outcome. But at that critical moment, Hao Xian's body trembled uncontrollably, trembling with excitement. Hao Xian wondered if it was because of the peak card, if it could be that his personality was changing, and he cursed as he wondered if it was still him, Hao Xian. Meanwhile, Medusa looked at Hao Xian with a brooding look on her face. She queried Hao Xian what was happening to him, and as she uttered that she could understand if he was annoyed by her interruption during their playtime, she questioned him what was with the hostility and the presence of another familiar aura within his body. Hao Xian was puzzled by what Medusa articulated, but he did not let it show. Medusa remarked that from up close she can't help but feel like Hao Xian was someone from that world, but the other aura was clearly from the high-ranking figures from their Western realm, so it was strange. She politely probed Hao Xian if he could enlighten her and explain the reason behind that while addressing him as her senior. Hao Xian considered that Medusa mentioned the Western realm, and based on her appearance, he seemed to have an idea what it could be, and as he wondered if it was already happening, he noted that it was too early. He demanded himself if Medusa observed that he had a Western aura. Hao Xian wondered if it could be because of the wings on his back. On the other hand, Medusa examined Hao Xian. She pondered that the more she looked at Hao Xian, the more he resembled someone from the local world, so she had to test him. Medusa mentioned that during a fight, the true energy type will naturally be revealed. She began to gather her aura at the palm of her hand. Medusa threw that orb of aura towards Hao Xian. Hao Xian was enclosed in a cube. Sun Wukong called Hao Xian and asserted that he should be careful. Xuan Nu did the same as well. Medusa just stood there, and she did not do a follow-up attack while Hao Xian was imprisoned inside the cube. Meanwhile, Hao Xian was wary of his strange surroundings. Medusa continued to observe Hao Xian from a distance. Hao Xian glared at Medusa, and he still gauged the situation. Medusa announced that she believes that Hao Xian will surely forgive the caution of a junior. Hao Xian reflected that Medusa seemed to have mistaken him for their comrade, so if he made a move at that moment, it would immediately expose him, and he wondered if he should really waste his cards dealing with Medusa, and he wondered about the mission. Medusa voiced that if Hao Xian doesn't break the barrier quickly, the air will soon disappear. Sun Wukong quickly charged with all his might to attack the barrier. Xuan Nu also released her aura and prepared to attack. Sun Wukong and Xuan Nu's auras created a huge explosion as they hit the barrier. Sun Wukong gritted his teeth as he continued to push through, but the barrier was intact, and only the ground took the damage. Sun Wukong landed back on the ground. He cursed and expressed that it was really much tougher than Qin Guang's turtle shell. Hao Xian affirmed that Sun Wukong was no match for Medusa, so they were out of options. He commented that they have no choice but to fight. Hao Xian activated his peak card, Fox Saint Daji. A powerful aura swirled around Hao Xian as he activated the peak card. Medusa uttered that Hao Xian should come on. Suddenly, an ominous, huge, dark orb appeared in the sky. Xuan Nu was alarmed when she saw that. Sun Wukong was on edge too. On the other hand, Hao Xian inquired what happened to the sky. Meanwhile, the orb slowly turned red, and it released multiple strong lightning bolts. Medusa was astonished when she felt the strong presence of the orb. Suddenly, a huge hand emerged from the orb, and Medusa was startled. She questioned what it was. In an instant, the hand clenched its fist and caught Medusa. Medusa cursed as she stated that she couldn't break free. She declared that she was completely unable to break free. A voice suddenly announced that he came to buy Hao Xian sometime, so he should recover his strength as soon as possible. Hao Xian was taken aback by what he saw and heard. The hand disappeared just as quickly as it appeared. Everyone, Hao Xian and his disciples, were stunned, and they looked up at the sky. Hao Xian queried his disciples what it meant by what the voice conveyed earlier. Sun Wukong requested Hao Xian what words, and he mentioned that he only saw a big hand grabbing the snake demon and taking it away. Xuan Nu remarked that it must be someone extremely important from the heavenly palace, as she didn't hear anyone speaking either. Hao Xian was surprised that they didn't hear anything, and he considered that it clearly was mean for him to hear. Remembering what the voice noted, Hao Xian wondered what earth-shattering secret was hidden within his body, who he really was, and where he came from. Hao Xian believed that it was too overwhelming and he must speed up his progress because only by unlocking the Heavenly Palace card could everything be revealed. He affirmed that they should go quickly to the next destination, and he reflected that thinking too much in that situation won't help at all. Hao Xian remembered the mask, and he perceived that he forgot that there was still an item that hadn't been tested. He realized that the previous hint indicated that the energy was insufficient, and it needed some time to absorb the energy of the heavens and earth, so it should almost be done at that time. A magic array suddenly appeared and activated below Hao Xian's feet as he used the item. Suddenly, a gate appeared. It emitted a mysterious aura around it. It seemed like a portal, and it appeared in front of Hao Xian. Hao Xian probed what it was and if it was a door. The system notified Hao Xian that the king's mask grants the user the qualification to open the door of the king, and within the king's space, the entrant will have unlimited resurrection ability and unlimited energy. The system revealed that within it are 108 small worlds, encompassing the most powerful monster kings of various types as well as infinite small monsters. When Hao Xian heard about the powerful bosses, infinite minions, unlimited stamina, and unlimited resurrection, he deemed that it was like an ultra-fast leveling experience instance. But Hao Xian surmised that every time he activates the peak card, his own strength gets a tremendous boost, so the benefits are clearly higher than that, and he cursed and acknowledged that he doesn't want to waste such a crazy item. Hao Xian realized something. He contemplated that if he didn't use it, he could let his disciples use it. Hao Xian turned to look at his clueless disciples. He specified that in that case, it was like enabling auto battle in a game, and he cursed in his mind as he reckoned that it was truly cheating. But he corrected himself and asserted that it was even more hardcore. He pronounced that it was like hiring a professional game studio to level up for him. Hao Xian considered that although the system likes to trick him, it has never really harmed him, so his disciples won't be in danger. He pondered that the system has previously hinted that continuing to raise the disciples' potential to 60% will yield new rewards. Hao Xian inquired his disciples if they all believed in their master. Xuan Nu stated that of course they do. Sun Wukong also declared the same thing, and Qin Guang remarked that he believes too. Hao Xian announced very good and that a tremendous opportunity was in front of them at the moment. He mentioned that there are various types of powerful demon kings for them to challenge and overcome inside. Hao Xian conveyed that moreover, they will have unlimited stamina and unlimited resurrection ability inside. So in other words, the life and death battles that warriors have sought their whole lives will become commonplace in there. Sun Wukong was in awe as he listened to Hao Xian. On the other hand, Qin Guang questioned about the unlimited resurrection, while Xuan Nu queried about the strongest demon kings. Hao Xian expressed that as for whether they dare to enter would depend on their own courage and judgment. Sun Wukong articulated that fortune favors the bold, and there was nothing that the monkey was afraid of. Xuan Nu noted that since she has chosen to be Hao Xian's disciple, she unconditionally trusts him, so she will enter. Qin Guang commented that as a powerful being like Hao Xian, there was no need for him to use such means to harm them, so he would enter too. Hao Xian pronounced very well, and that they should let him see where their respective limits lie. He uttered that when they come out of there, he looks forward to seeing a transformative experience. Hao Xian observed that they should take their master's auspicious words. He watched as his students started walking towards the entrance to the king's space. Xuan Nu started walking through the entrance first. Qin Guang was the second one to walk through, and Sun Wukong came last. Hao Xian wondered himself how much stronger they had become when they came out, and as he indicated that he really looked forward to it, he wished them good luck and affirmed that the fate of that world depended on them. He asserted that he also needed to hurry and set off to complete his mission, and that he felt more and more motivated lately. Meanwhile, something went on in the mortal city of Tai. Two common people were inside the Lord's manor. The two of them bowed down in front of the young Neja. The woman related that Neja must stand up for her because the beast not only forcefully took her body but also seized the only land her father left for her. The man revealed that Neja should not listen to the woman's lies because she slandered him and she abandoned him out of revenge. He proclaimed that the land was sold to him by the woman's father before he passed away, and he had the title deed, but the woman admitted that the title deed was forged and requested that Neja see through it. Neja acknowledged that it was a difficult situation. He muttered that everyone has their own arguments and inquired who he should ultimately listen to. The man murmured that every word he says is the truth and may lightning strike him if he lies, but the woman whispered that what she imparted was the truth. Neja had a suggestion and voiced that they both make an offer and he will judge whoever offers more money as the one telling the truth and interrogated them their opinion about it. The woman was extremely surprised by what Neja added. Neja demanded the woman if she was deaf and shared that she should hurry up and make her offer. The woman testified that she had already used up all her remaining money to pay taxes, and the taxes have increased so much that it was lucky if they didn't starve, so there was no extra money left. Neja's bodyguard probed the woman if she blamed the Lord and questioned her audacity. The woman repeatedly responded that she would not dare and that even if she had 100 times the courage, she wouldn't dare. Neja answered that he would be a good lord and requested his bodyguard to not be so harsh on his people, and the bodyguard immediately apologized to Neja. Neja communicated that since they don't even have money, they should let him make another proposal, and he suggested for the woman to become his mistress for a month for him to rule in her favor in that lawsuit. The woman was flustered and surprised when she heard Neja's offer. The woman was so flustered, and she was lost for words. Neja laughed, and as he inquired the woman if she really considered that he, the great lord, would be interested in a village woman like her, he declared that she cracked him up. The woman was hurt by Neja's words, and tears welled up at the corners of her eyes. On the other hand, a red-haired kid remarked that his name will resound throughout the world one day, and they should mark his words and just wait and see. The inn fell silent. The big guy behind the kid requested for him to stop and stated that it got awkward. But the kid queried the big guy what was there to be awkward about and how one could ever achieve their dreams if they were too afraid to even speak about them. And he noted that from that point onward, he will publicly announce it in the store every day because if one has something to say, they should just say it, and that was his way. Suddenly, Hao Xian interjected and apologized for interrupting. He mentioned that on his way there, he saw a cultivation sect in the outskirts of the city, and as he questioned the kid why he didn't join them, he uttered that it seems more useful than giving speeches there every day. The kid was a bit irritated by what Hao Xian expressed. He announced that Hao Xian was a guest that was unfamiliar, and he interrogated him if he was not from around there. Hao Zion commented that he was just a passing traveler. The kid voiced that if Hao Zion doesn't know the situation, he shouldn't give random advice to others because it is easy for him to talk without experiencing the pain, as he, a destitute wanderer, wouldn't understand how difficult it is to pursue cultivation. He articulated that even an ordinary outer disciple clearly states a price of 300 taels while the inn his father left him is worth only 300 taels, and as Hao Zion tried to reason with him, he cut him off. He responded that he doesn't want a life without expenses and probed him if he mused that he will live like a beggar if he enters a sect. The kid explained that furthermore, even if he had enough money, without connections, without a background, without someone to guide him, there was no way he could make progress in the sect because damn cultivation sects are bound to be as dark as that rotten city. But no matter what, he will find a way to become stronger one day, and he will reach the pinnacle of the cultivation world. Hao Zion was speechless and he frowned at the kid. The kid was ticked off by Hao Zion's expression. He pressed Hao Zion what was with that expression on his face if he looked down on him, and if he did not believe that he could become someone important. The kid cursed and ventured Hao Zion, who he reckoned he was, a wanderer, to look down on him, what he was even worth. And as Hao Zion proclaimed that he didn't say anything and posed the kid if he became too sensitive, the kid asserted that Hao Zion should stop talking nonsense because his expression says it all. He observed that the big guy should go on and teach Hao Zion a lesson. But the big guy conveyed that it doesn't feel right. The kid pronounced that the big guy should stop talking and just beat Hao Zion up if he has to, as he will take responsibility. The big guy agreed and reported that offending his young master was Hao Zion's misfortune. Hao Zion just looked at the big guy, and he was so bored and uninterested. Suddenly, the second dragon gang outside broke the door of the inn. The elder brother of the gang was amused. He wondered them if he was right that it seemed like their protection fee hadn't been paid for 2 months. The big guy was terrified when he saw the second dragon gang come in. The elder brother inquired what that was and if they planned to refuse and confront them. The kid immediately recognized the elder brother of the second dragon gang. He remarked that it was not that they won't pay, but the damn lord's taxes are just too high, but they will make sure to make the full amount next month. The elder brother glared at the kid menacingly. He swung his fist, and the kid immediately got terrified. The elder brother punched the kid across the face. The punch was so strong that the kid crashed face first on the floor. The big guy stated that the elder brother should stop. But the elder brother catechized the kid if all his family members died and questioned how a little brat like him dared to speak to him. The kid interrogated the elder brother why he was acting so arrogantly when he was just relying on his gang's support, and he responded that once he becomes an immortal in the future, he will make them all search the ground for their teeth. But when the elder brother heard the kid talking about the future, he explained that he was afraid that the kid wouldn't have a chance because they would send him to meet the king of hell that day. Suddenly, the system notified Hao Zion that it had detected special talent in the red-haired boy, and enhancing his potential would grant additional rewards. Hao Zion affirmed that even Immortal could pique the system's interest. Hao Zion cursed and remarked that he really didn't want to be a saint's witch who repays kindness with resentment. But he stated that the last rewards were just too good, so he agreed. Hao Zion called the elder brother's attention. He apologized and declared that he had to inconvenience the elder brother while slamming his face on the floor. Hao Zion slammed him so powerfully that the entire floor inside the inn got destroyed. The big guy was astonished. Hao Zion's power even reached the walls, and they began to crack. The elder brother was left unconscious on the floor. The inn was completely in shambles. Hao Zion was alarmed, and he uttered that he used too much force again. He pronounced that it was bad. Hao Zion quickly apologized to the kid and affirmed that he lacked experience and he didn't control the strength properly, so he will compensate according to the price. The kid immediately conveyed no and that there was really no need because it was an honor for his house to be destroyed by an immortal. He muttered that he wouldn't dare demand compensation and that he was unaware of the immortal's identity earlier. The kid acknowledged that he has committed a great offense and he deserves to die, and he repeatedly cursed. Hao Zion queried himself if cultivators are really respected in the mortal world like that and if it was still the arrogant and domineering kid from earlier. He articulated that it was enough and that the kid should get up because he still has a question for him. A few moments later, the kid sat meekly while waiting for Hao Zion's question. Hao Zion inquired the kid to tell him what the damned lord he mentioned about. He considered that the system prompts that the target is inside the lord's mansion, which is very likely the lord they mentioned. Hao Zion questioned the kid if the lord was a bad person based on his tone earlier, and the kid commented that he reported to the immortal and that the lord is at the moment but he wasn't before. The kid observed that in the past 2 years, under Neja's governance, their Taiyan city was well organized and socially stable. He noted that the people were prosperous and happy. Hao Zion inquired what happened. The kid mentioned that starting from that year, for some unknown reason, Neja suddenly became indifferent and foolish. He voiced that although Neja hasn't committed major evils, he no longer cares about the sufferings of the common people. The kid expressed that Neja even disregards the lives of the people and has imposed heavy taxes solely for his own enjoyment. He related that as a result, the lives of the townspeople have been getting worse recently, and complaints were widespread, and people even suspect that Neja is being controlled by some evil force. How Zion probed about the evil force. The kid interrogated how such a significant change could occur otherwise, and as he claimed that it was inexplicable, How Zion announced that it was true. The kid politely addressed How Zion if he inquired about Neja with the intention of eliminating the harm to the people. Even if it was purely for the sake of completing the mission, How Zion laughed and proclaimed, "Of course." He averred that it was an undeniable responsibility to eliminate harm for the people, and the kid asserted that How Zion was truly worthy of being an immortal and was indeed righteous. However, the kid advised How Zion not to do so, and How Zion posed the kid why and if he doesn't despise Neja. The kid responded that Neja is not as simple as How Zion, and How Zion pressed why. The kid reported that Neja is also a cultivator. He recounted that Neja unintentionally offended someone from a powerful sect outside the city in the past, and the cultivator was nearly beaten to death. He revealed that, however, unexpectedly, the person Neja offended turned out to be the young master of that sect, and it led to over 100 cultivators coming to seek revenge. The kid prompted How Zion to guess what happened and indicated that Neja single-handedly defeated the entire sect. How Zion was speechless, and he reflected that there was no doubt it must be Neja. But the kid stressed that it doesn't end there because the sect somehow managed to invite a true celestial being from the heavenly palace to help them. He insisted that it was a genuine celestial being. The kid informed that when the Immortal saw Neja, they immediately knelt down with a thump, and he knew that How Zion probably wouldn't believe it, but he saw it with his own eyes. How Zion laughed in his mind as he wondered why he wouldn't believe it and who would dare not kneel to the son of the king. But he pondered that something was not right, and he wondered if Neja became the lord of that mortal city and which monster would dare possess him. How Zion concluded that he understood and that they should go as the kid will lead the way to the mansion. The kid implored How Zion if he didn't just listen to what he replied, and he professed that Neja is someone who even the celestial beings in the heavens can't provoke. How Zion uttered that he looked for Neja and he was in a hurry to find a disciple, so the kid should hurry up. When the kid heard what How Zion declared, he inquired if he had encountered a true big shot. He remarked that he would take How Zion where Neja is right away. A few moments later, How Zion and the kid walked towards the Lord's mansion. The kid addressed How Zion as a respected immortal and mentioned that he was called Lu Shi, and How Zion could call him E. How Zion articulated that he was not interested in knowing, so Lu Shi should just focus on guiding the way. But Lu Shi stated that How Zion shouldn't be so cold because he knew someone like him, a big shot, must have long served the 7 emotions and 6 desires, but it was so boring that way. He noted How Zion if he was right that he must be from a prestigious cultivation sect, but before How Zion could answer, he informed that it was most certainly and that it was truly enviable to have such a background where one is born into the path of immortality. Lu Shi expressed that those of them from lower class backgrounds aren't as fortunate as How Zion. But How Zion conveyed that he was not interested. But Lu Shi continued and pronounced that his parents were just ordinary small business owners and it was simply impossible for him to cultivate as a celestial being. So How Zion questioned Lu Shi if he didn't hear him, and he related that he was not interested. Lu Shi still continued and asserted that to top it off, he was born in an unfavorable place and ended up with such a worthless lord, and How Zion pondered that he already commented that he was not interested. Lu Shi whispered that others always say that they control their own destiny, but for people like them at the bottom, there aren't many choices in reality because the barriers of social class have long been guarded by the privileged elite. How Zion repeatedly averred to himself that he should hold on because Lu Shi was just a child, and there is a vast difference in their perspectives, connections, and reflections patterns. Lu Shi continued and voiced that other people's starting lines are even the unreachable finish line for them forever, and with one's fate and luck, placing fate as the top priority is not without reason. How Zion yelled and reiterated that he acknowledged he was not interested, and he probed Lu Shi if he was deaf or something. Lu Shi indicated alright and that he will already shut up. A few moments later, the two of them walked peacefully, in silence. That scenario continued for a few moments. Suddenly, Lu Shi posed How Zion if he was sure he didn't want to have a chat, and he notified that experiencing and breaking through in the mundane world might bring him some insights and breakthroughs in his cultivation, and he will never know. How Zion screamed and cursed as he wondered himself how he ended up with such a talkative and peculiar person. On the other hand, Neja was at the Lord's mansion, rear training ground. Neja talked with his master. The master announced that Neja's father, the king, sent him to the mortal realm to train and not to become a corrupt official. Neja scoffed and observed that it was what those lowly commoners deserve. When the master heard what Neja called them lowly commoners, he explained that while Neja had been mischievous in the past, he never spoke such words, and if he didn't stand in front of him at that moment, he would seriously question if he had been possessed by some evil spirit, and he interrogated Neja what happened to him that caused such a drastic change. Neja pressed the master when he became so talkative what exactly he was there for, and if he came to take him back under his father's orders. The master revealed that it was nothing major and that the heavenly king sent him to wake him up with a good beating. Neja was amused when he heard what the master added, and he notified that it would be great because he has long wanted an opportunity to have a real battle with his master. The master affirmed that Neja's wish shall be granted. Neja was quickly enclosed in layers of spider silk. The master communicated that Neja should let him show his latest breakthrough because even the heavenly king couldn't stop praising it. It was the seal technique. He roared ferociously loud. Multiple chains suddenly appeared, and they all enclosed the layers of silk that enclosed Neja. The master towered over the enclosure and applied his aura. His aura quickly got imbued on the chains, and it strengthened them. The master imparted that with lightning attribute chains, the entire space will be paralyzed, and adding that to the super speed regenerating threads, Neja won't be able to escape. But he opined that just to be safe, he has also borrowed an extraordinary treasure that ordinary people can't even imagine. The master connected his index fingers with each other. He admitted that it was the heavenly king's 7 treasures, the pagoda. The pagoda released an extremely powerful aura. The master swung his arms and prepared to throw the pagoda. As he threw the pagoda in the air, it grew huge. He stated that the pagoda should go and suppress Neja. The master declared that the outcome was already decided. He pronounced that Neja should know better than him that there is absolutely no possibility of escape for any living being. But suddenly, the master inquired what happened. He remarked that the vitality within the pagoda rapidly faded away. The master mentioned that it was truly Neja's aura, and it has completely vanished. He quickly lunged towards the pagoda, worrying about Neja. The master queried what the hell happened. A blue aura began wafting out of the pagoda. Those auras fluttered majestically in the air. Suddenly, it began rapidly converging. As those auras converged, Neja's body slowly appeared. Neja revealed that if living beings couldn't escape, he questioned what would happen if he tore himself apart first and resurrected. The master was surprised when he heard Neja mention resurrection. He watched closely as those converging auras slowly completed Neja's hand. The master interrogated if it could be that Neja had entered the realm of Nirvana. Neja probed the master if it wasn't obvious enough. The master repeatedly conveyed that it was the ancestors' blessings because the Nirvana realm, which has been extinct in heaven for 3,000 years, has actually been achieved by his disciple. He articulated that it was a whole 3,000 years, so his disciple is amazing, and with undying, limitless internal energy, Neja has done it, and he has truly achieved immortality. Neja repeatedly announced that the master should get lost and that he was disgusting because he was only interested in beautiful elder sisters. The master affirmed that may the Jade Emperor, the Buddha, and all members of the Sangha bless them. He commented that they shouldn't delay any longer, so he will go immediately and report that tremendous news to the heavenly king. The master immediately left and flew up to the sky. Neja clicked his tongue and noted that the master made a big fuss over nothing because the realm of Nirvana is indeed impressive, but for a genius like him, it was nothing but just a trivial matter. He uttered that they should wait until he grows for a few hundred years, and the entire heavenly palace will unquestionably be his era. Neja expressed that as for cultivation, it was too simple for him and it was more fun to find a little sister, so he will go back and have fun with his little sisters. Hao Xian asserted that Neja's arrogance is just like that of the monkey, and it was a good plan because he reckons that if he gives him a good beating, it will boost Neja's potential. As he observed that it probably went to be a clash of titans when Neja meets the monkey in the future because both of them were self-centered, he reported that the peak card should come and they should get started. A strong pillar of golden light quickly came down from the sky. Neja stopped in his tracks when he felt the presence of the golden light behind him. He looked back and was puzzled with what he saw. Hao Xian appeared as the fox Saint Daji. He sparkled, and he was pretty. Lu Shi was so shocked when he saw what just happened. Hao Xian wondered to Lu Shi to tell him if it wasn't strange for a grown man like him to transform into that appearance. Lu Shi voiced no, not at all. Hao Xian cursed in his mind as he pondered that luckily, his college buddies from the previous life didn't see him. Otherwise, they would have teased him mercilessly. Suddenly, Neja demanded where the little thief came from and questioned Hao Xian for daring to sneak into his grandpa's house without any regard. Hao Xian turned around to face Neja. Neja was baffled when he saw Hao Xian's face. He was amazed and stated that Hao Xian was such a beautiful sister. Hao Xian considered that it was enough, and he declared that he should quickly put an end to that embarrassing situation. He began releasing his energy while standing in a typical manly posture. Hao Xian released a tremendous amount of energy in front of Neja, but Hao Xian was surprised. He inquired what went on and why he didn't feel any strength at all. The system notified Hao Xian that the fox Saint Daji doesn't possess any power in her regular state, and she needs to absorb a large amount of external spiritual energy and fill her danshin in order to enter a combat state and unleash her divine power. Hao Xian was completely stunned after he heard what the system uttered. He cursed the system and pronounced that it was pulling the same trick on him again when it could have told him in advance. Hao Xian queried where the system expects him to find a large amount of spiritual energy for it, if they could make a compromise, and if it could help him change into another character. He cursed in his mind as he pondered that he would have to provoke Neja to make him unleash his ultimate move and absorb his energy. Hao Xian remarked that Neja was an ugly freak and dumb brat, so he should take that hit and die already. He managed to hit Neja directly in the stomach while Neja just stood there. But Hao Xian's attack dealt no damage whatsoever to Neja. Neja was speechless as he looked down on where Hao Xian hit him. Meanwhile, Hao Xian was so nervous and was sweating profusely. Hao Xian observed that he was just acting like a spoiled brat and that he really didn't have any power at all. Neja mentioned that it was alright and that they should not waste any more time because he was already impatient. Hearing that Neja commented that he was impatient, Hao Xian questioned him what he was planning to do. When Neja heard Hao Xian's question, he noted that, of course, he was going to turn the raw rice into cooked rice, and he used his restriction spell, Immobilize, on Hao Xian. Hao Xian wondered what he was supposed to do at the moment and that it was the biggest crisis in history. A few moments later, Neja arrived at his residence. One of the guards noticed that Neja was approaching. He and the other guard immediately welcomed Neja. The two of them watched as Neja walked away without saying anything. One of the guards requested Neja what went on. He reported that Neja always conquered women with his charm, and it was the first time he had seen it, so he probed Neja why he restored to force at that time. But Neja didn't answer him and just slammed the door, so the guard explained that it was strange. Inside, Neja threw Hao Xian on the floor. Hao Xian responded that Neja shouldn't come any closer because he told him that he was actually a man. But Neja just replied that Hao Xian should shut up, be quiet, and that he shouldn't speak. Hao Xian was surprised when he saw Neja's reaction. He observed Neja, and he noticed that Neja stood in a fighting stance. Neja was in a fighting stance and was nervous. He gritted his teeth as he braced himself. Neja nervously waited for an attack. The rank 10 of the Celestial Martial ranking suddenly came out of the ground behind Neja and conveyed that he was impressive. He expressed that Neja actually saw through his tracking, and as he demanded when it was and if it was in the martial arts arena, he added that it has only been a few years, but Neja has truly grown a lot. Neja quickly looked behind him. He was astonished when he saw the rank 10 of the Celestial Martial ranking. The celestial being had an evil smile on his face. He inquired Neja if he didn't recognize his old man while addressing him as a good nephew. Neja was perplexed when he heard what the celestial being remarked. The celestial being uttered that the instructions of Neja's father were still vivid in his mind. Neja queried if he was the former 10th ranked demon lord and if he wasn't the guy that was killed by the king himself. The celestial being declared that he never expected that Neja would actually manage to reach the Nirvana realm, and that he truly had the heaven's assistance. He announced that Neja should come and hand over the essence of Nirvana willingly, and he would leave him with a complete corpse. Neja mentioned that the celestial being had such arrogance, and as he questioned the celestial being if he really believed that he was invincible, he asserted that he was just a defeated general under the king's command. He voiced that he would tell the celestial being that day that the times have changed and that he was a fool. The celestial being was amused, and he probed Neja if that was the case. Neja responded, of course. He charged at the celestial being with his fiery aura. The celestial being just tilted his head to the side, and he was unfazed by Neja's attack. Neja was intimidated when he saw the celestial being's reaction. Instead of attacking the celestial being, Neja used his momentum to jump over the celestial being's head. Neja pronounced that only a fool ranked 10th on the heavenly list would dare to fight the celestial being. The celestial being glanced over his shoulder as Neja continued to run. Neja conveyed that the celestial should wait for him, the young master, because he will surely avenge that day's grudge in the future. Suddenly, the celestial being summoned a huge fist. It hit the fleeing Neja directly on the stomach. The punch was powerful that it sent Neja flying, and he crashed on the floor. Neja wondered what the hell was going on. The celestial being interrogated Neja if he really assumed that he would recklessly come to catch him unprepared and who he supposed he was. He exclaimed that Neja should hurry up and hand over the essence. The celestial being explained that although the Nirvana realm cannot kill Neja, he could trap and torment him. He noted that with the combination of the essence and his own blood spirit resurrection body, it won't take 10 years, and not only will he restore his peak strength, but he could also seek revenge on Neja's father. Neja scoffed, and he pressed the celestial being if it believed that a mere barrier could trap him. He started bombarding the barrier with his attacks. The celestial being remarked that he would advise Neja not to waste his efforts because it was no ordinary barrier. He announced that it was the most prized treasure of his lifetime, the ultimate masterpiece, and the energy contained within it was immense that it could even create a separate small world. The celestial being insisted that even if the Buddha himself came, he would never be able to break the barrier, and he inquired Neja if he understood that it was absolutely impossible to break. But suddenly, the barrier began melting. The celestial being was puzzled when he noticed what happened. He noticed Hao Xian, who stood on the side. Hao Xian used the Fox Saint Daji's skill to absorb the energy within the barrier. In an instant, the barrier disappeared, and they were back in the room. The celestial being was stunned when he saw what happened. He demanded what the heck was going on there. Hao Xian finished absorbing the barrier and nothing was left. The celestial being inquired what the hell was going on and who Hao Xian was because he didn't even notice him. He cursed and remarked that even though he doesn't know what strange technique Hao Xian used, it doesn't matter, and he queried Hao Xian if he liked to absorb. The celestial being pronounced fine. He declared that Hao Xian should let him absorb enough from him, and he used his manifestation beyond the body, Blood Dragon. The fierce Blood Dragon appeared right beside the celestial being. The aura of the Blood Dragon was powerful, and it spread around Hao Xian. Hao Xian stated that it has such a powerful pressure. The celestial being commented that Hao Xian should come on and keep giving him more to absorb. He voiced that he would see if he could make Hao Xian burst. The Blood Dragon began gathering its powerful aura in its mouth. It fired the aura it gathered and directed it towards Hao Xian. Hao Xian raised his hand with his palm forward and got ready to absorb the Blood Dragon's attack. He stared ahead intently, anticipating the Blood Dragon's energy. The Blood Dragon's attack was huge, and it neared Hao Xian. Hao Xian began absorbing the Blood Dragon's attack. The celestial being observed that the feeling was not right. At that moment, Hao Xian was almost done absorbing the Blood Dragon's attack. Hao Xian's absorption was strong that he even started absorbing the Blood Dragon itself. He finished absorbing everything and was unfazed. The celestial being stood there and he was in a daze and was speechless. He cursed, and as he questioned if even his dragon got absorbed, he noted that it was unfair. On the other hand, Neja was taken aback by what he saw. Meanwhile, Hao Xian pondered that it was an energy-gathering prelude. He believed that it seemed like it could be actively released. Hao Xian mused that it would be fun and laughed evilly. The celestial being interrogated Hao Xian what was with his expression and what he wanted to do. Hao Xian announced that the celestial being should come on and do him a little favor to be a little guinea pig and let him test how much energy he could absorb. He began absorbing the celestial being. The celestial being was alarmed when he saw that his essence was sucked out of his body. Hao Xian continued to absorb the celestial being's energy and it intensified. The celestial being screamed, and he was helpless. The life in his eyes suddenly disappeared, and his flesh started to shrivel. The celestial being's entire body dried up, and the energy that was sucked out of him started to wane. A few moments later, the celestial being's body had lost most of its energy that he could no longer stand up, and he fell face first on the floor. Hao Xian finished absorbing the celestial being's energy. Neja's mouth was agape when he saw what Hao Xian just did. He concluded that the entire battle was over and the room wasn't even slightly damaged, so he wondered who the hell Hao Xian was, as he had never heard of him before. On the other hand, Hao Xian saw that the Fox Saint Daji's battery was still not full, and he exclaimed, "No way." Hao Xian mentioned that the enemies have already been dealt with, but she hasn't absorbed enough energy, so the absorption rate was too outrageous, and he pressed himself if Fox Saint Daji was that strong too. He wondered what he would do because the system didn't even hint at Neja's potential increase, and it must be because the impact wasn't strong enough. And as he affirmed that the celestial being has become a human, he probed where else he could find energy. Hao Xian uttered that he should wait a minute and that there was still a little bit there. Neja was alarmed when he saw how Hao Xian looked at him. He quickly demanded Hao Xian what he reckoned he did and articulated that he only acted that way towards Hao Xian earlier to confuse the enemy, and it was really a misunderstanding. Hao Xian expressed that Neja shouldn't be so nervous because he just borrowed a tiny bit of his energy, that was all. Hao Xian stated that Neja should come on. He began absorbing Neja's energy. Neja gritted his teeth, and he did his best to endure Hao Xian's energy absorption. He cursed and mentioned that he was not as weak as the heavily injured guy and that Hao Xian shouldn't forget that he is currently in the state of infinite energy, the Nirvana realm. Neja declared that Hao Xian should take his attack. He inquired Hao Xian if he understood what infinite energy meant, and that it was impossible for him to absorb it. But Neja suddenly felt that his energy was sucked out of him. He was surprised, and his entire body felt weak. Neja mused that his recovery couldn't keep up with the rate of depletion, and he cursed and announced that Hao Xian was too draining. He immediately fell on the floor and his face was shriveled. Neja lost his consciousness. Hao Xian called for Neja's attention and remarked that he shouldn't dare die because he had already put in all his strength, and that he was the target of the mission. Suddenly, the system notified Hao Xian that his energy was fully charged, and Hao Xian was amazed that it was enough. Hao Xian pondered that a continuous surge of power flowed within him. He went into a fighting stance and released his energy. A powerful golden aura quickly surged out of Hao Xian. The system congratulated Hao Xian as he had entered the state of Daji's spellcasting. The system recounted that Daji, the Fox Saint, was the only soul-based mage in the Heavenly Palace, and her attacks could ignore defenses, directly striking the soul, causing mental collapse in the weak and distraction in the strong. The system also added that Fox Saint Daji has the ability to infiltrate the target's mind and manipulate memories, and when Hao Xian heard that, he wondered if it was like Inception, and he considered that it was an incredibly powerful ability. Hao Xian reflected that in that case, it seemed like he didn't need to show off anymore and he could just use his divine powers to modify Nejia's memories and potentially enhance his potential. He observed that he was right and that the theory was plausible. Hao Xian commented that they should give it a try. His eyes lit up as he used his skill on Nejia. Nejia's eyes also lit up in return. Suddenly, a bright light surged into the area. In an instant, Hao Xian went inside Nejia's consciousness. Hao Xian queried himself if it was Nejia's mind. He noticed an ominous presence near him. Hao Xian questioned what it was. He pronounced that it was evil, and he wondered if it could be the source of Nejia's inner malice. Hao Xian voiced that they should step inside and take a look. He approached the evil creature that released a powerful dark aura. Hao Xian glared at the evil creature. He uttered that it has such intense hostility. The evil creature released multiple beams of dark aura. Hao Xian flinched as he got affected by the dark aura. In an instant, a bright light surged in the area once again. Hao Xian was transported to another place. He was transported to a palace, and he noticed a young girl standing near him. The young girl turned around, and Hao Xian saw her face. Hao Xian was amazed, and he noted that she was a beautiful young girl, but he contemplated that he was even more beautiful than her at the moment. The young girl apologized to Nejia and articulated that she would refuse. Nejia was perplexed, and he probed if he heard her correctly. He quizzed the young girl if he was right that she must have heard about his power and if she understood how many people dare not even dream of such an opportunity. Meanwhile, Hao Xian pointed out that they couldn't see him, so he must be in Nejia's memories at the moment, and it felt so real. On the other hand, the young girl asserted that she knew that Nejia is a noble celestial being from heaven, but her mother taught her from a young age not to take advantage of others. Nejia prompted the young girl where the taking advantage of others came from when he only wanted to take her as his disciple. The young girl disclosed that Nejia would be wasting his precious time and energy on her unconditionally while she would have nothing to offer him in return. So it was taking advantage of someone, and it was absolutely not acceptable, and her mother would scold her for it. Nejia observed that he has heard people mention that the young girl's mother is indeed a renowned good-hearted person far and wide, and as the city master, he respects the young girl's choice, but it would be a tremendous waste to let such a rare talent go to waste. He suggested that while he taught the young girl during her cultivation, she could work as a servant and attend to his daily life. Nejia indicated that in that way, it wouldn't be considered taking advantage of him, and he pressed the young girl what she thought. He conveyed that the young girl shouldn't worry because it was just simple service. He insisted that he won't force her and she could make her own decision, so when she has made up her mind, she should come to the city master's residence and find him. Hao Xian acknowledged that Nejia at that time was quite good, and he was different from what comes later. He revealed that the memories of the original host are starting to blur, and he was about to move on to the next memory node, so it seems that Daji's ability could only access deeply ingrained fragments of the target's memories. Hao Xian was transported to the city master's residence, where the next memory happened. A man outside pressed the children if they heard the news that the daughter of embroidered lady's eye she was going to be the city master's disciple, to which one of the children responded that they heard about it too, and as he queried how the delicate widow managed to climb up to the city master, he relayed that it was truly despicable. One of the children replied that there was no way, and he demanded if the girl wasn't still underage. One of the children professed that no one cares about being underage or not because as long as the girl is beautiful, that was all that matters to the big shots. And as the other children laughed and exclaimed that it was true, another further testified that just thinking about the mother and daughter gets him excited. Suddenly, Nejia cross-examined them if they liked to gossip so much and if he should really treat them to something nice to gossip about. The man was quickly alarmed when he saw that Nejia appeared. They all bowed down and pleaded for Nejia to spare them. Nejia assured that he will let them off that time, but anyone who dares to spread rumors or gossip in the future won't be spared, and he won't show mercy. As the man responded yes and promised to Nejia that there wouldn't be another time, Hao Xian concluded that Nejia at that time was truly magnanimous. A few moments later, the young girl practiced and released her aura. She released her aura with all her might and directed it forward. The young girl's aura was powerful that it destroyed the ground in front of her. Hao Xian and Nejia both watched what the young girl did. Nejia insisted that the young girl was really impressive because she was able to control such spiritual power to that extent in just half a year, and that even the folks in the heavenly palace don't have the same level of talent as her, so he knew that he didn't make a mistake in choosing her. The young girl thanked Nejia very much for nurturing her, but Nejia informed that there was no need to thank him and that she should thank herself. Nejia highlighted that in those past 6 months, the young girl not only focused on cultivation but also performed the duties of a servant excellently, as the rooms and courtyards are always spotless, and if she continues to maintain that dedication and diligence, one day she will reap unexpected rewards. The young girl concurred and said that she wouldn't let Neja down. Meanwhile, Hao Zion recognized that the young girl truly had an extraordinary talent for reaching that level as immortal in just half a year. On the other hand, the blossoms in Zaishi's residence bloomed pretty. Zaishi happily embroidered a fabric inside her home. Suddenly, a rock flew into Zaishi's window. Zaishi was startled when the rock hit her head. One of the kids who threw a rock aired that getting something for nothing was really embarrassing. One of the kids insisted that dragons give birth to dragons, phoenixes give birth to phoenixes, and another kid alleged that even the daughter of a wild chicken knows how to moan in bed. Zaishi was extremely enraged with what the kids said. She demanded that they get lost, grilled them if they have no shame and how their parents raised them, and iterated that her daughter was not that kind of person. But the kids just retorted that he wouldn't listen and that it was nonsense. Suddenly, Neja loomed behind him with an evil glare in his eyes. Neja slapped one of the kids across the face. The three children immediately pleaded for Neja to spare them and declared that they were wrong. But Neja declared that his attendant should take the three children, along with their guardians, back to the city master's mansion. And the attendant responded yes. A few moments later, everyone was at the city master's mansion. The three children and their guardians all kneeled and bowed on the ground in front of Neja. Neja stated that they should give 50 strikes for the adults and 10 for children, and they should begin. One of the guardians protested with Neja and argued that they were just children. Neja responded yes and remarked if the guardians also didn't receive 50 strikes for being responsible for those children, but punishing them with the same severity just because they are younger is not fair. The young girl chimed in and noted that 10 strikes might not be a big deal for adults, but those children could be seriously injured or even killed. Neja wondered if she still wanted to plead for mercy on those children's behalf even though they slandered her and her mother. The young girl replied that she is not pleading for mercy, and she just feels that using one's life as the price for verbal harm is unfair. Neja fell silent for a moment and gave it some consideration. He remarked that what the young girl stated was also true, so they should change it to 3 strikes for the children, as long as they don't die, and that the guardians should remember that it was them who spread rumors and caused harm, and yet he repaid them with kindness by saving their children's lives. The guardians and their children exclaimed thank you to Neja. Neja demanded that they should get lost, as they were disgusting people. He inquired if she was sure that she was okay and added that he was fine, but it was mainly because he was worried about the impact on her reputation as a young girl. The young girl affirmed that it was okay and that a righteous person isn't afraid of false accusations because time will prove and dilute everything. Neja laughed and observed that those words really don't sound like they came from the mouth of a 13-year-old child. He suggested that they should go and start that day's training quickly, and the goal was to surpass the other day's limits, to which the young girl replied yes. However, the naive little girl is unaware that among the crowd, there are truly bad people, and most of the time, being righteous doesn't necessarily mean that one isn't afraid of false accusations. One of the guardians lay face down on a bed and trembled in pain. One of the men laughed and commented that he believed that the guardian was definitely done for at that time. The other man added that he too assumed the same and that the city master is quite magnanimous. The guardian cursed and complained that their society is really unfair. He remarked that it made it impossible to do anything, let alone speak. He insisted that it is outrageous because they allow the authorities to commit crimes while suppressing the common people. The guardian cursed, and as he challenged Neja for daring to hit his son, he declared that Neja should just wait because once he recovers, he will make sure the whole city is in chaos and Neja won't be able to hold his head high. 3 months later, the rumors between Neja and the young girl did not dissipate with time. Instead, they grew more intense and dirtier, and people only believed what they wanted to believe, and if they believed in the girl's luck, it seemed to prove their own misfortune. As Neja and the young girl walked down the street, Neja noticed the evil smirks on the faces of the men around them. Neja furrowed his brows and glared at them. He remarked that although those guys on the street haven't stated anything, their smirking expressions are really annoying. But there is no place to vent their anger, and it makes them appear narrow-minded instead. Neja queried if she was sure that she didn't mind. The young girl responded that she was really fine and Neja should just ignore them because they can't control what others think anyway. Neja commented that since the young girl could ignore them, the more he worried, the more it seemed that as a master, he was not as magnanimous as his young disciple. The carefree and optimistic smile the girl showed at that moment reassured Neja, but he overlooked the fact that no matter how optimistic the young girl was, she was still just a 13-year-old child. 6 months later, when Neja found the young girl again, she was already in a cold and turbulent river. There was not even the slightest sign of her impending death. The young girl only left a letter for her master through someone else. In the letter, the young girl revealed that she had some personal matters that she needed to take care of by herself for a while, and requested that Neja not worry about her. The silly girl, even until the end, was still worried that her master would be saddened by her death. She was concerned that the common people would suffer because of her. Neja was filled with intense rage, and his powerful aura was overflowing out of his body. The aura was intense that it shot up towards the sky. Neja cursed. He stated that he will kill those damn peasants. Neja remarked that he should silence those foul mouths and tear them apart. He declared that he should pierce through their ears. Neja got concerned, and he mentioned that the killing intent is spreading within him and he was losing control, so the nirvana technique he has cultivated will lead him down the path of darkness once he embraces the killing intent. He added no, and that everyone will die if that happens, so he must suppress it. Neja used his Heavenly King's secret technique, summoning souls from the underworld. Huge, monstrous hands appeared out of nowhere. It was Neja's great sealing technique. The hands quickly wrapped themselves around Neja's killing intent. They gathered it and compressed it into a mound of flesh. The mound of flesh got smaller and smaller until it got contained in Neja's mind. Neja lost his consciousness and fell on the ground. Hao Xian watched as everything unfolded. He realized that Neja used a secret technique to seal away that memory, and later, his ill intentions towards the people in the city were just remnants of that exposed memory. Hao Xian noted that objectively speaking, Neja did quite well because if it were him, he might not have been able to bear it. He was brought back to confront the evil creature in front of him. Hao Xian commented that in other words, all he had to do at that time was shatter that remnant of negative memory with a single punch, and it would help Neja eliminate future troubles and avoid going astray. But he inquired if it was really okay to erase someone else's memories like that. Hao Xian stared at the evil creature once again and pondered about it. He cursed, and as he voiced why he was thinking so much, he asserted that benefits come first and improving oneself is the most important. Hao Xian released his aura onto his hand and swung his fist. But as he released his punch, his aura disappeared, and the evil creature was unharmed. Hao Xian objected no, and that he couldn't do it that way because if someone were to erase his memories like that, he would definitely hate them. But he claimed that if he doesn't do things that way, missing out on one peak is a minor issue, and the crucial thing was the loss of opportunities for advancement. Which was absolutely true. Hao Xian affirmed that he should stay calm and think carefully. He queried if there was any win-win solution. Hao Xian got an idea. He revealed that he seemed to have come up with one. Hao Xian informed that through the system, he already knows that Neja will cause great calamities in the future, such as severing the dragon tendons and extracting the bones, but ultimately being saved by the Buddha, and at that time, Neja caused much more trouble in the past, yet he was still able to be saved by the powerful Buddha, so it should be even easier for Neja at the moment. He observed that as for the mighty Buddha, although he doesn't know him personally, he has a good way to contact him. Hao Xian returned to the mortal world. He called the mysterious big shot up there in the heavens, and as he uttered that, he knew he could definitely hear his voice, so he would request that he help him send Neja to the powerful Buddha, and he opined if he was right that it shouldn't be difficult for the big shot. But Hao Xian only got silence as a response. He warned that if the big shot ignores him, he won't go for the upgrade, and he should figure it out himself. Hao Xian proclaimed that they should see who could outlast whom while he contemplated that he should stay calm because judging from the timeliness with which the big shot saved him earlier, he definitely has the means to track and protect him. Hao Xian noticed that Lu Shi was climbing up through the window. Lu Shi testified that he risked his life to save Hao Xian. When Hao Xian heard that, he reflected that Lu Shi sure knows how to spin lies without hesitation. Hao Xian considered that Lu Shi's lies just flowed out of his mouth effortlessly. He presumed that since he followed Neja into that room, he noticed that Lu Shi followed along. Hao Xian believed that Lu Shi had been hiding under the window, and at that moment, he clearly had a cold expression on his face. He recalled that it was as if Lu Shi's face was saying that if he dies, he will immediately run away. Hao Xian figured that seeing the situation change, Lu Shi immediately transformed into a concerned and self-sacrificing appearance, willing to help at all costs, so he had to say that the kid is young. But his acting talent is no less than some cunning old foxes. He suspected that he really couldn't help but not like Lu Shi. Hao Xian cursed in his mind as he realized that he had to help Lu Shi in order to get the reward, so he wondered what he should do. Hao Xian surmised that he had an idea to try out, but he was not sure if it was feasible or not. Hao Xian declared that in times of adversity, true feelings are revealed, so it was his reward for Lu Shi, a top-tier magic treasure that could enhance the density of spiritual energy around his body and the world. He mentioned that with the magic treasure, Lu Shi's cultivation speed will be more than 10 times faster than others. Lu Shi stared at the magic treasure that Hao Xian gave him when he heard that the increase it would give was more than 10 times. He thanked Hao Xian and stated that he could never repay his great kindness and grace in that lifetime. Lu Shi remarked that Hao Xian was like his reborn parents, but deep in his heart, Lu Shi was laughing as he concluded that just as expected, Hao Xian was easily fooled, and as he suggested that Hao Xian should give him one more, he deemed that Hao Xian was a stingy fellow. Meanwhile, the system congratulated Hao Xian for completing the side quest as the potential of the special talent holder has increased to 85%. Hao Xian obtained the item, Crimson Magic Bell. When Hao Xian saw that it was 85%, he reasoned that the increase in potential for Immortal was significant, and that he should experiment with the next step. He informed that Lu Shi should give the magic treasure back to him. The system notified Hao Xian that the potential of the special talent holder was reduced to 5%. Hao Xian looked at the Crimson Magic Bell, which was the reward, and there was no change. He laughed and noted that just as he expected, even if the potential was reduced, they wouldn't confiscate the reward, and that way, all the problems are solved so he doesn't have to worry about any consequences. Hao Xian explained that the stage shooting was over and thanked Lu Shi for the help. He revealed that if fate allows, he and Lu Shi will meet again, and he has other things to attend to, so he won't insist on keeping him. Lu Shi was confused about what was going on and was frozen in place after he heard what Hao Xian conveyed. In that lifetime, Lu Shi will never realize how much opportunity he missed due to his bad impression, and his inn also got destroyed. 2 hours later, Hao Xian repeatedly held the view that he should stay calm because based on the previous behavior of the person in the sky, the method will definitely work. He reflected that he should believe in his own judgment. But he just didn't understand why the big shot was hesitating when helping someone without losing anything. The sky turned dark, and a golden light appeared, which surprised Hao Xian. A powerful golden pillar of light came down to the ground. The light was taking Neja towards the sky. Hao Xian laughed and observed that he knew it. The big shot in the sky proclaimed that Hao Xian only has 3 strikes and he is on his own in the future, and even if it is a matter of life and death, he won't help him anymore. Hao Xian wondered why and if there was some hidden secret. The system congratulated Hao Xian on completing the main quest, which made Hao Xian wonder why it was fast and if it could be that the person in the sky was none other than the Buddha. The system notified Hao Xian that Neja's malicious thoughts were eliminated in advance, avoiding a detour of 300 years, so his potential value increased to 32%, and the reward was the peak card, Queen Mother of the West. Hao Xian voiced if it was serious and indicated that it was another female, so he felt so tired. He sighed and voiced that he can't worry about that anymore because the next mission has a time limit of only 5 days, and he needs to hurry. But Hao Xian remembered something and uttered that he almost forgot it. His face turned serious and sinister. Hao Xian expressed that although Neja has left, it wouldn't be appropriate to let those rumor-mongering fellows go without any punishment. A half-month later, the news claimed that within the city of Tai, ancient Immortal cultivation ruins had emerged, with a vast array of treasures unearthed spread like wildfire, and the more it spread, the wider its reach, and the more exaggerated it became. A curious and idle cultivator ventured to investigate on-site, and indeed discovered a significant treasure. Another cultivator also ventured and discovered 1 and 2 significant treasures have been discovered in total. From on, things spiraled out of control, with swarms of cultivators flooding into Tai. Most of those newcomers were greedy and ruthless. Soon, Tai was in turmoil like never before. Many local residents left their homes in droves. Tai, which was known for its gossipy nature, ultimately fell victim to rumors, but of course, those are stories for another time. At that moment, Hao Xian was on the outskirts of Tai City. He remarked that the rumors that have spread may or may not be effective, but having those 2 treasures as a foundation, there should be a chance. Hao Xian declared that he should let it be because, for the time being, he should first try the enhancement after using the peak card at that time. He observed what kind of power it would upgrade into. Hao Xian started gathering his aura. He compressed and swirled his aura and created an orb of it in the palm of his hand. Hao Xian directed his aura forward, which turned into a powerful beam. He mentioned that the increase in pressure is immense, and it was on a completely different level from before, as it was almost reaching the strength of Sun Wukong before possessing the power of the Great Tao. Hao Xian continued to gather his aura, and it created another orb. The orb emitted a powerful bright light at that time, unlike the one from earlier. The orb threw itself forward. Hao Xian was stunned when he saw that his attack stopped midway. He commented on what was happening, and as he voiced that, the spell stopped on its own. He muttered how it could stop by itself. The orb started growing spikes in multiple directions. The orb transformed into multiple glowing cute creatures. Hao Xian stated if he was dreaming at that moment. The leader of the creatures looked at the rocky mountain ahead of them. He expressed if they have any good plans for the current target. The cute creatures started gathering around and were having a meeting. One of them indicated that he believed they could send their forces first for a deep strike. Everyone would explode from within, maximizing the destruction, to which another creature agreed. The leader noted that he deemed it was feasible too, so it was decided that he would take the lead and the others would all explode further inside, and everyone responded yes. Everyone watched as the leader charged ahead. He crashed on the mountain and created an explosion. A huge hole was left on the mountain by the leader. The others charged ahead just like they planned. Everyone entered through the hole that the leader had created. The mountain started to crumble as the explosions of the creatures started to come to the surface. A huge, powerful explosion occurred. Hao Zion was taken aback when rays of light started seeping through the cracks of the crumbling mountain. The mountain was shattered into pieces, and its rocks started to fall. The crumbling rocks created a huge pile in front of Hao Zion. Hao Zion was too stunned to speak. He was surprised that he was petrified. Hao Zion replied if self-awareness just emerged from the spell a moment ago. Half an incense stick later, Hao Zion was still standing in front of the pile of rocks, and after experimenting a few more times, he was completely shocked. Hao Zion stated that magic actually developed self-awareness. He remarked that it was unbelievable and unheard of and declared what kind of big shot was the predecessor of his body. A system notification appeared in front of Hao Zion. The system notified Hao Zion that his mission target was a novice descendant that is currently identified as the Lord of Lingjiang City, located in the eastern suburbs of the city within the Wulong Mountain stronghold. Hao Zion mentioned that it was Hui, another city lord, and he voiced why he ran into the stronghold. A few moments later, Hao Zion went to the Wulong Mountain stronghold at Lingjiang City. 3 men were talking to each other while they were guarding the gates of the stronghold. One of the men expressed why their head summoned everyone back. The other man proclaimed if he hadn't heard about it yet, and as the man responded no, he noted what exactly happened. The other man observed that some brothers in their stronghold found the Lord of Lingjiang severely injured in the woods. The 2 men he was talking with froze in surprise. The other man commented that their boss plans to extort ransom from the Lord's mansion, and once they get the ransom, they will quickly scatter and run, and from on, they won't have to worry about food and clothing. The man uttered that their boss indeed has courage for extorting the Lord's mansion. On the other hand, Hao Zion believed that Hui was captured by bandits while severely injured, so it was no wonder that the location is in that remote village deep in the mountains. Hao Zion considered that from that point onward, his task was to first infiltrate, decide Hui, understand his true nature, and take appropriate action, but to truly understand the target, he could not reveal his own power and attract undue attention. He gave it some contemplation and got the idea to pretend to rescue someone, get close to the target, and act accordingly. Hao Zion watched silently from the bushes as the 3 men continued to talk with each other. Hao Zion called their attention and explained that they were bastards. He emphasized that the men should tell their boss to release the city lord immediately, or else they shouldn't blame him for not being polite. The 3 men were unfazed, and they looked doubtful as they stared at Hao Zion. A few moments later, Hao Zion was thrown into the dungeon. He fell face first on the cold floor, and his butt was up in the air. One of the men reiterated if he, a mere mortal without even cultivation, was trying to rescue someone, and the other man added that it was an overestimation of himself. The man insisted that they should lock Hao Zion up with the others, and Hao Zion should be grateful their boss doesn't take lives. Hao Zion was thrown into a cell where Hui, the Lord of Lingjiang City, was. Hui maintained that the men pointed out that Hao Zion was there to rescue and indicated to confirm if he was not there to rescue him. Hao Zion noticed Hui behind him. He specified if he was right that he was the city lord and contended that he had long admired him, so when he unintentionally overheard those guys kidnapping him in the mountains, he fought them. Hao Zion revealed that there was no need for Hui to thank him because it was what he should do. Hui thanked Hao Zion, but he yelled and kicked him. He repeated what was a mere mortal pretending to be, why he did not go report to the Lord's mansion if he had no strength, and what was the use of starting a commotion at that time. Hao Zion professed that Hui and the common folk have misunderstood because the savior is eager with good intentions while in his mind. He pondered that he should endure it for the reward of the mission, but Hui is too violent, and something doesn't feel right. Hui concluded that Hao Zion should shut up and that he was a fool. A chef entered their cell with a plate in his hand. He slowly walked towards Hui. The chef presented the food to Hui. Hui gave the chef a menacing glare. The chef spelled out that it was Hui's dinner. He took a pause and nervously looked behind him. The chef saw that the guard was not paying attention to him. He recounted that he is the chef there and also an admirer of Hui, intending to help them all escape. The chef avowed that later that night, the bandits will hold a banquet, and he plans to drug them all in the food, rendering them unconscious, so Hui should wait for his good news as he could be rest assured. He walked away from Hui without waiting for a response. Hui watched the chef as he walked away, and he looked intrigued. He vocalized why he always feels like he has seen the guy somewhere before. Evening came, and the bright full moon illuminated the sky. One of the bandits repeatedly stated that they should drink up. Another remarked that they are about to become wealthy gentlemen. And another laughed and mentioned that there will be no more worries about money, and that they should give more to the poor. Meanwhile, the chef was cooking in the kitchen. The chef's wife was watching over him as he pulled out the drug from his pocket. The wife pleaded for the chef not to do that and declared that those bandit brothers are their saviors. She stated that if the bandits hadn't saved them, they would have been killed by those villains long ago, and what he was doing at that time was repaying kindness with enmity. The chef remarked that no matter what, they are all bandits. But the wife mentioned that they are all good people who only rob the bad guys, and she noted if that wasn't what he recounted. The chef declared that the wife should stop talking because his mind is made up, and only by doing that could they have a chance to break free from the lower class and provide her with a better life in the future. He stated that he must be a distinguished person, and it might be his only opportunity, so he must seize it. The wife was worried as she looked at the chef's desperate expression. A few moments later, the chef ran towards the dungeon. He excitedly opened Hui's cell. The chef remarked that everything was settled with the authorities, so they should go quickly. Hao Zion remained silent and continued to observe Hui's movement. A few moments later, the three of them came out of the dungeon and saw the pile of sleeping bandits on the ground. Hui uttered nothing, but he looked at the bandits with disdain. A shirtless bandit was flustered while he was unconscious and was leaning against the rocks. Another bandit was flustered as well and was drooling as he lay on the ground. Hui noted that the chef did well, and he, as the lord of that town, always repays kindness, so there will be a hefty reward when they return, and the chef thanked Hui. However, Hui mentioned that there is one more small matter that he needed the chef to take care of. The chef stated that Hui need not say just one. Even 10 tasks are no issue. Hui declared that the chef should go and kill all the bandits because it was the only way to prevent the bandits from pursuing them. Hao Zion was alarmed when he heard what Hui remarked. On the other hand, the chef's wife was horrified. Meanwhile, the chef was caught off guard and was troubled. Hao Zion wondered what was going on there and considered that Hui's temperament was much worse than Nej's. Hui observed if it would be decisive killing or indiscriminate slaughter and if the chef can't bring himself to do it. The chef's wife remarked that he must not do it because there will be serious consequences for such actions. But Hui declared that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for great success, so the chef shouldn't miss it. And he knew that those guys are bandits, but they actually have a good reputation. But he just wants them dead, so he stated how he would choose. The chef gave it some reflection for a moment. On the other hand, Hao Zion was thinking that Hui was violent and wondered what he should do. He pondered that even though those bandits captured him, he deliberately provoked them, and they are planning to ransom him back. Hao Zion reflected that the life-saving item that was given to him earlier would come in handy, as anyone could enter a pseudo-death state for a short period of time with it, and afterwards, no matter how severe the injuries, they would recover. He concluded that the bandits were just extorting money and are not worthy of death. Meanwhile, Hui inquired if he had made up his mind. The chef hesitated for a moment as he tried to give an answer. He remarked that he had. The chef stood over the bloody corpses of the bandits he had slain with his knife. He declared that as long as he could become a distinguished person, he was willing to sacrifice everything. The Lingjiang city lord kept his word. Just as promised, once back at Hui's residence, he bestowed wealth upon the cook. The cook looked so overwhelmed as he looked at the riches he had achieved. Hui bestowed not just money but also women. The cook enjoyed the beautiful woman in his bedchamber. For him, who had lived in poverty for half his life, it seemed like a dream. On the other hand, Hui was in his bedroom. He looked so bored as he sat on his throne. Hui inquired of his attendant how things were and if he had investigated the matter thoroughly. The attendant informed Hui and confirmed that the matter has been thoroughly investigated. He revealed that the cook had participated in the imperial examinations several times in the past. The attendant explained that not only did the cook pass as a subaltern, he also paid his respects to Hui. He added that, however, the cook was later replaced by one of Hui's confidants for his position, and he left Lingjiang with his wife. The attendant clarified that the cook encountered bandits on the road but was rescued by the Dragon Tiger gang, and with no other options, the cook turned to banditry and cooking to survive, to which Hui remarked that he recognized that cook's appearance, and indeed he had seen the person before. Hui noted that the cook has potential because with such a big grudge, he shows no signs of hatred just to climb the ranks, and that the attendant should summon the cook because the lord of the town has something to discuss with him. A few moments later, the cook drank the wine from his cup enthusiastically. He exclaimed that it was delicious and the wine of the lord was still the best. Hui laughed. He observed that it was just a few days, and the cook already looks like a high-class person. The cook responded that it was all thanks to Hui's blessings. Hui proposed to the cook if he wanted to take it a step further and have something more exciting since he has money and a woman, and the cook wondered what could be something more exciting. Hui queried what else it could be and declared that of course it was power. The cook was surprised when he heard what Hui stated. He thanked Hui, but Hui cautioned that the cook shouldn't rush to thank him yet because he still needs to test some of his basic qualities, and following him to accomplish great things cannot involve love affairs or being overly sentimental. The cook assured Hui could count on him and guaranteed that he would pass any test he gave him. Hui disclosed what the test would be. The cook was horrified when he heard what Hui revealed. He sweated profusely, and his eyes trembled in horror. Hao Zion observed from the sidelines as the cook walked away troubled. He peeked through the window, and he looked at the situation suspiciously. Hao Zion remarked that Hui's character is too twisted, totally unworthy of acceptance. But as he contemplated how he should reward Hui, he reflected that the main line is not like ordinary people and potential can't be easily upgraded. A few moments later, the cook and his wife walked together in a hurry. They went to the guest room of Hui's residence. The cook hurriedly packed their things, and his wife looked worried for him. The wife wondered what happened and why he was leaving in such a hurry when he was fine that morning and why he met with Hui. The cook insisted that his wife shouldn't mention Hui because he is a devil and a beast. The wife pressed on about what on earth happened, and the cook urged that they should talk on the way because they should leave first. The cook emphasized that he really didn't want to stay a moment longer in that ghostly place. A few moments later, the cook and his wife arrived at the outskirts of the city. The wife implored the cook about what was going on, and he could already tell her. The cook revealed that the beast mentioned he wanted to give them official positions, and the wife wondered if that wasn't good. The cook snapped that it was as good as his foot because Hui claimed that he was still too sentimental, and Hui wanted him to kill their daughter-in-law and for his wife to bear witness. The wife was horrified when she heard what the cook explained. The wife assured that it was okay. She added that they don't need those riches if it comes to that, and no matter what, she will always be with the cook. The cook complained that Hui has no idea what they have been through together, and he just casually talks about killing his wife, so he is a beast. The wife consoled that it was alright and that the cook should calm down because it is not worth getting upset over someone like Hui, and the official position wasn't anything special. It was just the same daily life. The cook scoffed and suggested that they should go and leave that wretched place. A few moments later, the night had fallen, and the cook and his wife slept in the forest. The cook had a dark aura looming over him, and his eyes were cold and determined. He sat up and rummaged through his baggage. The cook pulled out a knife and looked at his wife with his cold gaze. As he was about to stab his wife, he was surprised when she started to wake up. The wife was alarmed when she saw the knife that was pointed at her. The cook cursed, and as he muttered that his wife should just sleep peacefully like a good person, he demanded why she woke up and made things difficult for him. He raised the knife in the air, and the wife was too stunned to react. The cook plunged his knife into his wife's chest mercilessly. The wife's blood spurted on his face as he leaned forward and dug the knife deeper. A few moments later, the cook sat back up, and his wife was no longer moving on the ground. The cook's bloodied hand trembled. Meanwhile, the lifeless wife lay face first on the ground. The cook started crying. The full moon shone over the forest at that time, and the gentle breeze blew the leaves away. The next day, the cook came back to Lingjong City to Hui's residence. Hui laughed and repeatedly praised that it was excellent. He remarked that it was how the cook should handle important matters. The cook stood in front of Hui, who was sitting on his throne. He was frowning, and his expression was dark as he looked down. The cook was looking down at the bloody box placed on the floor. Hui instructed that the attendant should take the cook to change into the deputy official attire, and the attendant affirmed. The cook quickly cheered up when he heard about being the deputy official. But as the attendant was about to leave, Hui remembered and instructed that he should wait a moment. Hui recalled that there was one more little thing. He inquired if taking someone's life is a violation of the laws of Lingjong. The cook was stunned as he quickly understood the implications behind Hui's words. He immediately confronted Hui about what he meant by that and asserted that it was Hui who ordered him to do such a thing. A few moments later, the cook was tied on a wooden cross, and his body was covered in blood. The cook demanded Hui why on earth he keeps targeting a mere servant like him. He admitted that he didn't understand. Hui explained that since the cook was already on the brink of death, he would explain a bit more to him. He clarified that he is targeting the cook because he was too much like him. Hui revealed that he was born in the noble lord's residence. He disclosed that he is the lowest born illegitimate child, with no connection to the position of the lord. But he is not one to accept a lowly status. Hui declared that he aimed to rise up, and cultivating immortality is his way to achieve it. He confessed that for that goal, he could do anything and pay any price. Hui admitted that along the way, he has killed many people, guilty, innocent, men, women, and children. He confessed that he killed many, including his brothers. Hui revealed that he also killed his father. He stated that the throne forged in blood is what has brought him to his current achievements. The cook implored Hui what that has to do with him. The cook stated that he has no conflict of interest with Hui either. Hui remarked that among his brothers, there were some who spoke the exact same words as the cook. But he declared that he has killed them all because hungry wolves like them will never be content with being beneath others. Hui inquired of the cook whether he was not right. He summoned fire into the palm of his hand. Hui threw the fire towards the cook. A powerful flame quickly set the area ablaze. The cook was immediately devoured by the flames. The flame continued to intensify and covered the area. The cook's flesh started to disintegrate as it got burnt. The flame continued to devour his flesh and showed no signs of mercy. In an instant, the cook's flesh was completely devoured by the fire, and only his bones remained. Hui grinned evilly after seeing what the cook had reduced into. The cook's burnt body fell on the floor, and the fire slowly disappeared. The entire body was completely burnt and was black. On the other hand, Hao Xian was observing what was happening from behind. He explained that the cook's wife has already been saved by him and the box was an illusion created by magic, but he just can't bring himself to forgive those two. Hao Xian complained that for something unrelated, not only did he not receive a reward, but he also had to waste a card, and it is not worth it. Suddenly, Hui called Hao Xian and demanded that he should tell him if he had enough of watching the show. He presumed that Hao Zion must be more than just a mere mortal. Hao Zion walked out from the poles where he was hiding while glaring at Hui. Hui declared that he doesn't care about Hao Zion's status and they should go die together. He lunged towards Hao Zion, but Hao Zion was unfazed. A huge explosion occurred. Hao Zion skidded on the floor as he dodged Hui's attack. He glared at Hui as he started to release his golden aura. Hao Zion stated that in that case, he doesn't need to forcibly find reasons for himself either, so they should see if he could solve the situation with his own strength. He mentioned that his current body is far stronger than before, but Hui mocked that it was just primitive methods. He released his powerful aura. Meanwhile, Hao Zion released the squishy creatures he summoned before. One of the creatures repeatedly insisted that they should be fighting. Another creature exclaimed that it was delightful. The other creature repeatedly urged that they should hurry and that it will go first. On the other hand, Hui used his skill, 1,000 arrows through the heart. He directed his skill towards Hao Zion. Multiple powerful orbs of aura rained down towards Hao Zion, but Hao Zion was unfazed by Hui's powerful attack. He instructed the creatures he summoned to make their move. The creatures quickly moved towards Hui's attack. They moved so quickly and hit each and every one of Hui's powerful orbs. Hui wondered what kind of technique it was that all of his attacks shattered so accurately. All of Hui's powerful orb exploded in the air, and the sky slowly cleared up. Hao Zion couldn't help but curse and exclaim that it was like a red flag anti-aircraft missile defense system. Hui challenged that Hao Zion should look at his move and questioned if he could still defend against it. He noticed the creatures that Hao Zion summoned. They were swirling above him. Hui inquired when it got on top of his head. He accused Hao Zion of wanting to launch a sneak attack and condemned that he was despicable. Hao Zion swore that he didn't do anything, and they recorded it themselves and countered if he didn't believe him. The creatures merged and viciously swirled in the sky. They lunged towards Hui. Hui became alarmed when he saw that they were coming. A huge explosion occurred. The ground was destroyed. What was left of Hui's body lay in his own pool of blood. Golden light surged out of his body. Hao Zion was observing him. He pondered what was going on and doubted if he was already dead. It was impossible, so there must be some kind of conspiracy. Half an hour later, Hao Zion crouched in front of Hui's body. He muttered that he was really gone. He has become much stronger, but not so much that he could instantly kill a target without using a card. Rather, there was another possibility, and he speculated if it was simply that Hui was too weak. A few moments later, Hao Zion stood over Hui's body. He was using a spirit stone test. Hao Zion wondered if an early-stage golden core was really that weak. It was his first time meeting such a weak target, but it was alright, and he would just consider it a waste of time. He turned away from the body. On the other hand, Hao Zion and a younger Hui were floating in the sky. They were silently observing what was happening below. Hao Zion smiled as he glanced at Hui. Hui looked troubled as he continued to look down. He questioned what exactly was going on. Hao Zion explained that his treasure could let him see himself in a future timeline, but he could only see it and couldn't intervene. The treasure was the previous DLC reward, Scarlet Demon Bell. He revealed that the pathetic weakling who died a miserable death is the future timeline after he chooses to grab the City Lord's position by any means necessary. Hui fell silent. Hao Zion probed how it was seeing such an ending and if he would still choose the path of securing the City Lord position by any means necessary. It was 10 years, yet he was only at the Golden Core stage early cultivation, and he queried if the gap from his expectation was huge. Hui responded that he still has no choice but to choose that for the time being. Grabbing the City Lord's position by any means necessary is the optimal solution for securing resources, and cultivation is competition, so it was absolutely correct. Hao Zion remarked if that was the case, he should let him show him something different. Hao Zion released his golden aura and wrapped it around his hand. He placed it over Hui's forehead. He smiled. Hui was stunned by what he did. His eyes became clear. Hao Zion's golden aura expanded around him. A few moments later, he was transported to a different place. He wondered where that place was again. Hao Zion explained that it was another timeline, a different future based on Hui's choice, so he should take a good look. Hui followed his instruction and looked below. A group of assassins surrounded an older version of him. They quickly wielded their weapons and prepared to fight. One of the assassins chuckled that Hui shouldn't have let them surround him. Another assassin remarked that no matter how strong his archery was, he couldn't escape that time. But he just silently materialized his bow made of aura. One of the assassins called his brothers and urged that they should get him. The other assassin grew so excited as he charged at him. He was unfazed, and he gave the assassins a menacing glare. He pulled the strings of his bow. Multiple shots of aura were quickly released from his bow simultaneously. Those shots immediately hit the assassins. Holes were created on their bodies. They were obliterated in an instant. He quickly turned his attention to the remaining assassins behind him. One of the assassins shouted that it was too late behind him, but he immediately summoned a golden spear. He pointed it at them. They were stunned when they saw that. He attacked them so quickly that it looked like he was throwing multiple spears at them. They coughed up blood as they got hit. Holes were also created on their bodies. They all dropped to the ground like flies in an instant. He swung his spear to remove the bloodstains on it. He questioned who told them that he only uses a bow and arrows. He just prefers them. He pulled back his arm while still holding the spear. He threw it at the remaining assassin. The assassin quickly summoned a shield to protect himself, but the spear effortlessly broke through it. The shield shattered, and a hole was created on the assassin's body. Hui dusted his shoulder. Meanwhile, Hao Xian inquired how it was and pointed out that 13 half-step immortals were taken down in 3 moves. The strength is on a completely different level compared to the previous timeline. He wondered if he wanted to know what the difference between them was. Such realistic mirror images, habits, and surrounding details were a perfect match, so it can't be fake. Hui looked at him and he smiled. He expressed that he wanted to know, and while addressing him as Great Lord, he requested that he tell him why. Hao Xian responded that there actually is not much difference. It was just a few different choices. Hao Xian remarked that in that timeline, Hui did not choose to fight for power in Lingjiang City but felt it was meaningless and chose to leave completely. Later, his extraordinary talent for controlling weapons was discovered within the top sect. He was taken as a disciple by a master of weapon control from the Celestial Palace. At just 30 years old, he reached a level that even the geniuses of the same age in the Celestial Palace looked up to. Looking back at his previous future timeline, he inquired if he still believed it was because he lacked talent. He was stunned as he pondered about it. Hao Xian explained that the deep meaning of the saying water benefits all things and does not compete. He didn't expect him to comprehend it in his current state. He just wanted to mention one thing, and it was that he should at least try to get close to truly excellent people and open up his perspective. He shouldn't waste his life in a narrow-minded and decaying small place for some meaningless things, as it would be such a waste of his true talent. Hui responded that he believed he understood. The system gave Hao Xian a peak card. It was Yang. He was in awe as he stared at the card. He exclaimed that it was awesome as he possessed 2 peak cards already, but the system notified him. He questioned what the true form of the main body was. He was surprised when the system shined a blinding light on him. He started floating. He was sucked up by a golden pillar of light towards the sky. Fear of the unknown reflected in his eyes. The golden pillar of light dissipated. His body disintegrated. Only his torn clothes and bones remained. The golden pillar of light suddenly intensified. It created a huge explosion as it hit the ground. The ground shattered and destroyed. The explosion was so strong that it affected Hui. He braced himself as he was about to get hit. He was terrified. His body disintegrated as well. The explosion left a huge hole in the ground. The people in the city were alarmed when they saw the golden pillar of light. There was a tear in the sky. Looking at it closely, there was a light that shone more brightly amongst others. Hao Xian stood near that light. He was staring closely at it. He looked around, confused. The light intensified, and he fell. It hit him and passed through his body. He seemed to recognize the power. The light fired him back to the ground. His body disintegrated into bones again, but his body regenerated. A powerful swirl of golden aura burst out of his body. His hair turned white, and a golden ring hovered behind him. Golden orbs encircled his wrist. A fiery aura wrapped around his shoulders. His body was completely transformed. His main body was Pangu. He opened his eyes. Hao Xian inquired if Pangu, who separated heaven and earth, was his true body. It could be that the system sealed his original power. He realized that in his previous life on earth, he often dreamed of separating the clear from the turbid and the scene of creating heaven and earth. He questioned if there could be some connection between those 2 lives and why he always had an extremely bad premonition. But his head hurt. A voice suddenly addressed him as Brother Pan and remarked that he finally somewhat recovered. He looked up at the sky where the voice came from. It stated that he should consider Medusa a welcome gift for his initial return. A little practice. She was in a fetal position inside a glowing orb. She peacefully slept. Suddenly, she opened her eyes, which appeared menacing. She released her aura to escape from the orb. The voice mentioned that it would leave her to him, so he should have fun. Medusa looked pissed as she glared at the hand that disappeared in the sky. She cursed that it trapped her for so long, but it just slipped away like that. She noticed Hao Xian. She declared that it was the brat's aura, so she would take her anger out on him. He should die. She released a powerful beam of aura towards him. Hao Xian realized that he already sensed there was no need to dodge at all. The ground was destroyed again by the explosion caused by the impact of her attack. But as the dust settled down, it was revealed that he remained unharmed. He believed that there was not even a scratch on the skin. Medusa questioned how it was possible and remarked that she clearly fought him before. Something must be wrong. She released multiple lightning bolts and bombarded Hao Xian with them. but he remained unharmed. She was stunned and terrified. She exclaimed that there was no damage again and assumed that something was definitely not right. A wise man knows when to retreat, so she decided to retreat first and use her strongest attack as cover and retreat immediately. Hao Xian remarked that he should make his move too. He could feel that with his strike, Medusa would be completely annihilated. The feeling of controlling everything was really too strange. But he was surprised when a portal suddenly appeared behind him. He wondered what was going on and if there were any accomplices. Medusa observed that he was distracted, so it was a good opportunity. She directed all her attacks at him. Suddenly, Sun Wukong emerged from the portal. The pressure caused by his presence was too strong, and it blew Medusa away. He released a powerful golden light as he stood beside Hao Xian. Medusa became more terrified. Meanwhile, Hao Xian calmly glanced at Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong exuded a monstrous amount of aura. He addressed his master and conveyed that he was out. He missed him so much. Hao Xian glanced over at Medusa. He expressed that they should catch up later because right at that moment, as master and disciple, they had a big fight ahead of them. Sun Wukong confirmed if it was Medusa and remarked that there was no way because he could feel like he could already handle her alone. She repeatedly wondered what she should do and how they all became so strong after just a few days. But Hao Xian denied it and pointed out that the big guy was over there. A huge shadow appeared in the sky. Sun Wukong questioned when a person appeared there and remarked that he didn't notice at all. Medusa nervously looked over her shoulder to see what they were talking about. A person in full armor exuded a very dark aura above her. Hao Xian summoned his sword. He admitted that he was so excited because the new version was about to start early.